One evening, hordes of monsters of all kinds were defeated. Looking up, a man named Arden thought that he only had to defeat her, and then this long battle would be over. He had to defeat the one who had taken over the world and sent his friends to the other world, the one who ruled all the monsters, their queen. She rushed into the attack, while Arden remembered the words of his friends, who were no longer with him, and who had to leave the queen to him. He thought about the representative of the race of the spirits of doom, Dharma Mur, who had already passed away. When the queen struck another blow, he remembered the words that the path of a hero is to lead the weak. So said Royben, a representative of the ancient race of dragons, who was no longer with him. Deflecting the attack of the queen of monsters, he thought about how some things in this world end only in destruction. So said Tiran, a representative of the beast folk race, who had also passed away. Among his friends who were no longer with him was Redinil, a representative of the gnome race. Their strength was not enough, and they hoped he would surpass them. At one point, the monster queen was distracted, and Arden attacked her from behind, preparing to strike. Kruger, a representative of the mystical race, and Wei Shu, a representative of the long-eared race, once said that she should know her place and live peacefully. Thinking about all this, he struck and managed to sever her arm, but she became enraged and struck Arden, wounding him. During her next attack, as Arden defended himself, a magical explosion occurred. He remembered Elena, a representative of the fairy race, who had also been defeated by the Queen of Monsters. When the cloud from the explosion dispersed, the Queen of Monsters looked around, saw her arm, and was about to pick it up. But at that moment, Arden struck her again with his weapon. But then something unexpected happened, and the queen managed to send him to the other world. Falling into the void, he thought that while living with regrets about the consequences of his selfishness, it was important to remember the names of those who rushed into battle to defend their own, the hunters. He was reborn and was now called Kiritani Sho. One of his comrades called him by name, saying that it was time for them to go. He replied that he was lost in thought, and his comrade said that if he continued counting crows, he would be dismissed. The battle was about to end, and it was time to return. In their world, a wide variety of monsters began to appear one day. Hunters who had awakened their abilities began to unite and fight against them. Standing among the lifeless bodies of monsters, Kiritani Sho thought about how everything here was very different from his past life. His comrade suggested that he take a square, and wanted to finish quickly so as not to get scolded by the captain again. Then they heard the captain yelling that they were useless and telling them to stop wasting his time or he wouldn't pay them. It was Koman Dai, captain of the first squad in the Courage Guild, and he was looking down at them from atop a huge, defeated monster. When they saw him, they apologized and said they would speed up to get the job done. Glaring at the young men, Captain Koman Dai called them trash collectors and servants. In this world, Sho became the lowest link in the hunter hierarchy, a trash collector. The next morning, he went to training and ran along the path in the park. He ran up to a TV set installed on one of the buildings, where the morning hunters were on the air, and today's topic was the abilities of hunters. The man on the screen said that abilities are a form of superpower, and when a person exceeds their potential, the hunter awakens within them. Sho still had to awaken the hunter within himself. He had memories of his past life, but he didn't even have mana. He stopped to catch his breath and thought that his body and spirit remembered everything. But even if you know how to swim, what's the point if there is no water? But despite this situation, he did not stop his daily training, perhaps because he was used to it in his previous life. Picking up a branch from the ground, he decided to give it a try, because in the world of hunters, a person's status is determined by how strong they can become. He understood that if he continued in the same vein, there would be almost no point. But still, he lived his life as a knight. And even if he was the only one who possessed them, he would remember. And Sho struck the stone with a branch. Then, behind him, he heard his name. It was his friend Ren, who approached and asked if he was training again today. He replied that he was. They sat down on a bench, and Ren said that he watched Sho train every day, and it seemed like it was him, but at the same time, it wasn't. He added that Sho always had a philosophical expression on his face. Sho replied that this was not the case. Ren thought he should find a better place to train. Maybe they would even post it on the internet. He asked his friend if he wanted to become a hunter. Sho replied that it was an interesting idea, but you couldn't become a hunter just because you wanted to. But he admitted that Ren was right. He wanted to awaken and become a hunter to earn a lot of money. Everyone wanted to become a hunter with an annual salary of over a couple of billion and the admiration of the opposite sex. To stand on the front lines, facing the unknown. Rubbing his hair, Shoren said he thought he would succeed when he grew up because people who have something to protect always need money. As they left, they discussed that the schedule for clearing the next dungeon would be released tomorrow, and they hoped they wouldn't have to go to areas that were too dangerous. Soon, everyone learned that the dungeon they had to clear next was the Rymara Labyrinth. Captain Koman Dai said that all the details would be sent to them by mail, but one of the young men apologetically addressed him. He said that it was a very dangerous place, even among the C-rank dungeons, and he had heard that one guild had already gone there, and the guys had come back very beaten up. Ren supported his comrade, saying that this was too much, since they had only recently learned to cope with D-rank zones, and Rymara was too much. Angered, the captain told them to shut up and listen to him. And besides, to stop comparing themselves to hunters. He said that if they were being paid for it, they should do their job without complaining, and not act as if their opinion mattered. At that moment, Sho thought that it would be better to remind them more gently, since the contract renewal period was coming up soon. The captain said that anyone who was scared could leave, but trust was the most valuable thing, and people who left before their contracts expired would not be able to work anywhere else. He added that, in that case, rumors would spread even without him saying anything. Sho sighed heavily, and the captain, hearing this, asked who had just sighed, and guessed that it was Kurita. Kurita confirmed it. Grabbing him, the captain said that he had reminded him many times to watch his manners and not act like he was special. Then Ren said that he would participate in the cleanup, and reminded the captain that he wanted to avoid rumors before the cleanup began. His comrades supported him, saying that since there would be hunters there, everything would go smoothly. One of them said that it wouldn't make any difference where they went. The captain thought they were idiots, and that if they buckled under such pressure with such success, they could just follow orders with their mouths shut. As he left, Captain Koman Dai told them to do everything properly, and that he would be waiting. The next day, the whole group gathered, and before the sweep, everyone needed to warm up. Captain Koman Dai told Haida and Kuda to take the front line. Akaishi was to provide support from a distance. He also said that the group of magic supporters should always be ready to attack. At that moment, Sho thought that everyone looked worried. He understood that the hunters didn't like the sweep, and that they had been forced into it too. Meanwhile, the captain told the scum not to get in the hunter's way. Ren, who was walking ahead, turned to Sho and said that they would be leaving soon. Shu just hoped that this would not be the first step towards going to the other world. He entered the portal, and thus the Brave Guild, the first D-rank assault team, began the mop-up operation in the sea-level dungeon in the Rymara Labyrinth. The entire team, led by Captain Koman Dai, moved cautiously through the Rymara Labyrinth. One of the young men asked Shida if she had a strange feeling. She said that everything looked different from what she had heard, and that it might be worth reporting to the captain. But he replied that it was just a harmless dungeon, and that they could handle it. The captain was not in the best of moods, and there was no need to upset him. Ren turned to Sho and said that the hunters were acting a little strange. Sho replied that he was right, and that something seemed to be bothering them. He realized that the dungeon was clearly different from what the hunters had expected. Then, strange sounds came from the darkness, and everyone froze in place. Captain Koman Dai, who was leading the squad, also stopped and readied his weapon. A huge monster beetle was crawling toward them from the darkness, and the captain realized that it was about to attack. One of the squad members asked another if he thought it was a bit too much from the start. The other replied that it was somehow suspicious. The captain rushed into the attack and shouted that they should not stand around but do something if they wanted money. The monster rushed to attack, and the captain, defending himself, managed to wound it, saying that even though there were many of them, they were still just pathetic bugs. He ordered the hunters to attack, and they rushed at the bugs, preparing their weapons. There were many bugs, but the assault team coped well with them, defending themselves and using their weapons. Ren said that it was better for amateurs to stand by the exit, and that everyone should stay close together. Then more monsters appeared from above and began to descend to attack. Looking up and seeing them, the team members were terrified, thinking there were too many of them. But at that moment, one of the girls, preparing her burning weapon for battle, told them all to disperse. She shot at the monsters. There was an explosion, and all the huge beetles flew in different directions. One of the young men asked if it was all over, and Captain Koman Dai told them not to stand there like statues. Then another monster appeared, and the captain said that the middle boss was coming out. It was Gallus, the middle boss of the Rymara maze. To defeat him, they had to avoid his tail and aim for his head. The captain said that now it was every man for himself. At one point, the monster swung its tail, and several hunters were immediately knocked aside. It jumped to another spot, and one of the team members told the others to dodge as it jumped, and asked if there were any mages left. Preparing to use their abilities, the mages said they were ready, and told the others to get out of the way. They told the hunters not to attack the shell, because they were going to shoot at it, and used their abilities to shoot at the monster. When the smoke cleared, the monster remained motionless, and they realized they had sent it to the other world. Captain Koman Dai ordered the crew to collect anything they thought was valuable. One of them began to saw off the monster's armor, amazed at how strong it was. Then, Gallus opened his eyes and got up. He spat on Harai, who was standing next to him, and sent him to the other world. The others were outraged because they had not been told that his saliva was poisonous. The captain ordered everyone to retreat and not to touch the liquid. The front ranks were ordered to retreat quickly because even the fumes from the poison were dangerous. They began their retreat, while the other members of the team did not understand what was happening because the hunters were supposed to have found out about this before they arrived. Sho stood and watched the hunters' actions, thinking that something was definitely wrong here, and it seemed that even Koman shuddered. The hunter yelled at the hunters, calling them losers, saying that this was no time to be lazy, and that this problem could be easily solved by closing the monster's mouth. The hunters tried to approach the monster defensively, but they failed, and the captain called them a bunch of idiots. Rushing into battle, he told them to move on, and that he would take care of the monster himself. Taking careful aim, he jumped on the monster and severed its head. The team members happily said that, as expected, the captain was completely different from a C rank. But he told them to get moving and stop being lazy. They decided that while there was still time, they needed to check their supplies and examine the wounded. But at that moment, something rushed past them. Everyone was horrified to see another huge monster in front of them and thought that this couldn't be happening. In front of them was a monster with a huge mouth and burning eyes, and they thought that this couldn't be happening, even though they had just defeated the middle boss. And now, the dungeon boss had arrived. It was the boss of the Raymar maze. It flew above them, preparing to attack, and the team members asked the captain what they should do. Looking at the huge monster and preparing his weapon, he replied that they had no choice and needed to get ready immediately. He ordered everyone to quickly inject themselves with the antidote, because if they touched its feathers, they could lose their minds. And he injected himself. But the monster's feathers had already scattered everywhere, and one had fallen on one of the hunters. His gaze became vacant, and he said he'd had enough. Shouting that they had no chance against such a creature, the other hunters ran away. The captain called them a bunch of traitors. Feathers were falling everywhere, and the hunters could not hide from them. They shouted that it hurt, and that they should not have become hunters. Looking at all this, Captain Komandai thought that this was not a C-rank dungeon. Hiding from the feathers, Sho thought that there must be something that the average hunters could do. There was little time. They had to leave before the boss got too angry. He turned to Ren and suggested that they at least take the newbies with them and run away. Ren asked why, and Sho replied that it was so they wouldn't waste time. But Ren, who had also been hit by a feather, went crazy and said that a place like this could give them treasures, and he wasn't going anywhere. He said that every item here was worth some money. Even a hunter's weapon was worth 200 million, and there might be items that were even more expensive. Grabbing Ren and trying to lead him away, Sho asked him to pull himself together. But Ren only talked about money, and how there was a lot of it here. He saw a shield that he thought must be worth at least a couple of million, and broke free to go to it, but Sho managed to grab him by the sleeve. But Ren turned around and lunged at Sho with his weapon raised, telling him to back off. Knocking Sho to the ground and sitting on him, Ren said that if he wanted to leave, he should go alone and not get in his way, threatening him with his weapon. He said that all this money was his. Sho asked Ren to calm down, but he wouldn't calm down and kept saying that he needed the money for his little sister. He said that his precious little sister was sick and he needed money to cure her. He shouted questioningly why he couldn't be a hunter and why his sister had to suffer. He just wanted her to be happy. Sho pushed away the weapon Ren was holding, and it stuck into the ground next to him. He told his friend that everything was fine. He told Ren that everything was fine and that if he left, he would be able to see his sister. Ren came to his senses, cried, and told Sho that he had treated him terribly. Sho told him to take a deep breath and that he was fine now. Ren said that was good and suggested they just leave. Sho said they needed to hurry. But then he saw that Ren had a very strange look in his eyes and thought that he was still under the influence of the poison. He called Ren's name, but Ren ignored him, pushed him away, and rushed into attack with his weapon in his hands. But before Sho could turn around and ask what had happened, Ren was wounded, and he barely managed to catch him. Ren told his friend that he was glad that he was okay, and those were his last words. Looking up, Sho saw Captain Komande and asked where they were going, since the concert wasn't over yet. A poisonous feather had fallen on him too. Shu thought that when he heard Ren say he had someone to protect, he thought it was just the words of an idealist. He assumed that his comrade was just overacting, and that his words were empty. Remembering his past life, Sho thought that he should have known better. Taking two weapons, Sho thought that Ren had gone to the other world, covering him, and if he had not taken his word seriously, it would have been in vain. He stood before Captain Komandai, holding his weapons in his hands, and the captain said mockingly that he was worth looking at, and what a beauty he was. The captain said that he was surely the same idiot who fought with two weapons, and he was sorry to disappoint Sho, but he was not in the game. But he stood there and looked confidently at the captain. He needed to make sure of something. And he wanted to make sure that the C rank hunter would definitely go to the other world today. Shortly before that, Captain Komandai had argued that the dungeon cleanup had failed. The first assault team had scattered, and the hunters had gone to the other world. When a feather fell on his shoulder, he began to wonder why this had happened. But the captain did not consider it his mistake, because he was always right. And then, looking to the side, he frantically concluded that it was all the fault of the trash. He decided that the trash collectors had interfered with the hunters, and that these insects had no right to exist. Captain Komandai decided to personally make them pay for the loss, in full, and attacked them. He sent many of them to the other world, considering them useless. But then, he saw Sho and Rina. He rushed towards them, thinking that Kiritani Sho was a cheeky, annoying, legless idiot, but wounded Rina who stood in his way. But looking at him, he said he thought he would tremble before going to the other world. Now, when Sho stood before him with a weapon in his hands after what had happened, he said that even small insects seemed to have courage. Captain Komandai asked him what he was doing, and if he was really going to fight. Threatening Sho with his weapon, he reminded him that there was too great a difference in their status. He said that he was a hunter and had abilities. He asked what he could take from him, and whether he was just a brat who hadn't even awakened yet. But the captain said that it didn't matter, and that he would first gouge out his eyes. But then he saw that Sho had disappeared, and a second later, he was already attacking the captain from behind. The captain managed to repel the attack in time by covering himself with his shield, and said that he wasn't done talking yet. He struck a blow, but Sho deftly jumped aside, thinking that he could move, and even if his opponent had lost his mind, he shouldn't forget that he was a hunter. He thought that he had unusual power. He was a hunter, even if he was rotten. And Sho decided to see how regular training would help him. The only thing that posed the danger now was Raimara watching the situation from the sidelines. But for now, he needed to focus on the hunter, and Sho rushed back into battle. He struck blows, but the captain parried them, covering himself with his shield. And when he attacked, Sho deftly dodged. Pausing for a moment, he thought that he was weaker in any case, and that when his brain told him to dodge, his body couldn't keep up. It would be good if he could use at least 1% of his strength from his past life. Then Captain Komandai asked how it was possible that a piece of trash like him could move so well. Sho thought that the captain was getting nervous when he realized that the situation was not so predictable, and he wasted a lot of time trying to develop a strategy. He asked the captain if he needed someone to teach him how to breathe. The captain, preparing to attack, told him to shut up. The captain attacked Sho by throwing a stone at him, but Sho easily deflected the attack with his weapon. He, in turn, also attacked and managed to slightly wound the captain with his weapon. But thinking that it was a terrible attack, he decided to continue in the same vein. He attacked again, and this time managed to inflict several more wounds on the captain. The captain jumped back, stopped, and thought about what was happening and how he could be losing to this trash, because that couldn't be. He used his abilities of super increased willpower and instant acceleration and rushed into the attack. Sho thought that he was now moving so fast that his eyes couldn't keep up with him. But the direction of his movements was easy to predict. Running towards him, he thought that this was a stupid way to use his abilities, and that the trajectory of his movements was very easy to see. Catching up with Captain Komandai, Sei concentrated and delivered another blow. With his blow, he was able to disarm his opponent by cutting his weapon in half. Sho delivered another blow and severed the captain's leg. The captain fell to the ground, shouting that he was wrong to think he would get off so easily. He said that feathers were quite effective in helping a person lose their mind. And wasn't he going to say that his sanity had returned to him before his demise? The captain began to say that this was nonsense because he was a hunter and Sho had not even awakened yet. But Sho said that he would send him to the other world and severed his head. Looking around, he saw that the squad had been completely destroyed, and he had not seen so many lifeless bodies in a long time. Then he noticed a strange glow and did not understand what it was. Sho thought it was because he had thought about his previous life. He felt something like magical power, perhaps because of the presence of weapons in his hands. Sho thought that maybe this was awakening. Then he saw a system notification that his level had increased, and he realized that he had indeed awakened. A stats window appeared in front of him. Judging by the list of abilities, he was an executioner, and he thought that this did not suit him at all. He remembered the crazed Ren and thought that it was ironic because those who really needed it lost their chance, while those like him awakened. Then the monster Raimara flew past him, and Sho thought it was very noisy. The monster had a magic coefficient of 1, while Sho had a coefficient of 0. The difference was only 1 coefficient, but 0 magic and magic with a coefficient of 1 felt like heaven and earth. Looking at the monster, Sho concluded that it was unlikely to have remained the same as before. He had always been curious as to why mana worked this way in this world. Here, one could simply release mana without any control. However, the joy of awakening simply blinded the hunters, so they succumbed to vanity. Sho understood that the basic use of mana was similar to a throw, strengthening the body with fragile control. Preparing to attack, he thought about finding all the vulnerable spots and connecting all the lines together. Taking careful aim and throwing his weapon at the monster, he thought that all this was necessary in order to find the most unprotected place to strike. The weapon he threw flew past Raymar, only grazing him slightly. The wounded monster let out a wild cry, and Sho told him to be quiet. Pushing off the ground to strike again, Sho said that the end always comes unexpectedly, and severed the monster's wing. He landed on the ground again after the jump and looked at the monster, which was screaming in agony. Sho knew that he needed to concentrate once more to gather all the mana in his body. And concentrating, he jumped again and dealt a crushing blow to the monster with his weapon. He landed on the ground, and the defeated monster Raymar fell behind him. Looking around, he saw not only the defeated monster, but also the rest of his team. Realizing that he was alone, he remembered his past life and the moment when disasters were sent by the queen and came to destroy their world. Then the 9 races of the continent of Eslan put forward their representatives to fight in unison and meet the unknown enemy face to face. And although the enemy was incredibly strong, the 9 races met him with determination, going through many fierce battles and winning. Then he heard a voice asking if this was the future that poor, pitiful Arden had dreamed of. He didn't understand what was happening because he knew for sure that he had defeated the queen. Pushing Elena away from him, Arden told her to run. But then he saw that it was not Elena at all, but a monster that told him where to run because all the stars in the sky had gone out, but he still clung to hope. And he must remember that all this happened only because of his fault. And now the darkness of his sins continued to burn him from within in his next life. Waking up in horror from everything he had seen, Sho realized that he was in a hospital bed. Then he heard someone say that he had finally woken up and looked at the person in his room. The man sitting in his room said that he had been asleep for 3 days and called him the new recruit Kirita Sho. He asked the man who he was, and the man replied that he should not be so afraid of him. He handed Sho his business card. Sho asked what had happened to everyone else. He replied that the first armed brigade of the Brave Guild had been completely destroyed, including the captain. The man placed his business card next to Sho and said that he was the only survivor. Then, remembering Ren, he asked what had happened to a man named Ren Igawa. He replied that it had been decided to hold a farewell ceremony for those who had passed away in the main building of the Hunters, and that all this had taken place while he was in a coma. Asking permission to move on to the main topic, he said that the Raimara Labyrinth had been classified as rank B. He asked Sho if he had any thoughts on this event. He added that the guild, having only reached rank D, considered this dungeon too difficult, and Captain Komon had been increasingly unlucky lately. Sho said he knew nothing about this, and asked what he meant by saying that the captain had been increasingly unlucky. Realizing that Sho had not been informed, he said that Komon might not have told anyone about it. He explained that Komon had a lot of gambling debts. That's why he went on the raid, even though he knew how difficult the dungeon was. Sho was angry, but the man said that the unexpected changes in the dungeon could be true, and asked him to contact them if he remembered anything. He left, and Sho leaned back on the bed and thought about Ren going to the other world, and Komon's disgusting reason for going on the raid. But then he remembered his awakening and decided to turn on the TV. Turning on the TV, he saw that the program I Want to Be a Hunter was on, and the host was about to introduce the guests of today's episode to the audience. The host said that she was a well-known SS-ranked hunter nicknamed Odin's Justice, and the best hunter in Japan. The girl came out, and the host said to please love and cherish Aoki Sora. He also said that during her awakening, she had gained 4 abilities, which was very rare. Sho thought about how Japan's best hunter, Aoki Sora, was even more popular than some celebrities. And if she belonged to the SS rank, then what rank did he belong to? He called up a list of his abilities. Judging by the list, he was an executioner and thought that all evil people belonged to this rank. He based this on the fact that he had awakened when Komon had passed away. He looked up this ability on the internet, but found nothing. He thought that it was not just a rare ability, but one that only he possessed. Sho thought that if there was a criminal nearby, he could test his ability in action, but now his E rank was more important. He remembered his past life and his beautiful girlfriend Elena again. After a while, he gathered himself and went to the reception desk, where he was told that the tests were over and asked to take care of himself, and he left the hospital. Sho began to train. Before that, he thought that everything in his life was meaningless. He thought about hunters who couldn't use their powers to their full potential, and about the relationship between mana and abilities. Previously, he believed that he had nothing special in this life and thought that it was all meaningless. Standing at the portal, he realized that he had been given a chance to correct his past mistakes and vowed to himself that the tragedy that had occurred in this life would not be repeated. Passing through the portal, he saw many burning eyes of monsters staring at him from the darkness. The only thing he could do now was to set himself the primary goal of becoming the best. He stood ready with his weapon for battle while the monsters attacked him from all sides. Meanwhile, a nurse entered the rehabilitation room and said that the treatment was over and another patient was waiting for her turn. She added that it was good that they had a filtration cube to treat the patient. The girl on the hospital bed asked if it was okay that she was alone. The nurse clarified that her parents had not come, and the girl replied that it was okay. Seeing that the patient's name was Eri Igawa, she wanted to say something about the recent incident, but another nurse said she would take care of it herself. The nurse who came asked the girl to excuse her for being too blunt and told Eri not to worry. She replied that everything was fine and thanked the nurse for her concern. The nurse began to say that she probably hadn't heard about what had happened to her brother, but Eri interrupted her and, calling Mitsuhara, said she wanted to eat something sweet. Eri was allergic to mana because of the appearance of gates all over the world, which began to fill the atmosphere with mana. This led to the emergence of a new disease that gradually caused people to die. This disease was considered incurable, and at the moment, no cure had been found. It was only possible to suppress its symptoms with the help of a functional cube, and it was good that this hospital had one, and it helped Eri. Lying in her room, she watched TV, and the host said that the previous broadcast had become a huge sensation on the internet. The program was about Aoki Sora, Japan's #1 SS class hunter. Eri thought that no matter how many times she watched this video, she was still amazed by her powers, and it seemed that the ratings for these scenes were breaking all records. Suddenly, a boy who was lying in the same hospital as her shouted behind Eri that it was amazing to see Aoki Sora. He said that if he ever awakened, he would join her guild. Eri said that he still had a couple of years to go before becoming a hunter. Asking Eri if she thought she was cool, he said that he had heard that when she awakened, she had 4 abilities. He asked her again what she thought of Aoki Sora, and if she thought she was amazing. Eri replied with a smile that she was very cool. A woman entered the ward and took the boy away, asking why he was wandering around here alone again and apologizing to Eri. She replied that everything was fine. Taking a Coca-Cola, Eri thought that although they were the same age, Aoki Sora was now the top hunter in Japan. She was very different from her, a girl who couldn't even adapt to this world. When her parents passed away, her brother took care of her, but because of her body, she became a burden to him. She thought she missed her brother. Then Mitsuhara approached Eri and said that if she cried here, someone would definitely notice her. She said that when things are difficult, you have to smile, and that she would soon get better. Therefore, she should enjoy life for her brother as well. Mitsuhara said she was sure her brother felt the same way and had prepared a gift for her. Eri thanked her. Then Mitsuhara looked out the window, and Eri saw that her face had taken on an excited expression. She also looked out the window, and they saw the moon, which, for some unknown reason, had appeared in the middle of the day. Then, 2 young men behind them said that they had been running fast, but they were standing by the window and didn't understand what was happening. However, they said that it was a disaster, and that they all needed to find shelter quickly. One of them said that they had received a message from the Hunters Association and needed to run before it got worse. Mitsuhara was surprised because there were no monsters. Everyone was told to run to Building B as quickly as possible. Then, Mitsuhara turned around and saw a huge fist that had broken through the wall and appeared behind Eri. A huge monster entered the room, and now Eri was standing next to it, looking at it in fear. Eri froze in place next to it, and Mitsuhara yelled at her to run away quickly, but she stood in front of it and couldn't move. And even though she understood that she needed to run, her legs were shaking. Then Mitsuhara ran up to her, grabbed Eri, and told her to pull herself together and that they needed to run to the hallway. She said that since the association already knew what was going on, the hunters would arrive soon. But Eri said she would try to buy them some time and pushed Mitsuhara away. As she fell, she said she couldn't let her risk her life and didn't want anyone else to sacrifice their life for her. Mitsuhara shouted her name, trying to stop her, but suddenly a young man grabbed her and told her to stop because they couldn't save her. Falling straight into the monster's clutches, Eri wondered if anything would have changed if she had had the power too. But then Sho flew through the window and, after dealing with the monsters, reminded her of her brother and sister. He told her to think about those she was about to leave behind. Looking at the girl, he clarified that she was indeed Igawa Eri. He added that he had come here in place of her brother and introduced himself as Kirita Sho. He said that her brother had sacrificed his life for him. She cried, and asked if her brother had really sacrificed his life. Looking at Sho, she thought that she had found the gift her brother had left her. Meanwhile, Aoki Sora, an SS rank hunter and second in command of the Poison Guild, was in a high-level dungeon in the Dortolemia Desert. She was attacked by a huge monster with several tentacle-like heads that emerged from under the ground, but it couldn't defeat her, as she masterfully parried its attacks. At one point, Aoki Sora managed to wound the huge monster with her attack. Meanwhile, her teammates were discussing the lawyer who had contacted her. Kaido Riku, a hired hunter of the Poison Guild, said it was brave to approach Aoki. Abera Umi, a hired hunter from the Poison Guild, replied that his phone ended up in the trash. They hid behind rocks, and Kaido said that Aoki had many fans. Eber replied that it was obvious. While Aoki continued to fight the monster, they discussed how she was the only SS rank hunter in Japan. At one point, the monster's many heads surrounded her, and she thought that was very good. Kaido said that was probably why she was working so hard today, and at that moment, an explosion sounded nearby. Looking into the distance, Kaido realized that it was the boss, and today, he had appeared very quickly. It was Dortolemia, the boss of the Dortolemia Desert Dungeon, and his appearance meant that all his pawns had gone to the other world. Preparing his weapon for battle, Kaido said that it seemed like it was time for them to get to work. But Aoki said over the radio that she would do everything herself, which surprised him. She explained that she had originally planned to deal with him alone. He said that she could have fun then, calling her Oju, and at that moment, she had already attacked the monster. Hearing his words, Abera told him not to call her that because she didn't like it very much. During the battle, Dortolemia tried to hide underground, but Aoki stabbed her with her weapon and said there was no point in running away. Her companions stood and watched. Kaido said they should thank the A-rank hunter for that. Aoki said she had dealt with the boss herself. The dungeon was cleared, and her comrades asked her if she was going to return. They discussed that it seemed she had heard everything, and that they needed to discuss it upon their return, when the ground beneath them shook. Ibera did not understand what was happening, because they had already eliminated the boss, but for some reason, a rift had occurred. Kaido told her to look up. They looked up, and Aoki also saw it, and realized that it was the core of the dungeon. Abera asked if the core wasn't supposed to appear somewhere deep in the dungeon, but Kaido said that anomalies always come unexpectedly. Taking aim, he fired at the core of the dungeon with his weapon. But the maximum range of the shot was 7 kilometers, and the distance to the target was 12 kilometers. He realized that the core was too far away from him. Aoki asked how far away the target was, and he replied that it was about 12 kilometers away, and that long-range attacks were useless here. He said that regardless of the power of the attack, such a target could not be reached at such a long distance, and they were already behind schedule. Looking up, Aoki suggested changing their location, considering that a rift was about to occur. Kaido said he thought she was right. They saw that the gate to another dimension had opened, and that the rift had most likely already begun. Now, they had no time to think. Sora told her companions that she had already contacted the guild and asked them to focus on the rescue operation. Descending into the city, Kaido asked what Oju planned to do, and Ibera replied that it was obvious. Meanwhile, Aoki used her abilities and said that she had to bring the moon down to Earth. The news reported on the rift above Sechigaya Prefecture. The anchor asked an expert if rifts usually occur in underground areas, and the expert agreed. Meanwhile, medical teams had already begun the rescue operation and were transporting the wounded. The news also reported that the moon, visible above the capital, was the core of the rift. Sho listened to the news, which said that the fighters defending this core were yet to be seen. Eri approached him, and he clarified that she was allergic to mana, and asked how she was feeling. She replied that she was fine. She asked if it was true that he was a rookie who had worked with her brother. Sho replied that it was. Then Eri sadly asked what her brother had told him about her, probably something along the lines of her being a burden. She thought that in the end, she was to blame for her brother's death. But Sho said it wasn't her fault. He added that if she didn't believe that, she should accept her guilt and use it as motivation. Then one day, she would be able to overcome that feeling. Eri stood there for a moment, lost in thought. But Sho told her to remember that Ren had always thought about her and never forgotten her. Hearing those words, she burst into tears. Sho pointed to the core and said that they would continue after he destroyed it. Meanwhile, explosions rocked the city, and hordes of various monsters attacked the people. As he rushed to attack the monsters, Sho thought about the conclusion he had come to over the past few days after sending a bunch of monsters to the other world. Now he thought that there was no point in leveling up any stats other than mana. Of course, if he leveled up his physical attack and agility, his chances of winning would increase. As he ran, Sho thought about how their maximum was too low. He remembered meeting a hunter who said he wanted to test how effective physical attack stats was. After arm wrestling with this hunter, who had 11 physical attack stats, he realized how big the difference was. And being in the city among a bunch of monsters, Sho thought there was no time to waste, and he had to hurry. One of the attacking monsters didn't have time to react before Sho jumped up and ran up the wall of one of the buildings. Pushing off from the roof, he flew up. He had 29 mana points, and it felt great. Looking down, he swung his arm and threw his weapon upward with force. His target was the core, and now Sho could only think about whether his weapon would reach it. But when he landed on the ground, he realized that he had failed and that it was useless. Realizing that his level was not high enough, Sho decided that he needed to come up with something else. Then, an energy explosion occurred above the city, and Sho, seeing it, did not understand what it was. It was Aoki, whose abilities were thunderbolts, gusts of thunder, and light rain. She created a whirlwind around herself that rose into the sky, heading towards the core. There was a powerful explosion, and Aoki, watching it, thought that everything had worked. But then she saw that another core appeared behind the first one and was very surprised. Aoki thought that this could only mean that the moon was a protector. The core began to fall to earth, but Aoki used her abilities to block its path. There was an explosion, and she was thrown aside, but she got up and continued to use her abilities. Sho watched her actions. He expected a lot from her, because they said on TV that she was an SS-ranked hunter, but he still decided to help her. He jumped up to her and grabbed Aoki by the waist. Not understanding what was happening, she turned around, and Sho told her to focus because many lives depended on her. She asked who he was and told him to back off, but Sho thought about how she was using up a lot of mana. He told her to direct her mana as he showed her. She looked at Sho in surprise when she realized that he had changed the flow of her mana, but now was not the time for that. Then there was an energy surge, and Aoki thought her mana had stabilized, but her mana began to overflow. But she thought that she had probably used up all her reserves. But now was not the time to think about that. She told Sho that he had a good ability, and now she understood that they were on the same side. He replied that, in any case, they needed to destroy this thing. Aoki shouted that she knew that. Together, they created an even stronger energy vortex, which they directed at the core, and an explosion occurred. When everything calmed down, Aoki stood with her weapon in her hands, trying to catch her breath, and thought that she had done it. But Sho looked up and said that it wasn't over yet, and that it was funny, but the core was still alive. They were able to damage it, but not destroy it, so Sho asked if she could strike again. Exhausted, Aoki replied that it was impossible, because she seemed to be at her limit and couldn't do it. She wanted to say that, as sad as it sounded, all they could do was wait for reinforcements. But Sho said that he would take care of it. Sho stepped on the weapon Aoki was holding, and she tried to stop him, not understanding what he was going to do. He said that she was still the best hunter in Japan, which meant she should have enough strength to launch one person into flight. She asked how to launch a person, and clarified whether he was talking about himself. He didn't have time to explain, so Sho simply asked her to repeat something similar to the attack she had just performed. Angry and using her abilities, she said that he was a very strange guy, and that she didn't care if it ended badly. She managed to launch Sho, and he began to rapidly approach the core, thinking that enough force had been applied for him to get closer. In addition, he gained 5 points to his mana, which now stood at 35. He threw his weapon again, but this time from a very short distance. This time, he succeeded, and his weapon pierced the core, destroying it. Shards of the core rained down, and Aoki, standing among them, couldn't believe it. Looking at the exploded core and Sho flying down, she thought he was crazy. As he fell, he saw a notification that his level had increased, and he had gained a new ability, and thought it was great. He landed on the roof of one of the buildings, and Aoki thought that he had not only redirected her mana, but also broken the core. And she wondered if there were other SS rank hunters besides her. The next day, she was interviewed. The host said that Aoki remained calm until the very end, but she said that another hunter had helped her. She said that he disappeared as soon as it was over, and she didn't know who he was, but she would very much like to meet him, if possible. Eri watched the news and told Sho not to say that he was that hunter, but he just asked how she was feeling, and she seemed much better. She replied that she was worried when she was hospitalized, but now she was better. Sho wondered if she really needed to know that. She asked Sho if he was now a recruit. He replied that he was, and that he had finally awakened. Eri asked if he was going to become a hunter. Sho didn't know, because to become a hunter, you had to pass an exam. But she said that he would pass it anyway, and that she would cheer him on. Sho said that he meant that his level was still too low. Eri smiled and said that she was sure he would become a great hunter. Looking out the window, Sho said that she was right, but that his status wouldn't change anything anyway, but he would try to pass the hunter exam. And after a while, he found himself in the Hunter Examination Grounds in the tropical forest of Nadia, an F-rank dungeon. This event was covered by the channel Forward Hunter, which reveals the secrets of hunters, and the host asked how he was feeling. He said that they would be broadcasting the 558th Hunter test in the examination grounds. Approaching one of the candidates, he apologized and asked if he could take a moment for an interview. The examinee's name was Yabuki Go, and he said that Aoki Sora had 4 abilities when he awakened, but he awakened with 3. The host said that he was quite confident and asked what rank he was aiming for in this exam. He replied that he had come for first place. Sho heard this conversation and thought that he had a maximum rank of A, and he was just wasting his mana because he didn't know how to control it. Then Sho heard the host's joyful cries that Aoki Sora had appeared, and he said on the air that this time, a special guest, Aoki Sora, would be observing the test. She appeared before the examinees and said that she was Aoki Sora, a hunter, and that she hoped they would all shine with their abilities. The examinees were very surprised and couldn't believe that it was really her. Everyone rushed forward, asking if this was the first time Aoki Sora had come to watch the exam, because usually no one was allowed in. Sho stood behind everyone, thinking that it would be problematic to interfere, and that he would like to avoid meeting her. Remembering recent events, he decided it would be better not to cross her path. The examinees shouted that she was the best, and that after the exam, they would join Yod, and asked her to just wait. Listening to all this, Aoki just sighed. Shortly before that, at a meeting with the guild owner, she asked why he wanted her to be a guest at the exam. Uhara Junosuke replied that the rift she had destroyed had originated in the dungeon of the Dortalemia Desert. Since the guild was in the dungeon at the time of the incident, people decided that it was a show put on for her. Aoki said that was disgusting. He agreed with her, but said it couldn't be ignored. If she took part, they could regain the trust of the people and recruit worthy individuals into the guild. After a while, the host apologized for the delay and announced that the 558th Hunter exam was about to begin. Journalists covered the event, and the exam participants scattered. Their task was to survive for 24 hours. Sho jumped onto a tree branch, looked down, and saw a crowd of running examinees. He thought that everyone else was probably following the program. Looking at them, he thought that everything was very simple, but also very boring. Then he felt a stream of mana behind him, turned around, and thought that it was very weak, but obviously it was someone from his past. He wondered who it could be, and whether it meant that someone else had been reborn besides him. Meanwhile, the president of the Hunters Association, Kenzo Wakamatsu, was talking to Aoki, and he was curious to know who would become number 1. Aoki suggested that it could be Go Yabuki, who had received 3 abilities during his awakening. He was unsure about the number of abilities, and Aoki said that he apparently had a different opinion. Kenzo Wakamatsu replied that it seemed the young people had forgotten. But the man who had stopped the rift in Japan, Hellfire, was a hunter of a rank lower than S. She thought she couldn't say anything to someone who had seen everything personally, but she asked the president who he thought would be number 1. He replied that the guy with the number 241 seemed to have potential because he didn't waste a minute of his free time. Aoki began searching her tablet for information about number 241, and seeing his photo, recognized Sho. His name was Kuretani Sho. He was 20 years old, and the president said that although he was young, he maintained an amazing calmness, just like him on the battlefield. Looking up from her tablet, Aoki realized that Kiritani Sho had just awakened. Meanwhile, Sho sat in a tree, watching all the examinees, thinking that this was the hunter exam. One of the young men below told another that he had been sharp-tongued since high school. Looking at him, you could tell how much money his grandfather had invested in him. Kushida Shin, concentrating his mana in his fist, replied that he was sure he had told him not to dare slander his grandfather. Yabuki Go said that he was a loser with only 1 ability and apparently wanted a fight. But at that moment, Sho jumped down from the tree and stood between them, much to the surprise of those present. Yabuki Go asked what he was doing there. He said he had no idea who he was, but if he didn't want to get involved, he'd better leave. He said he would do as he advised, because he had met too many problematic people lately, and he hated problem. But saying that he would take this guy with him, he grabbed Kishida Shin and ran off. Yabuki Go told his friends to run after them and not let them get away, and they began the pursuit. But Sho, without stopping, kicked his pursuers and they flew to the side. He continued to run, holding Kushida Shin in his arms, and Shin finally asked who he was. But instead of answering, Sho only asked if he was familiar with the words Aslan Edaya and Rebirth. But he replied that he didn't understand anything. Sho said that he'd better tell the truth about the mana spell he was using. It was Ratiel, and Sho asked what he knew about it and who had taught him. Looking at him in surprise, Kishida Shin asked how he knew about his ability. Deciding that he did seem to know something after all, Sho ran on, dragging the young man behind him. They hid behind a boulder, and Shin told Sho about his ability. Sho realized that he had awakened with the ability his grandfather had taught him, and that this was a problem. Sho thought about how Ratiel had become an ability, but he could be the key to his past. And he said that Shin would be a good assistant, but he wasn't particularly eager to be anyone's assistant. They got to know each other, and it turned out that Sho was older, so Shin asked him to take care of him. Instead of answering, Sho clarified once again that the person who taught him Ratiel was his grandfather. He replied that everything was correct. Sho thought for a moment, and then asked if his grandfather had another name, such as Ruben or Robert. Angered, Kushida Shin asked what he was talking about and added that his grandfather was pure Japanese. Sho thought that he was probably not connected to his past life in any way. He asked how he was connected to those guys. He replied that Yabuki Go was his classmate. After waking up, he bullied those who were weaker than him and always argued with him, but he didn't take him seriously because he was no match for him in terms of abilities. Sho asked if the amount of abilities was really that important. Shin replied that it was important because the more abilities you had, the higher your rank. Then Sho swung his weapon and split the huge boulder they were hiding behind in half. He said he used 1 mana and didn't use his abilities at all. Shin was very surprised that he could do such a thing without abilities. He asked to be taught, saying that he could not forgive rotten people like Yabuki. Sho replied that he would teach him without any problems, but there was one condition and asked him to sit down. Soon they met Yabuki, who said that he did not think Shin would return on his own, and that he apparently wanted to go to the other world before the end of the exam. Shu told him that it would be his fight, and he would not interfere. Shin replied that he didn't need to worry. Yabuki Go thought that his opponent had changed somehow, but decided that he was just a loser with 1 ability, and that he would win even with his eyes closed. Standing aside, Sho thought that the outcome of this battle was already predetermined, and that it was just a waste of time. Kushida Shin told his opponent that he hadn't changed since high school, and was still the same jerk. The opponent, preparing to attack, said to stop talking nonsense and that he could use his powers however he wanted. But rushing into the attack, Shin told him not to cause trouble for those who were not involved. Yabuki Go, creating a shield with his abilities, asked if his opponent really thought he would just let him attack. He added that if he physically attacked this shield made of mana, it would activate the mana explosion ability. Shin held his weapon, which was heating up, and he thought it was getting too hot and felt like his hand was melting. When it was over and he tried to clear his throat, Sho said that he had a habit of keeping his distance and that he should try to avoid doing that tomorrow. They had to use Ratiel correctly, and the next day, Shin thought about how everything was going as his mentor had said, and he only had 1 strike. Sho advised him not to just use mana, but to completely cover his weapon with it and concentrate it all in 1 point. He did so, and his ability increased. Now Shin had to strike right in the center of the fire. He concentrated and struck, and the mana shield that held Yabuki Go flew into pieces. After the shield was destroyed, Kishida Shin struck his opponent, who flew far to the side. Standing in the deuce, Yabuki Go thought it was impossible and did not understand how this could have happened. But before he had time to think about it, his opponent jumped up and struck him again, knocking him to the ground. Standing over his defeated opponent, Shin thought that he had finally done it. He had defeated Yabuki Go. He couldn't believe that he had actually defeated Yabuki before he could use his ability. Kushida Shin told Sho, who was sitting next to the 2 other defeated boys, that he had done it thanks to him. Sho said he was great. He asked his mentor what they would do with the cubes that one of the boys had. Sho replied that they would split them 50-50, but Shin asked if that was fair, since it was obvious that he only had 20%. Sho said that he had mentioned this before the lessons began. He repeated that he would take a portion of his earnings as payment for the lessons, and if he thought about what he would teach him, it would be a good deal. He said that the exam would be over soon, and suggested passing the time by hunting. Shin said that if he could, he would have done so long ago. But the only person who could do that in the remaining 12 minutes was Sho, his mentor. Before leaving, Sho showed him his phone number and asked if it was correct. He said that if he contacted him, it would be better to come and keep the deal a secret. He was about to leave, but Kishida Shin stopped him, saying that there were still a few procedures to go through. He replied that the organizers would take care of that. Approaching the portal, he waved to Shin, who thanked him for saving him. Thus, Kirita Sho passed the exam and became the best among its participants. Sho thought that there were many people like Shin, and that in order to gather more of them, he needed to create a new guild. But to do so, he needed to raise his rank faster. Leaving the portal, he ran into Aoki Sora, who was wearing glasses, and stood silently for a while. Then he turned around, said she was wrong, and walked away. But she tried to stop him, saying she hadn't even said anything yet. He asked if she had any questions, and she replied that she did, of a personal nature. She said she didn't think he would be the first to leave without formalities. Besides, he left using the black exit portal, and ended up right in the middle of the city. Aoki suggested that Kirita Sho chat a little. They went to a hunter's shop, where he tried on a combat jacket. Aoki said it suited him, and would be perfect for someone who specializes in speed combat. She picked out a bunch of other stuff, and Sho said he didn't know what she was trying to do, but she probably couldn't bribe him like that. But Aoki said that she was slightly higher in status than him, and that if something unexpected happened in the dungeon, it was the choice of those who were ready for anything. She told him not to think of it as a favor. This money was his reward for helping to fight the rift. Sho decided that there was no reason to refuse. Then Sho saw a sign that said Materials Corner and asked if they sold them. Aoki replied that they did, but that the materials had to be selected by an expert. After a while, Sho was holding the purchases, and Aoki thought that this should be enough to win him over. As they rode in the elevator, Sho said that she had been silent for too long. Aoki replied that it was just his impression, but she herself was thinking about the price of the materials. Finally making up her mind, she decided to get to the point, and it was an official proposal. She asked Kiritani Sho to join their guild and promised that he would be treated the same as her. Looking closely at Aoki, Sho said that he refused to join her guild. She said that he shouldn't make such a hasty decision and asked him to give a reason. He replied that there was no reason. He just didn't like working for someone else. Let's change the offer. Aoki asked him to work with her because she wanted to feel the power she had gained with him in battle once again. He asked her why she wanted that, since she was Japan's top hunter. Aoki replied that she wanted to achieve even greater heights. She said that the more people believed in her, the more results she had to show, and therefore she needed to become even stronger. Sho said he understood and agreed, because he was also curious to see what Japan's top hunter would become. Aoki took him to her private hall, which was the largest and quietest place. She thought it would be sufficient. He noticed that she had changed her weapon, and as it turned out, the past had been broken when they destroyed the moon. She said she would try to use almost no mana. Sho replied that she could use mana as she wished, and Aoki admitted that she knew he would say that. Then, telling him to get ready, she rushed to attack Sho with her weapon, but he easily deflected her attack with a wave of his hand, and Aoki flew to the side. Pulling out his weapon, Sho thought that because she didn't control her mana very well, she split it, and the fight turned into a parade of brute force. He found it interesting, and now they stood facing each other, ready for battle. Pushing off, Aoki rushed into the attack with her weapon, but Sho managed to jump out of the way in time. He, in turn, lunged at her with his weapon, but Aoki's concentration of mana prevented him from piercing her armor. Realizing that it was mana, Sho thought that its concentration was located where his weapon could not penetrate. Aoki couldn't believe his abilities, and asked if he was really an F-rank hunter. Sho replied that on paper, yes, and Aoki only now began to understand everything. She thought that it wouldn't end so quickly, but Sho threw his weapon on the floor. She asked if he was giving up. He replied that it wasn't, but if he used his mana, he wouldn't be able to hold back, and his mana increased. All this meant was that he recognized her. They prepared for battle again, but Sho realized that she wouldn't let him get close to her and wanted to find a way. He found a way and grabbed the lightning bolt that Aoki had created with his hand. Seeing this, she was surprised that he had just grabbed the lightning bolt with his bare hands. Holding on to the lightning bolt, Sho jumped up and now hung in the air above Aoki. She didn't understand what he was doing. Finally, he landed next to her and thought that it was a technique she had taught him in her past life. He couldn't believe he was using this technique now. Aoki realized that it was a through palm technique. She remembered that when she woke up, she had gained 4 abilities, and she was not only talented, but also very graceful. She stood at a meeting in front of a crowd of people who believed that she had obviously sacrificed a lot during the breakup and deserved to be promoted to rank S. They told her that they would be waiting for her new achievements. She thanked those present and said that everyone was waiting for these achievements because it was her duty. She left, and her driver was waiting for her outside. He said that she had been going on missions for 3 days, and that maybe she should take a day off and rest at home. After thinking for a moment, Aoki said that he was right, and that she should stay home. But then, she saw a group of students. The boys were entertaining the girls, and the girls were asking them to stop. And then, among these students, she noticed one girl and realized that it was her, Aoki. The driver asked if everything was okay, and she said that everything was fine, asking him to take her to the rift. Now, standing in front of Sho, she realized that she had lost. Aoki was ready for this, but it exceeded her expectations, and now she was ashamed. He said it was to be expected, considering that she had been carrying everything on her shoulders. She said that perhaps carrying the whole country on her shoulders was too heavy. Sho said that obviously it wasn't her decision to carry everything on her shoulders, and Aoki cried. She didn't need to rush. Sho said that no matter how much pressure she put on herself, nothing would change. He added that he still supported her actions. Then, Aoki asked him to teach her the secret of his strength. Sho replied that he would teach her, but only if she switched sides to him. After a while, Kishida Shin fought the goblins and defeated several of them. Finally, he told his mentor, Kurita Sho, that he had cleared the area. Sho replied that it was good. But looking around, Shin said that he thought he had seen this place before. Shu looked at his phone and said that it was probably just his imagination. They were in Saitama Prefecture, in a dungeon of rank E. The solid shield that Sho gave him suited Shin very well, and Sho said that from now on, he would go first. He asked if it was too sudden, but Sho replied that he was giving him a role that suited his abilities and that he should not object. Shin said that if that was the case, he would go first. Shu was glad that this guy had talent. At the moment, he had broken up with Aoki Sora, so he needed to focus on getting an S rank in order to found his own guild. He thought that later, he would be able to focus on gathering information about his past life. And then, he heard Shin's cry ahead of him. He ran up to him, and Shin pointed ahead and asked what it was. He stumbled upon a human skeleton. After examining it, Sho said that he had passed away not long ago, as the mana was barely noticeable, but he could still feel its remnants. They walked a little further and found several more lifeless bodies. Shin clarified that this monster was apparently stronger than they had assumed. Sho said that he didn't think it was the monster's doing, judging by the position of their bodies. He realized that first, the healer had been sent to the other world, and then the attacker and the one who was leading the way. A rank E dungeon monster wouldn't have thought of that, and he assumed that it was all the work of another hunter. That meant the boss room would be opposite. A little further on, they came to a place that looked very much like someone's camp. Looking around, Shin said it looked very much like a hideout. Sho said that they had even sent people to their deaths for this, and that they must be terrible people. Sho wondered if they had fled after their hideout was discovered. After all, the traces of mana were still clearly visible. Shin said he couldn't believe they were in the dungeon where they had been hunting. He said it was some kind of bad luck. Sho asked what bad luck he was talking about. Smiling, he added that it was unlikely that anyone could be luckier than them. His ability was that of an executioner, and Sho thought that the time had finally come to try out this ability. After a while, the burial team was working, placing the lifeless bodies into the vehicles. Tamura Khan, the team leader, saw Kiritini and said that he didn't think they would meet again under such circumstances. He also said that Kiritini seemed to have awakened. Meanwhile, Sho was thinking about the fact that this was a burial team. Sho asked if he could tell that Kiritini had awakened just by looking at him. Tamura replied that it was a professional deformation, so to speak. Tamura Khan said that since he was a witness, he needed to discuss the situation with the authorities. But unfortunately, he had other business to attend to. Some people approached them, and he said he would leave the witness with the major. Major Kaoru Tichibana from the Hunter Control Department asked what it meant that the first witnesses were Kurita Sho and Kishida Shin. She clarified that there were only two of them and asked if they had noticed anything suspicious or strange. Sho thought for a moment and replied that he had never seen anything like it before. Major Kaoru Tichibana said that such incidents did not occur in E-rank dungeons and that it brought back memories of her hunting past. Since Sho was going to continue hunting here for a while, he asked for her business card, and she handed it to him and thanked him for his cooperation. Taking the card in his hands, he looked at it and realized that he had seen this symbol before when he was a recruit. It was the symbol of the Hunter Control Department. He thought that, given the complexity of the incident this time, the officers were being interviewed. And then he heard them rushing, because it was a matter of time. As she left, the major asked him to let her know if he remembered anything, and Sho agreed. Watching her leave, he thought about how hunters hunt other hunters. He could barely sense any mana, and realized that they had better hurry. Shin asked him if they weren't going to finish what they had started, but Sho replied that they would rest a little today. He began to pursue the mana he sensed, and its trail led him to Omiya. Sho thought it was nice to hide in a crowded place. Sho approached the door of the hotel room where the mana trail had led him, and realized that he was there. Opening the door, he found that someone had just escaped through the window. Sho also jumped out of the window and began to pursue the one who had left the mana trail. After a while, he caught up with him, and the man asked if he was from the association or the military. Sho replied that if he surrendered, he might be able to ease his fate. But the young man replied that the hero had come, drew his weapon, and said he was not going to surrender. Thinking that Sho couldn't see him, he swung his weapon, saying that he would send him to the other world with one blow. But Sho managed to knock the young man to the ground and twist his arms. He had many questions for the captured man. He asked why he lived in the dungeon, what his name was, how old he was, and who his allies were. But he only asked what was wrong with him and thought that he was a relative of one of those who had gone to the other world. He said that Sho couldn't do anything without a trial anyway, and he told him to stop acting like a mercenary and just arrest him. Looking at him closely, Sho asked if he really thought these threats were just empty words, and that he would be able to calmly continue doing what he had been doing before. He grabbed the frightened young man and said that he was unlikely to remain unharmed, and that he would not judge him according to the law. Sho used one of his techniques, and the young man fell to the ground. Shay realized that he had sent him to the other world. In addition, because of this, his level increased, and he received a super spell of rank S. Looking at the system notification more closely, he realized that the karma of heretics was becoming a higher power. He decided to look into it a little later. He thought that perhaps the term heretics in the executioner's abilities referred to criminals or so-called hunters who used their powers for evil purposes. But it was a good way to become stronger, and Sho seemed to understand what the system meant by sending heretics to the other world. Then his opponent's phone rang, and Sho picked it up. The caller told Maki that the control department had noticed him and asked him to at least answer his calls. The caller said that D-Day was coming soon and that he must not get caught by them. Sho listened carefully all this time and asked if they were a new gang. He said that he seemed to have found a big deal and asked the caller to explain in more detail when D-Day would happen. But his interlocutor just cursed and said he would find him. And then Sho threw the phone on the ground. Taking out the business card he had been given, he remembered the Hunter Control Department and Major Kaoru Tachibana. He even thought that perhaps he should thank the government officials for providing him with the information. After that phone call, the captain slammed his fist on the table and told his employee, who asked if he was okay, that they had caught Maki. The employee asked if they had caught up with them, and Ryuji Joshima, an A-rank hunter, replied that he didn't know yet, but it didn't seem like it was the control department. Now he thought that the enemy was also a hunter, but why would a hunter not affiliated with the state try to stop them? And he decided to meet with that guy. In the special prison of Tento, it was impossible to breathe, and the major explained that this was due to a silencing material that prevented hunters from using their powers. On the way, she told her companion that hunters of rank A and below lose their abilities. Hunters of rank S can only use half of their abilities. He was surprised that she wanted to meet in such a place, but Major Kaoru Tachibana replied that he also knew this guy. He was surprised that she was acquainted with a criminal in this prison, and at that moment, they entered a room where a man was sitting at a table. The major asked her companion if he knew him, and he looked at him and said he had heard of him. It was Hijikata Yusaku, a former hunter and instructor in the control department. He said he hadn't seen Captain Tachibana in a long time, and then remembered that she was a major. He said that hunters quickly rise through the ranks. She replied that he had been talking too much over the past 8 years. He himself had taught her the rules of interrogation, and she wanted him to stop his meaningless chatter. He asked if she had already become a full-fledged expert. Throwing 2 photos in front of him, she said that Joshima Ryuji had made his move, and crimes were becoming more frequent, as if he were in control. Yusaku Hijikata replied that the name was familiar to him, and suggested that she meant that he was secretly controlling him, even though she couldn't contact him. Angered, the major slammed her hands on the table and said that this time, she would make sure that he couldn't move a finger here. She added that an event similar to the one that sent the Prime Minister to the other world 8 years ago would not be repeated. Laughing, Yusaku Hijikata asked Tachibana if she had ever felt the burden of responsibility. Frowning, Major Tachibana Kaoru said that he was talking nonsense again. He replied that the current staff was a bunch of incompetent people standing above them. That was why, 8 years ago, he decided that he wanted to send them to the other world and make an example of them. Although he regretted the tragedies that occurred during the incident, especially since her father was an outstanding hunter, now he was completely neutralized and helpless in a room with the strongest power suppressors. And she wanted to put even more pressure on him. Angered, Major Tachibana Kaoru grabbed him by the chain and asked if he had been sitting quietly in this prison. Looking at him, she added that she would not let him get out of it. When they left, she explained to her companion that 8 years ago, 35 hunters had gathered to stop Hijikata. His plan was to kill the Prime Minister. One of those hunters was her father. In the end, Tsuchikata's actions were stopped by the current chairman, Wakamatsu, but the damage was already done. After telling him all this, she smiled and said that it was all in the past now and he shouldn't worry, and suggested they get back to work. Then she saw a news item on her phone and realized that someone had decided to help them. It was the guy who had escaped from the dungeon the day before. Sho and Shin were in the Brick Mine, a D-rank dungeon. Sho told him that now, in addition to money, he would also take materials. The guy asked why he wouldn't sell the cube, but Sho replied that even in the hunter's shop, there were a lot of things that couldn't be bought, and asked him not to worry. At that moment, A huge monster jumped right at them, and Shin screamed. But then he used his weapon to attack the monster, but it remained invisible. Several monsters surrounded them, and Shin asked why Sho needed materials. He replied that he didn't need them personally and said he would explain later. Shin and Sho dealt another series of blows to the monsters and eventually managed to send them to the other world. Then the ground shook beneath them. Shin said that it must be coming, and Sho confirmed that it was the boss of this mine, Loam. Seeing the monster approaching them, Shin said that no matter what angle he looked at it from, it was simply enormous. Sho said that now was the time and rushed into the attack in anticipation of getting good materials. He attacked the monster with his weapon and was able to send it to the other world. After gathering the necessary materials, Shin said that he could not compete with Sho. Sho replied that it would be difficult if he were his rival. Later, Sho studied the secret technique of fairy flames to unlock latent abilities. From the materials that Aoki Sora bought for him, he was going to create a soul capsule. The main motive for clearing the dungeon with Shin was to obtain materials for creating the soul capsule, which he had been working on all night. But nothing worked out for him, and after many trials and errors, he put his hope in Loam's chin. He began the manufacturing process, looking at the last material and mentally asking for success this time. Finally, a soul capsule that increased endurance appeared before him, but it was not possible to consume more than one capsule per day. Delighted with his success and the fact that he could increase his stats other than just mana, Sho swallowed the capsule. Now his stamina was 11 instead of 10, and he thought that thanks to this, he wouldn't have to rely solely on the executioner. He saw the news saying that an unidentified body had been found at an intersection last night. They also said that the police were continuing to investigate the case and believed it was related to a crime involving forces in Fukui Prefecture. This seemed unexpected to him, so he took the items collected at the scene and decided to report them to the major at the base. He was curious to see if these clues would help. A short time later, Major Kaoru Tachibana approached her car and was surprised to find that someone had left a package with a note on it. Opening the attached note, she read that it was Yuji Maki's phone number. Major Tachibana immediately called Minami and said she would be there soon. Sho was standing around the corner at the time, watching her actions. She said it was about Hijikata's favorite and added that she had an idea. While she was talking, Sho disappeared. Later, she reported to Colonel Matsuo Dusan that when such crimes occur, Joshima Ryuji is somewhere nearby and possibly in the city. He asked if she understood the seriousness of what she was saying. She replied that she did. He asked on what basis she had come to that conclusion. The major replied that only one number was stored in the burned phone, and its signal indicated where Joshima was in Tokyo, where he had last been. Thinking for a moment, the colonel said that the incident had occurred in Fukui, and that their motive was to plant explosives. Joshi had also been spotted in Fukui, and apparently the association was sending hunters after this master. So this was a chance to catch them all at once. She also suggested that Joshi's real target was in Tokyo. The colonel asked if she thought his target was connected to Hijikata. He asked what he might want from the old man. The major replied that perhaps they wanted to attack the prime minister again. She added that even if that wasn't the case, they might be plotting something else. They were already fully prepared and waiting for the control department's next move. The colonel said that the prime minister was flying abroad. He asked if she thought the prisoner would be able to take revenge for what happened 8 years ago. The departure airport was right behind the prison. If she was wrong, he would take full responsibility, or they could prevent a tragedy. He said she hadn't changed and ordered the local police to be assembled. He added that he would try to trust her intuition, but told her to report directly to him if anything happened. Major Tachibana thanked the colonel. The next day, Ryuji Joshima was at the outer wall of Tendo Prison. He was informed via radio that the operation in Fukui had apparently already begun. He opened a map showing all the underground tunnels. He told his companion that it was time to go, and the latter approached the prison wall and placed his hand on it. His magical ability was the Hand of Destruction, and using it, he began to destroy the prison wall. The wall did not yield easily to his influence, and he realized that there must be some kind of dampening material there. He said that under normal circumstances, he could only use his powers once, but if he put on a bracelet, the problem would disappear. Everyone else had to wear bracelets too. The operation began, and a large group of people moved toward the prison. They easily entered the prison, and Joshima Ryuji opened the map again to see where they should go. Reaching the right place, and using the power of the Hand of Destruction, they broke through the ceiling and climbed into the right room. When Joshima Ryuji came out into the corridor, he ran into employees who asked who they were and how they got there. Using his explosive weapon, he knocked one of them to the floor and struck him. He told the others to hurry, as the control room was right in front of them. Joshima pointed to the right door, and his companion used his abilities to make a small hole in it. Joshima exhaled a poisonous substance through the hole. When the room was filled with the substance, they went in and saw the guards lying motionless on the floor. His companion said that if reinforcements arrived, it would be more difficult. Approaching the computer, Joshua opened one of the doors and said that they needed to go to this person. Passing into another room, they all knelt down, and Joshua told the instructor that they had come to take him away. Higikata Yusaku, sitting in front of them in chains, said that it was a very good parade. He added, telling Joshua that he was tired of waiting for him. Meanwhile, the car was heading to the prison, and Major Tachibana asked for more reinforcements and for all participants to be sent. On the phone, she said that after that, if the association could help, but she didn't finish her sentence because she suddenly realized that no one was listening to her. When they arrived and broke into the prison, she and her partner realized they were too late. They saw prison staff lying on the floor and criminals fleeing. They were just a step too late. Major Tachibana wanted to chase after them, but her partner warned her that it was too dangerous. The criminals were leaving, but the Major realized that the suppressors were still working. She thought that if they couldn't use their powers, then they still had a chance to win, and she took out her weapon. Then one of the criminals turned around and saw her, not understanding what she was going to do. The Major fired, but he used his abilities to stop the bullets with one hand. Smirking, he asked why she didn't even say hello. He added that the Hunter Control Department had very bad manners. She was very surprised that his ability worked even with the suppressors active, and didn't understand how that was possible. He called them dumb servants, and asked if they really thought they would come unprepared. Seeing the bracelet on his hand, she realized that it was blocking the effect of the suppressors. Josima, meanwhile, said that she was looking for trouble again, and Hijikata clarified whether he was talking about Tachibana. They turned around, and he said he saw a familiar face. He asked sarcastically if she had come to celebrate their release from prison with them. She told him to stop talking nonsense and go back to his cell. She also said that she knew he was targeting the Prime Minister again, just like 8 years ago. Yusaku Hijikata replied to Major Tachibana that she was as perceptive as ever. But he said that her arrival would not change anything, and that he did not plan to fight her because she was going to die today anyway. Turning around, he said he asked for her forgiveness, but the guys at the airport were strict about punctuality. Then the guards rushed in, and she told them not to let him go, but to stop him. They started shooting, but one of the criminals stopped the bullets. Joshima exhaled the poisonous substance again, and the guards tried to run away. Tachibana yelled at Hijikata to stay where he was, but the third member of the association blocked her way and said that if she wanted to play, he barely touched her with his fingers when she recoiled in pain. Her partner Manami told him not to move and fired, but he replied that he couldn't possibly think he would allow himself to be hit. Stopping the bullets, he asked if that was all the Hunter Control Department was capable of. It was laughable, and he said he would wipe his opponent into dust. He was about to rush at the Major, but in an instant, he screamed and collapsed to the floor as his arm was severed. Putting his hand on her shoulder, Sho stood next to Major Tachibana and said that only the two of them were left. Major Tachibana was very surprised to see him. Sho just said that it had been a long time. Then the wounded man got up and said that he could use his ability for once, and that he liked Sho's power. He added that this arm was expensive. Sho smiled and thought that small pawns who couldn't do anything were the same in all worlds. The man asked what he was laughing at and rushed at him. Swinging his weapon, Sho was ready to repel the attack and strike his opponent. But with a single movement of his hand, the man created a barrier. And Sho thought that he had created a mana barrier instantly. Thinking it was a trivial trick, Sho rushed at his opponent and sent him to the other world, even through the barrier. The system notified him that his level had increased and Sho had gained a new ability. Joshima, seeing what had happened, did not understand how he had done it. Shu told him that he was next. He replied that he must be under the influence of a suppressor and asked how he could release so much mana. Sho smiled and said that they had caused such a commotion just because of one sinner, but he would have to pay for his sins. Then Joshima remembered that he had heard this voice somewhere before, telling him that he had entrusted such important work to a dead man. He became angry when he realized that it was Sho he had been talking to on the phone. He began to concentrate his power and said that since he had destroyed Maki, he could forget about going to the afterlife anytime soon. Sho replied that he hadn't expected Joshima to mourn his partner. He added that he should stop whining and attack. Yelling for him to shut his mouth, Joshima hurled pillars of poisonous flame at him. He thought that compared to Aokisora's lightning bolts, his fire was much easier to stop. And yet, a single hit from his ability was enough to send anyone to the other world. And if he hit him, it would be sad. Deciding that he needed to end this fight quickly, Sho prepared his weapon and rushed into the attack. His opponent continued to direct pillars of poisonous flame at him, but Sho easily dodged them and was already closing in on him. Sho quickly struck Joshima with his weapon and sent his opponent to the other world. After that, his level rose again. Major Tachibana thought it was incredible, because the suppressors were now active, and he could move like that without his abilities, only with his weapon skills. She remembered that they had met before in the E-rank dungeon and asked him his name. He replied that he was Kiritani Sho. She asked how he got in here. He said that now was not the time to think about that, because there was another person with them. He only crossed paths with him for a second, but he recognized him immediately. Sho said that mana like his was rarely found, and that he was possibly the strongest person he had ever met in this world. But he said that everything was going according to his predictions, and asked if she still had reinforcements. Meanwhile, explosions set off by Hijikata Yusaku were rocking Haneda Airport. Hiding from them, the fighters didn't understand what was going on. Someone suggested that it must be a hunter of at least S rank. The commander said that the main plane had to take off anyway, and that they needed to contact the association and request backup and fire together on command. They opened fire, but the bullets melted before they even reached Hijikata Yusaku. The fighters rushed towards the enemy, but he stood barefoot in the fire and said that life teaches people nothing. He threw a pillar of fire at the group of fighters, sending them all to the other world. Behind him, a man with a weapon in his hands jumped down, intending to strike. But Hijikata grabbed him by the face and said he didn't believe that any of the hunters were still alive. He slammed the man to the ground with his fiery hand and said he was so weak and wondered who his instructor was. Shaking the ashes of the hunter from his hand, Hijikata thought that he couldn't find the politician and that he had probably used them all to hide. The prison was a gloomy place, but it gave him an excellent opportunity to study his abilities. Now, a new manifestation of fire had been added to the few abilities he already possessed. Thinking that this ability was worthy of an instructor, he blew up another plane with a single blow. On the way to the airport, Major Tachibana told Sho that she recognized his strength, but Hijikata was on a completely different level. Spreading his arms, Sho said that there was no need to say anything and that helping was his main goal. But the Major said that his face said otherwise. However, she herself thought that all the basics were now in Fukui, and she couldn't be picky about choosing help. He had proven his strength, and all that was left was to believe in him. When they arrived at the scene, Major Tachibana only commented on the fire show Hijikata had put on there. She said she would deal with Hijikata herself, and that they should take care of the victims. Sho thought that even though Hijikata Yusaku was an instructor in the control department, he was now a criminal, and fit the criteria for his executioner ability. Major Tachibana told him that since this was an emergency, she didn't care about checking him out, but she couldn't guarantee his safety either, and told him to protect himself. She added that he shouldn't do anything terrible. She asked him to understand the limits of his abilities and to be careful. Shu thanked her for the advice and said he would remember it. Meanwhile, Hijikata found the Prime Minister and said he had been waiting for him. The Prime Minister recoiled in horror when he saw him. Hijikata said that after 8 years in prison, he had come to the conclusion that he could not tolerate orders from someone like him who had no abilities at all. But then, realizing that someone was approaching him, he turned around and told Tachibana that he had warned her so many times, but she had come anyway. She replied that she had told him to sit quietly in his cage, but he had crossed all boundaries anyway. He said that time flies very quickly, and she had grown a lot. But Major Tachibana told him to stop talking nonsense and surrender. But Hijikata Yusaku said that surrendering was just nonsense and rushed straight at the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister fell to the ground, and Sho blocked Hijikata's path, asking him to step aside. He reached out his hand to help the Prime Minister up, and the Prime Minister thanked him and asked who he was, but Sho replied that he didn't think he should reveal his name. Hijikata, who was watching them, asked who he was, and Sho turned around and said that he had already said that there was no need to reveal his name. Hijikata, saying that he understood everything, became angry and threw a pillar of fire at them. But Sho, taking the Prime Minister by the hand and jumping onto the roof of the building, said that he would take him to a safe place. The Prime Minister apologized to him for the inconvenience. Hijikata said that he was wrong to think he could escape from him and was about to follow them, but Tachibana Kaoru blocked his way. She was wearing armor on her arms and said that this was very bad and that it seemed that the instructor had lost 50% of his mind. He replied that this was not true and that he had fulfilled 50% of his plan, adding that when they all went to the other world, it would all be over. He rushed into the attack. He struck her and managed to wound her, saying that he doubted she would remain unharmed. But her ability was super regeneration, and Hijikata realized that she had allowed him to wound her in order to damage his bones. But he added that it was too naive and grabbed Major Tachibana by the throat. He threw her away and she fell to the ground. And when she got up, she saw that Sho had returned, but she said that it was enough because even he was no match for him. He replied that she had done everything she could and that she didn't need to force herself anymore, but just watch. Heading towards his opponent, he added that then she would understand what it meant to exceed her limits and use her full potential. When he approached Hijikata, the latter said that it was great that he had escaped from prison, but it seemed that many people had come to congratulate him. However, he added that it didn't matter because he had no obligation to be his opponent. He told Sho to just stand still, because he had no desire to waste energy on trash. But Sho threatened him with his weapon and said that if he wanted to, he could go through him, but he would do what he thought was necessary. Hijikata was surprised by this, but decided to see if this guy could handle him and attacked him with fire. However, Sho dodged the attack with such speed that even Hijikata was surprised. Sho rushed past him using his new ability, a poisonous substance. However, the substance had no effect on him, and Hijikata tried to strike again, but his opponent dodged once more. Pausing for a moment, he said that he now understood why Tachibana felt that way about him. At the same time, he believed he could see Sho's weakness. They stood facing each other, and Hijikata said that mana was very similar to ordinary physical ability. But he added that in battles between hunters, mana served as the foundation, and that was the difference between them. Sho said he had heard that Hijikata used to be an instructor, but that his lessons were too boring. He asked if it was possible to boast about having a huge amount of mana. He added that if he didn't feel like fighting, he could just go back to his cell. Sho understood that the difference in their mana was too great, and that his opponent was now stronger than him. Realizing this, he wanted to make it an exhibition match. Meanwhile, his opponent decided to use his super spell ability. He repelled the attack and asked if he would admit that he didn't want to attack. Hijikata said that he might, but once again, tried to strike. Jumping away from him, Sho said that he was too slippery. He thought to himself that if they continued, the fight could drag on. Deciding that it might be better to increase the distance, he jumped up. Hijikata, watching his actions, thought that his opponent had already given up. When Sho was already jumping over the fence, he laughed and said that he shouldn't think he could escape so easily. He began to chase him, and Sho thought that it seemed he would not let him increase the distance and that he was playing with him. Sho jumped from his place, and his opponent laughed and asked if he wanted to play tag. Stopping and looking at Hijikata approaching, Sho realized that the same thing had happened again. As soon as he tried to get closer, he used his body to accelerate. Sho realized that he had only one chance, and that he needed to put all his mana into this blow. As he approached, Hijikata said that since he had closed his eyes, it meant he really wanted to be turned to ashes. Swinging his arm, Sho decided to use his habit of lunging forward without thinking and strike his opponent on the head at that moment. As he attacked, Hijikata shouted that strength was a blessing and that he was using it for the sake of pathetic humans. At that moment, Sho struck him, sending him to the other world. Seeing that his plan had succeeded, Sho smiled, and the system announced that his level had increased and he had gained a new ability. Sho sat down on the ground, exhaled, and said that he was very tired because he hadn't fought like that in a long time. They were being watched, and one of the observers said that people who were not chosen end up here, and that this is their fate. The boy said that it seemed he shouldn't have told him what he knew. The girl replied that they needed to get rid of useless trash. Pointing at Sho, the boy asked who he was. He was weak but reliable and had a lot of mana. Taking each other's hands, they decided it was time to go, because they were already being waited for. They had to tell everything they knew in the smallest detail. Later, Sho trained with Aoki Sora. She thought about how she needed to control her lightning like threads. When she failed again, he said that after a few more attempts, she would succeed. She asked if she would become stronger. Another explosion occurred, and Sho thought it was interesting, but not for him. Aoki Sora realized that she had to focus all her lightning in one point and release it. But again, she failed. After training, she saw the news that reporters had arrived at the scene at Haneda Airport the night before. They said they were trying to contact the hunter who defeated Hijikata Yusaku and saved the Prime Minister. And Aoki looked at the screen. It turned out to be Kurita Sho, who had 5 abilities when he awakened. Reporter Yoshida managed to get a few comments from the hunter in person. Aoki watched the interview, where the reporter told Sho that they say he surpassed Aoki Sora. He replied that this couldn't be true, because he was still too weak. Angered, she went back to training to focus her lightning attacks. She decided to complete this task by the end of the day. Meanwhile, in another world, several masked people gathered around a round table. The chair of the meeting asked what had happened this time, since she had said that they would stop meeting for a while. Another member of the meeting replied that the twins had found a problematic person. He commands mana and was able to use her spells. The man in the hawk mask asked him how many times they had traveled the world because of such words, and what the twins had forgotten there in the first place. He replied that he had used them to test a new development, and they had discovered this person by accident. The man in the hawk mask said that he was not involved in this, as it was too energy intensive, and if he was so concerned, he could deal with it himself. The chair of the meeting said that 50 years had passed since then, and people had become better at controlling mana. Now, not only could they release mana, but Hijikata was one of them. She continued by saying that the same thing had happened 11 years ago. The person who stopped the rupture was another coincidence. The man in the lion mask asked the man in the snake mask sitting next to him if he thought the same, but he remained silent. Another member of the meeting said that everything was fine as long as they had information, and since he had a lot of time, it was worth watching. He asked if the mask had crushed his brain, but his interlocutor replied that everything had been calm for the last few days. But he asked about the swordsman. He added that if what the twins had seen was true, then in their world, he was doomed to a miserable existence, and his limits were crystal clear. After meeting with Sho and watching the news about him, Major Tachibana asked if he was creating a public image for himself. Lifting his mug, he replied that people only see what they want to see, and if he made a good impression at first, they would elevate him themselves. He asked the Major if she was okay, as she seemed very distracted. He asked her to clear her head of unnecessary thoughts, and not to wonder whether it was necessary or not. Putting the bag on the table, she said that the country needed them to eliminate the criminal who was terrorizing it. Calmly sipping from his mug, Sho asked if it was necessary. She replied that this was what the employees of the Hunter Control Department did. She understood that he had followed her to find someone connected to Maki, and that they would not be investigating this case. But they wanted him to join the department. Sho smiled, and the Major said that they would support his efforts, provide the necessary equipment, and give him the best conditions. Putting his mug back down, Sho thanked her for her kind words, but he wasn't that excited about the offer. He added that people like Joshima or Toyama would be happy about it. At first, she didn't get what he was talking about, but then she remembered Joshima Ryuji's ability to use poison, and Toyama's acid ability, called the Hand of Doom. Kurita had publicly declared that he had the same abilities, and she realized that he could steal abilities. Sho said that she was too loud and should understand why he didn't want to explain anything. He added that if she didn't want to be the next snack, she looked at him, thinking that if he really could steal abilities, what other abilities did he have? He stood up and put his hand on her shoulder, thanking her for her understanding. But since he had another meeting, he asked her to forgive him. As he left, he added that he would look forward to working with her again. Sho thought that now he could become stronger without relying on leveling up, but he didn't understand why the Executioner and Heretics had to have their own reasons for this. At that moment, Eri woke up and saw Sho. He asked how she was feeling. She replied that she needed to undergo a couple more tests, but it looked like she would be able to cure her allergy to mana. He asked if it was because of the rift. She thought so, because she had been recovering quickly since that day. Then Sho said that was very bad. He opened the box and added that she didn't need these soul capsules anymore. She said she would gladly accept anything Sho wanted to give her. She swallowed several capsules at once, and Sho thought that Ren would be happy to see how energetic she had become. He asked if she needed anything, or if there was anything she wanted. Eri shoved another capsule into her mouth, swallowed it, and said she wanted to become a hunter. Sho objected, saying it was too dangerous, but she replied that didn't mean she couldn't become one. It was the world her brother had dreamed of, and she wanted to see it with her own eyes. When Eri said these words, Sho saw mana appear around her. His phone rang. It was Tamura from the Hunters Association, who said it had been a long time. He said he was calling because he had information for him, and asked Sho if he had a free moment. He looked at Eri, and there was no longer any mana around her, and Sho thought he had imagined it. He waved to her and told Tamura on the phone that he was free. Tamura began to talk about the decision the association had made because of the recent incident. A month later, Shin, reading the news about Sho, asked why he wasn't angry that they were talking about him, but he replied that he was more concerned that Shin was still in rank C, even though he was teaching him, and he began to wonder what was causing him to practice so little. But Shin believed that for a novice hunter, he was developing quickly, and there was no other hunter who had grown so quickly in just a few days. Sho told him not to compare himself to others, because if you get carried away comparing yourself to others, you will never grow. Changing the subject, Shin said he was curious about what the association wanted from Sho. Sho replied that he didn't know, and that they would probably find out if they went there. At the association, they were greeted by Tamura, who waved to Kirita and said it had been a long time. Sho replied that it was a surprise to him that it was Tomura who greeted him. Tamura replied that they decided it would be better if someone Sho already knew greeted him. He suggested they go in, as the president was already waiting for him. Kenzu Wakamatsu, who introduced himself as the president of the Japanese branch of the Hunters Association, apologized for making Sho travel such a long way. In response, the young men introduced themselves as Sho Kurita and Shin Kishida, who even bowed. Kenzu Wakamatsu told Shin that he had quickly become stronger recently. He added that Toru would be proud of them if he hadn't passed away. He said he would be happy to talk to his friend's grandson, but since he had invited the most famous newcomer in town, he couldn't afford to do so. Sho took the tablet from the table and, reading it, realized that it was about his rank. The president said that they had raised his rank to A. He said that such a rapid rise in rank was unusual, and that even Aoki Sora had taken a year to reach rank A. Sho replied that he thought he was worthy of rank S, and of course, he was ready to provide proof. Wakamatsu Kenzo understood that he was not particularly happy about this, but clarified that Sho could not rise to rank S with only basic abilities. After all, only those who had proven their strength were worthy of this rank. Therefore, Wakamatsu Kenzo wanted to make Sho an offer, and Sho became interested. It was about the Aichi dungeon. According to the scouts, all the monsters there were like defenders. They decided this because weapons had no effect on the monsters. Sho thought that somewhere in this dungeon, a core was hidden, and perhaps it was a type of rift. The president said that if he joins the investigation, the result would prove his strength. Sho replied that he had a good attitude towards newcomers. Returning the tablet, Sho said that the group could only consist of guilds. He asked if there was a limit on the number of people entering the dungeon. Kenzu Wakamatsu asked if he wanted to create his own guild. Sho replied that now was the right time for it, because he needed to join this group. Shaking his hand goodbye, the president said that Tamura would inform him of the details and wished him luck. Sho thanked him. Shin asked why he was suddenly creating a guild. Sho replied that he had wanted to start one when the opportunity arose, and now was the right time. He thought about the name of the guild. It was a good opportunity because he wanted to attract people he had known in his past life. It had to be something memorable from his past life. The continent of Aslan, the god Adia, and the reboot came to mind. The bad memories were clearer than the good ones, and in the end, he named it the F-Rank Guild Reboot. Shin said that they currently had 2 members, the mentor and himself. He said he thought they needed a healer. They were necessary for dungeon raids. Sho thought they were indispensable and that it was always better to have one on the team. He told Shin that he didn't have to go with him on the raid because it was dangerous. Shin had a talent. He would be able to complete the development of the mana spell ability of the ancient race of dragons, Ratiel, in the future, but not now. He said that this time they would go to an S-rank dungeon, and Shu couldn't promise to protect him, but Shin replied that he wanted to go with his mentor. Shin said that he wouldn't get stronger if he sat idly by, and that he needed to challenge himself all the time. Turning around, Sho thought that Shin had learned to say the right things. Shin behind him asked if he was listening to him. Sho suggested going to the hunter's shop because their equipment was not good enough. Later, he met Aoki Sora, and she said that she was not someone Kirita Sho could call at will. He replied that even though she said so, she still came, which meant she had her own motives. He asked if she had dyed her hair. She replied that she would tell him about it another time, and asked what he wanted from her today. Showing her his tablet, he said that he had been asked to join a group clearing the dungeon in Aichi and needed an expert's opinion. Shin asked who this suspicious person was. He replied that Shin shouldn't worry so much, and that he thought Shin also knew who she was. When Aoki said they could go and took off her mask, Shin wanted to shout that it was her. Sho covered his mouth and said it would be problematic if she was recognized. Aoki Sora said she would show them the best places with the best things for hunting. Soon, Shin came out of the store with huge bags, and Sho thought they were completely ready with their equipment. He asked Aoki what weapons to take, as he didn't see anything special here. She replied that apparently there were no weapons suitable for him here. She remembered a small shop she always went to and suggested they go there. After greeting her, Izumi Shigoro, the owner of technical abilities, asked what she was going to order today. Apologizing, Aoki said that today she was here to introduce these two, pointing to Sho and Shin. They introduced themselves as Kirita Sho and Shin, bowing as Kashida Shin. Looking at them, Izumi Shigoro snorted and told them to leave. Turning away, he said that even if it was Sora herself who asked, he would not sell anything to these two. Aoki did not understand why. Sho said that he would not choose a weapon just because it was made by a blacksmith, as it should be valuable in its own right. He said that no matter how arrogant he acted, there was nothing special about it, although he had expected something impressive, and picked up one of the weapon. After examining the weapon, Sho said that it felt like it would break in his hands, and asked how he could sell such a thing for money. The man became enraged, and asked if he was a coward, calling him a brat. He said that if Sho could break the weapon, he could have anything from the store. Sho touched the weapon with his finger, and used his abilities. Even Aoki was surprised by this. Under the influence of Sho's abilities, the weapon split in two, and the remains fell at his feet. Izumi Shigoro stood in utter amazement, staring at what was left of his weapon. Sho asked him what he had said earlier. Holding out the second part of the broken weapon, Sho asked him if he had any more objections. Looking at the broken weapon, Izumi Shigoro couldn't believe it, because it wasn't made of wood. Sho said that it seemed he was limited in his work, and hoped that he was also limited in his promises. Shin tried to calm him down at that moment. Izumi Shigoro asked Sora who this guy was. She replied that he might have heard of him before. She said that he was the one who destroyed the rift's defenses. He finally realized that they were talking about the newcomer who destroyed the rift with a single blow. Clutching his head, he said that he seemed to have grown old and couldn't believe that he hadn't recognized a man of such stature. Sho asked him to show them the materials for weapons that they could use. He also wanted to sell him the materials they would bring. He replied that he understood and asked them to follow him. And even though it was a verbal promise, he would keep his word. That was the price he paid for underestimating Sho. Turning the lever, he opened the door to the basement and asked them to follow him. They found themselves in a weapons storage room, and Shin asked if it was true that he could take whatever he wanted. He replied that it was true, but only what he would use. Walking down the aisle, Sho thought that compared to the gnomes, everything here was not so impressive. But if he was so competent, then he understood his confidence in the matter. Then his gaze was drawn to a huge weapon engulfed in flames, and he stopped near it. Approaching Izumi Shigoro, he asked if he was interested. Sho replied that it was in his line of work. He replied that it was from an SS rank rift that had occurred 11 years ago. It was an effective weapon created from materials collected from the defenders. He said that it burned everything that came near it. Sho asked why such a weapon was just lying around somewhere. He replied that no one could take the items left behind after the rift was closed, and that there would be no problems with it until it was lit. But Sho had already taken it. When Izumi Shigoro saw that he had taken the weapon, he shouted in horror at Sho, asking what he was doing. Holding the weapon in his hand, he replied that he just wanted to test the characteristics of an SS-class defender. The other man recoiled and fell, saying that even though it was only a fragment, this weapon belonged to an SS-class rift hunter, and a novice could not handle it. Sho had no idea that the ability he had received from Hijikata, the embodiment of flame, would come in so handy. This fiery mana felt like a living creature. Its effect was quite strong, and he asked Aoki if she had come today because she wanted to ask him something. She didn't understand what he wanted to do, but Sho said that if she had trained as he had taught her, she should be able to see the density of the stance. Aoki remembered that he had said not to put any force into it, but to just relax. And most importantly, to keep the rhythm varied. He added that since she had recommended good things for Shin, he would show her. Shin had a prickly web weapon made of A-rank material. He said that she needed to change the lines of her mana, and just like with lightning, she needed to change the direction at one specific point. Now she could go, and from that moment on, the weapon belonged to Sho. Everyone present looked at him, and their surprise knew no bounds. Sho tried out the weapon, and it released a flame, and then there was an explosion. Then the weapon began to transform and turned into a bracelet, and Sho thought that this was some kind of advanced technology. The stats window opened and a new martial arts master ability appeared. Sho realized that his current experience had activated an ability from his past life. Now he could use any weapon, and Sho said he would take it. Aoki said that he had taught her a lot and didn't think that one shopping trip was enough to repay him. Shu asked if she had any information. She asked him to be careful in the S-rank dungeon he was about to enter. Sho was surprised. He didn't understand why she was suddenly telling him this. Aoki said that there were many hunters who didn't like him. The dungeon was isolated from the outside world, and many hunters were greedy and vengeful. He should be careful with high-ranking hunters. Their guild was also going to participate, and she asked him to let her know if he needed help. Sho replied that he could handle it himself. Aoki said that for someone who had single-handedly eliminated Hijikata, she was showing too much concern. A few days later, the participants in this event arrived at Magnus's Cradle, an S-rank dungeon in Aichi province. While sorting through his things, Shin said that, as expected, it was a little nerve-wracking because it was an S-rank dungeon. Sho said that if he followed him, there would be no problems, but he agreed that there was a strange atmosphere here. Shin thought that even professionals would surely be nervous, but if they started freaking out on each other, as Sho said, everything would be fine. Then he noticed how some of them were looking at Sho and whispering, and said that it seemed that Aoki was right to be worried, and that they would cause them problems. Entering one of the tents, Sho said he was glad to meet them, and introduced himself as Kurita Sho, master of the Reboot Guild. Sitting silently in front of him were Yasuda Yaoki, master of the long-range attack guild Dalnik, and Yamagawa Nami, master of the buff guild Yamabiko. Then Sho realized that they were probably going to pretend he wasn't there. Another hunter, Arakawa Jin, master of the Titan Guild, entered the tent. He asked in surprise if these were all the members of the third group. Kurita Sho introduced himself as the master of the Reboot Guild, but the other asked what kind of guild had only 2 members. He said he had heard about him before, and that people said he was the one who had dealt with Hijikata. Sho replied that he had just been lucky. The other said that was true, because he had seen Hijikata in middle school before, and thought that even now, he would not have been able to defeat him in the past. He added that he wondered how such an inexperienced hunter with such abilities could defeat him. Sho understood what was going on, and said that he could check for himself. Sho said that it seemed like he didn't believe in his abilities, and if he couldn't do it, then neither could anyone else, and that was foolish. Arakawa Jin jumped up from the table and angrily cursed at Sho. Yasuda Yaoki also stood up and told them both to stop because it was time for them to go out and clean up. Then, approaching Sho and grabbing him by the shoulder, Arakawa Jin said he would test how long he could last. All the monsters in Magnus's Cradle were identified as guards. The real reason was unknown, but it was considered to be the core inside the dungeon. Outside the dungeon, the hunters set up camp in case something went wrong. After all, no one knew if the rift would break out. Uhara Genosuke, master of the Poison Guild and commander of the Conquest, said that this dungeon was completely different from the others. He said that this time, the Conquest team had been assembled to prevent danger in advance, and he wanted the teams to monitor their areas. Everyone set off, and Shin said that he would finally enter an S-rank dungeon. No sooner had they entered than someone shouted that they were being attacked, and a pack of monsters rushed at them. Arakawa Jin told them to aim for their legs and use their abilities when the front and rear rows changed. Looking at what was happening, Sho thought that there was no place for him to join the fight, and realized that he had decided to leave him out of it. He thought that since Arakawa Jin was pushing him into a place where their lives were in danger, he was an idiot. Shin asked his mentor if everything would be okay with him. Shu told him not to worry, because this level was actually perfect for him. A huge monster appeared in front of them, and Sho thought that everything would happen soon, and it seemed that they were no longer even going to hide it. Arakawa Jin said that it seemed like it was time for a quote restart, and time to stop hiding. What could they do if there were only 2 people on their team? Sho replied that they were already done with their preparations, so he should shut up and watch. He thought there was no need to use the infernal ash weapon, and shouted to Shin that it was time to attack. Running up to the monster, Shin used his new weapon and took a defensive stance. Watching his actions, Sho told him not to stop and to send waves. The other hunters watching him couldn't believe that this was a C-rank hunter, and that he had done it himself. At that moment, Sho jumped at the monster and attacked it with his weapon, managing to wound it. The monster growled and was about to pounce on him, but Shin said that he was his opponent and attacked with his weapon. At that moment, a weapon flew by, and Sho caught it and asked what it was. Yasuda Yaoki replied that it seemed difficult for them, so they decided to help. He asked if there were any problems. Breaking his weapon, Sho said that they didn't need help with such an easy opponent, and asked if they had heard of manners. One of the hunters wanted to say something, but Yasuda Yaoki stopped him. Sho said that they should take care of themselves, because they knew better than anyone else how to do it. At that moment, Sho saw out of the corner of his eye that a huge monster snake had appeared behind him. He quickly attacked it with his weapon and sent it to the other world with a single blow. The hunters who saw this couldn't believe their eyes. Sho looked at them and said that quality is much more important than quantity. Although people in guilds with thousands of members will never understand this. Yamagawa Nami said that this guy was a very famous hunter, so at least he must have self-confidence. The rest were told to deal with him quickly so that everyone could move on. Then Sho realized that he sensed a strange presence behind him, and turning around, he shouted for everyone to lie down. A huge snake was descending from the tower onto the hunters. The snake released many spikes from its body, injuring several hunters. One of the spikes flew straight at Shun, but Sho protected him in time by intercepting it with his weapon. The spike fell to the ground at their feet, and suddenly a funnel appeared in it. Shu realized that it was a trap, and that they had activated it. The dungeon, Magnus's Cradle, was named after the characteristics of the monster's attacks. The hunters tried not to get hit by the spikes thrown by the snake, and had to be extremely careful. Sho thought that this was precisely why the previous investigation had been interrupted. He could defend himself against attacks of this magnitude without magical powers, which proved that he was slowly regaining the intuition from his past life. Telling Shin that it was dangerous here and that he needed to move away, Sho went ahead. Shin replied that he understood. Sho decided that he had to dispatch this creature before it could do any more damage, so he swung his weapon and attacked it. One precise strike was enough to send the monster to the other world. When it was over, Arakawa Jin thanked him for dealing with the snake. He took Shin hostage, threatening him with his weapon, and told Sho not to dare to play tricks. Sho thought that he had been too hasty in dealing with the monster, and that it was a stupid idea to do something like this to the other members of the group. The other hunters fought each other. Those who were not affected by the poison were ordered to put on protective masks and fight. It was necessary to neutralize everyone under the influence, and all healers had to help with the wounds. Seeing the reason for what was happening, Sho thought that they had become too carried away with the trajectory of the attacks, and it was all because of the additional mind-poisoning effect of the shells. And he wondered if Arakawa Jin could have expected such a turn of events from the very beginning. Arakawa Jin said that it was much easier for him to do it, and now he could simply say that he was under the influence of poison gas. He said that Sho dared to make him look like a fool, and now he would have to deal with the consequences. And he told him to give him his weapon. It was an unexpected psychological attack on the battlefield, where enemies cannot be distinguished from allies. Sho thought that he would surely be forgiven, but he did not foresee that he could also take advantage of this poisoning, and he asked if Arakawa Jin was sure he could handle him without a weapon. He replied that Sho probably wanted to say that he was wrong. He replied that this was true, and that he had done everything wrong from the start. After all, he wasn't the only one who could lose control here. And with the help of his magical abilities, he was able to convince Shin to lie down on the ground. Shin quickly dropped to the ground, while Sho dealt a crushing blow to his opponent, sending him to the other world. A system notification appeared, stating that Sho's level had been raised and a new ability had been added. Looking at the lifeless body of his opponent, Shin asked his mentor what they would do now. Yasuda Yaoki and Yamagawa Nami approached, and Sho said that it seemed that Arakawa Jin had avoided being hit by the core, but had been subjected to a psychic attack. He added that the beastly state of an S-class hunter was simply terrible. He asked what they thought it was like. Yasuda Yaoki remained silent. Sho asked them again, and they said that it seemed like a monster had taken over his mind. Aoki Sora was sitting in her private tent reading when she felt a slight flow of mana. She went to see who it was and saw Sho. He asked if she was waiting for him. She replied that she was, and that he was the only one who got on people's nerves in this way. Aoki asked what he wanted, and clarified whether another hunter had done something to him. He said he had already taken care of it, but more importantly, he was interested in what they planned to do next. She said he could have at least asked how she was doing. Sho replied that one glance was enough, and that the first team had returned because she was fine. Aoki said she would be on the same team as the top hunters. Sho asked her to recommend him when the teams were being formed. Angered, she said that was very like him, but Sho said he thought they were close enough for such requests, to which she replied that he shouldn't decide that they were close and that they had only met a few times, so the relationship wasn't that close. Then Sho promised to teach her the next step in using mana. But Aoki said that he shouldn't expect anything, because if it was a request from her that wasn't worth paying attention to, the guildmasters would surely reject it. He replied that it didn't matter to him, because her recommendation was much more important. Turning around, Aoki said that she didn't need his flattery. Sho was surprised that she was angry, but before returning, he decided to check what he had received from Arakawa. He didn't see many abilities that he could use. His ability was Berserk, which increased all stats except resistance. He thought it wasn't bad, but he wasn't sure how to use it, and realized that his abilities remained the same. On the second floor of the temporary camp, magicians were treating the wounded, one of them asking the injured young man to be patient. Shin thought that the first group on the second floor had been attacked by the same monster, and apparently they had taken too long to figure it out, so the damage had spread. A few hours later, the remaining team was ordered to guard the first floor. An elite group was sent to the second floor. Shin whispered to his mentor about the strings he had pulled. No matter how cool he was, these people wouldn't take him into the first squad. Looking at Aoki Sora, he replied that he had simply used his pass. As he left, Sho told Shin that if anything happened, he should contact the Yod Guild. Everyone there knew Aoki, so he wouldn't get lost. Shin said he understood. The team, along with Sho, led by Ohara Junisuke, began to climb to the second floor. They had barely made it up when energy shells flew at them. Ohara Junisuke barely managed to deflect one of them. One of the hunters shouted that the power of these shells was many times greater than on the first floor, and that everyone needed to be careful. A barrage of shells rained down on the group, and they barely had time to cover themselves with their shields. After deflecting another one, Sho thought that they were so well prepared, as if they had been waiting for his arrival. Then, a horde of huge monsters exuding poisonous substances appeared in front of the group. There were many more of them than the hunters had expected. The monsters rushed into the attack, firing poisonous shells at the hunters. The hunters barely had time to take cover, and even thought they were being mocked, because these monsters were 10 times stronger than those on the first floor. One of them shouted that they meant higher than rank S, and that the association had definitely underestimated them. Commander Ohara Junisuke thought that since there was no way back, they couldn't even retreat. He thought it was a little too early, but he had to activate his unshakable alliance ability. The whole group felt their endurance, vitality, and resistance increase. Sho realized that this was the effect of Guild Master Uhara's ability. The other hunters had expected this from Captain Uhara, and now the monster's projectiles were no match for them. One of them activated a mana wall, and it worked. The projectiles began to explode before reaching them. He shouted to the others that there were 30 seconds left until the next spell. They replied that they would cover him while the ability was recast up. Meanwhile, 2 hunters were brought to the mages, saying that they had been overcome by rage, and they promised to cure them. Watching them, Sho realized that high-ranking hunters had excellent communication and teamwork skills. While he was thinking about all this, a huge, roaring monster appeared behind him, but he sent it to the other world with one blow. He thought that since the monster's ranged attacks had been stopped, they had apparently decided to change their strategy, and it was his turn to enter the game. When another monster approached him, Sho engaged it in combat. Getting close to it, he activated his new ability, Poisonous Substance, and wounded the monster, sending it to the other world. With the help of his ability, Hand of Doom, he dealt with another monster. Seeing this, one of the hunters thought it was a joke, and the second said that he thought Sho had only joined the squad because of his connections with Awakens. When they saw that he was able to kill all the monsters on his own, they realized that it wasn't just a matter of talent. All the monsters were defeated, and it was decided that after cleaning up, they would go to the 3rd floor. Approaching Sho, Aoki said that he had proven her recommendation to be correct. He replied that it was the price he had to pay for being let in. Uehara Junisuke approached her and said that it was probably Kurita Sho and that he expected nothing less from her recommendation. Aoki thought they would finish the outing faster than planned, but he told her not to relax because the confusing path held many dangers. At that moment, something strange began to happen, and everyone, including Sho, noticed it. It became clear that this was the beginning of a rift, and the commander ordered everyone to drop what they were doing and run to the 3rd floor. Aoki started climbing the stairs, but when she turned around, she saw that Sho wasn't coming and asked him why. He replied that he would come later. He sat down on one of the defeated monsters and told her to hurry up because he was already losing patience. The hooded man who appeared in front of him realized that he had noticed him and said that he had amazing powers of observation. Sho asked who he was and said that he had been watching them since they entered the 2nd floor. The man was surprised and realized that Sho had noticed him from the very beginning of the cleanup. Clapping his hands, the hooded man said that since he had been exposed, he was admirable. He hadn't noticed at first, but Sho could use mana spells. Sho, meanwhile, was thinking about using a mana spell, but unlike Shin, he was a pro at it. The hooded man told Sho that he was still far from perfect. He asked if it was difficult to describe and was curious who had taught him. Looking at him, Sho asked if he really thought he would answer him. The man said that everything was clear to him, which meant he had no other choice, and began to activate his magical abilities. It was the strongest shockwave of mana. He was much higher in level than Hijikata and Aori. The hooded man said he liked Sho's defiance, and that it would be boring if he behaved differently. Gripping the hilt of his weapon, Sho asked what he was interested in then. The man replied that it was a good question and activated the mana flows even more strongly. Sho resisted his abilities, and the man said that mana spells, for example, belonged to them. Fueling the mana even more, he added that he would not forgive those who used them. Then, Sho asked him if he had sent others to the other world as well. He replied that he would leave him something to think about, even though he would still be sent to the other world today. He added that it was unfair, but Sho had lost his luck as soon as he met him, and Sho saw wings made of mana appear on him. He knew that magical wings were individual skills of the elves and fairies. This confirmed that he had some connection to his past life. And since he had finally found a clue about his past life, Xiao knew he couldn't let it slip away. Zhao activated the bracelet, and a fiery weapon appeared in his hands, and he prepared for battle. His opponent aimed a mana projectile at him, but Sho managed to withstand it. He rushed into the attack, but his opponent said that an attack from a simpleton like him, who only knew how to swing a weapon, would do him no harm. He managed to fly away, saying that Sho didn't need to try so hard because he was stronger than him, and it would be boring if it all ended there. But Sho did not give up, and the enemy, realizing that he was one of those who seized the moment, attacked again. Dodging, Sho thought that now he had a general understanding of his attack style, and it was time to finish. He rushed into the attack, activating his Berserk ability. The Berserk ability enhanced the power of his weapon, but the enemy still managed to jump back. Sho thought that the shells and wings were a mixture of the long-eared race's Siesta and the phase Talon, and it was frightening. The enemy told Sho to stop smiling and attacked again. There was an explosion, but Sho managed to dodge it. The hooded man asked if the enemy was saying that he had the ability to counter his attacks. He created such a powerful energy wave that Sho thought about the need to take countermeasures. The 8 races had their own unique methods of creating mana spells. The fairy race had Tylon, and the long-eared race had Siesta. The ancient dragon race had Ratiel. All 8 races shared their vision through their methods of casting mana spells. There was a refinement of a skill that allowed them all to fight against the Lord's investment. This was the original purpose and reason for mana spells. Previously, Sho could not use the power of his past life in this world. However, with the mana he received, he managed to revive it. He prepared for battle again, while his opponent unleashed a barrage of his entire mana reserve and activated his laser. At that moment, Sho jumped towards him and struck the dome protecting the enemy. He said that it was the wrong thing to do, and that instead of defending himself, he should have dodged. Sho broke the dome protecting the enemy with his weapon and wounded him. The enemy fell, and Sho approached him and said that they could finally talk. The enemy did not understand what he had just done and what the halo above his head was. He began to say that mana spells belonged to them in the first place, but Sho interrupted him, telling him to shut up and that he would be the one asking the questions. Sho asked his name, but the enemy did not want to answer. Then he said that he could arrange for him to go to the other world in agony. At first, he introduced himself as Inamoto Gaku, but then said that he was Kidea Norens. Sho thought that he had never heard this name in his past life and wondered if it was worth remembering. Then Sho asked what his motive was, and to begin with, how he had learned mana magic. The opponent did not answer, so Sho swung his weapon and asked if he could hear him. He was still silent, and Sho thought that perhaps he was bound by some kind of non-disclosure agreement. He said the words Aslan Idea Reboot and told him that if he knew even one of those words, he should say so. The enemy didn't understand what he was talking about. Sho wondered how, even though he used the magic of the Long Ones and the fairies, he could know nothing about those words. He asked how he knew he would be here. He said he just came with a guy who wanted to test his skills and stumbled upon Sho. Sho asked who this guy was and what kind of skill test he was talking about, but the guy remained silent. Sho realized that this was another prohibition and began to get angry. He threatened him with his weapon, and then the opponent said that he understood everything and would try to talk to them so that Sho would join them. Still threatening the guy with his weapon, Sho said that he didn't know what their motives were, but did he really think he would join a club of criminals? The opponent shouted that he shouldn't get cocky just because he was able to defeat him, and that there were monsters much higher than him in terms of strength. But Sho replied that they couldn't defeat him, and that if they knew who he was, they would be afraid to even approach him, and he sent his opponent to the other world. The system notified him of a level up, and the acquisition of a new ability, Mana Bombardment. And it seemed that this was the only reward. Sho thought that he had hoped that this guy knew at least something. And then the ability information was updated, and he received the EX rank. The highest rank seen in the association was SSS, and Sho thought that if the skill rank exceeded his, he might not be considered. The update meant that this skill was already EX rank when he received it, and perhaps it was somehow related to his past life. Suddenly, there was an explosion. Glass shattered, and Shin burst in and said that if the siren went off on the first floor, it meant there was a rupture. They went outside, and Sho asked Shin to calm down and asked where Aoki was. Pointing into the distance, where explosions were heard and lightning flashed, Shin said that Aoki was there. Seeing what was happening, Sho thought that it looked like the boss of the third floor had emerged from the explosion. A horde of monsters was approaching the hunters, and the commander ordered all survivors to take up their positions, telling Shin that these enemies were his to deal with and that he would handle them with the help of the Poison Guild. Sho went in the other direction. Shin asked his mentor what he was going to do, and Sho replied that he was going after the boss. Huge shells exploded around the hunters, and they didn't know how to stop it. In terms of complexity, it was comparable to a natural disaster. The shells were increasing in number, and it was decided to retreat because the next wave was approaching. Trying to break through the shells, Aoki thought that it was all bad. The relentless attacks prevented her from getting closer, and she wanted Sho to be there. Then, someone behind her asked if there was a problem. She turned around and saw Sho. She was glad to see him and said that thank God he was okay. He said they would talk later and asked what the situation was. She replied that the core of the dungeon was inside a thing that wasn't moving, but the onslaught of attacks kept them from getting closer. Then, Sho said that all they needed to do was overcome this thing. Aoki replied that it wasn't as easy as it seemed, because no one else here could deliver significant attacks except her. Sho said that he understood, and that the two of them could handle it. Aoki asked if he had a good plan. Swinging his weapon, Sho replied that everything here was logical. They just needed to cut everything that could be cut. Laughing, Aoki said that she would have to clear a path for Sho to the core, and rushed forward. Meanwhile, the huge monster fired a barrage of projectiles at Aoki. Activating her weapon with lightning, she was able to split them all. Looking at her target, she thought that the distance between them was about 50 meters. Calculating the trajectory and sticking her weapon into the ground, Aoki activated the lightning bolts. She struck, and it hit the target, but it turned out that the previously motionless object was a huge monster. Aoki shouted to Sho that this meant the core was somewhere inside this monster. He replied that he would figure it out, and, directing all his points into mana, rushed to attack the monster. Sho activated his Mana Bombardment ability and attacked the monster directly in the core, sending it to the other world. After a while, Shin was already reading the news where Sho was called the hero who stopped Magnus. He said that people were finally starting to recognize their mentor. Sho asked if Shin himself wasn't one of them at the beginning. Shin asked if he was still mad at him. He said it was time to forget about it. Now Sho's task was to create a guild base and recruit hunters. Shin was happy that they would have new guild members and agreed completely. Meanwhile, in the Great Hall, a meeting of masked people began again, where it was announced that the butterfly had gone to the other world. The chair of the meeting said that all he did was talk nonsense. The man in the lion mask asked if she meant to say that it was his fault. She replied that it all started because the lion had provoked the butterfly. But he replied that he had only mentioned that someone else had learned the technique of mana spells for the sake of his comrades. The dragon said that the lion was only pretending to be good and wanted to eliminate his rival. The hawk said that the dragon was right and that the incident with the butterfly seemed too strange to him. The snake also agreed that the lion's recklessness had caused the accident. The lion became angry and activated his abilities, saying that they were also involved. They turned against him when the results were uneven. At that moment, a man in a faceless mask entered and told the lion that he had heard about what had happened. This man told the lion that he had done something he shouldn't have done. The lion replied that he was wrong and that mana spells were the source of their power. The man told him to forget about it because he understood the situation. He said that many of them were too dependent on mana, and although it was one of their greatest strengths, they should not be completely dependent on it. The lion provoked one of them, which led to tragedy, and he said that he doubted the wisdom of his decisions. He asked what the lion thought. He replied that he had not encouraged him and that he had done it on his own, and everyone knew about it. This proves that their abilities are equal to their goals. The man in the faceless mask said that since he thought so, he must have an SSS rank. But he is alone, and can he be a threat to them? The lion replied that he did not think this man was capable of it. Then he told the lion that he must take full responsibility for this matter, and until he succeeds, he cannot open Eve's door. Once upon a time, the queen's overloaded army destroyed the continent of Aslan. 8 races fought together, but left only splinters and cobblestones behind. The race of lifeless souls sacrificed their own bodies in the first battle. In the next battle, Reuben caused the perpetual motion machine of the ancient dragons to malfunction, driving them mad. Amidst all the chaos was their goddess Idea, and the situation was getting worse. The horrors did not end there. Because of the betrayal of 3 of the monsters' race, the third battle was imminent: division and mitosis. First, he had to get rid of the traitors among his own people. At that time, he believed that he was the one who was considered the god of weapons and became an executioner. Looking at Magnus's stats window and thinking that it wasn't bad for a first time, Sho swallowed another soul capsule. After that, another stats window appeared where his powers had increased. His phone rang, and picking it up, Sho thought that it had happened faster than he thought. He went outside and told Eri, who was exercising, not to overdo it. Even if her allergies were gone, she was only just recovering. Eri replied that she was fine and that it was just a light jog. She felt that she was in better shape now than when she had allergies. Sho thought that this was probably the result of the capsule and that it was a little more effective than expected. Eri showed him her phone and asked if it was true. There was a post saying that the main character of the day had become the most talked about news and that his relationship with Aoki Sora had sparked a lot of discussion. They wrote that even during their joint raid on Magnus's cradle, they demonstrated perfect teamwork and that their relationship began with the breakup of the moon. Eri asked Sho if it was true that he was dating Aoki Sora. He replied that she knew very well that these were just rumors and that they were unfounded. Then she asked him what kind of girls he liked. Sho replied that he liked girls who were easygoing and said he was leaving. When Sho met Tachibana, he noticed that she was wearing her uniform, even on the weekend. She replied that criminals don't care what day they commit crimes. He asked what had happened with that case. She replied that, as he had said, they had discovered it during the investigation of the Hijikata case. They found a bracelet called Cancel, which was needed to neutralize the jammers. But this technology was decades ahead of their country's technology. Sho asked if she meant that representatives of other countries were likely involved in the case. Major Tachibana was almost certain of it. Moreover, they narrowed down the circle of suspects to 3 main foreign suspects. The first was Professor Boris from the northern continent. There were rumors that he was conducting very suspicious experiments. The second was a man from Asia, Professor Chen Wen. He was an entrepreneur involved in illegal business. And the last one was Professor Steve, a native of one of the most powerful countries. He did not appear at public events, so there was little information about him. Sho pondered the fact that they were a sleepwalking criminal and a mad scientist. If the information from Inamoto was reliable, one of them was connected to the bracelet. He asked the major if she was sure about this man, Inamoto Gaku. She asked if he understood that she was not a private detective. Standing up, Sho said that she was more professional than detectives and that she had the opportunity to repay her debt to him. He asked her to contact him when the results were in. Major Tachibana sighed and said she understood. The next day, none of the candidates for the guild passed the exam. Shin thought Sho was too strict, but he said he needed elite fighters. Shin said he didn't want to be in a guild with only 2 people, and when he accepted him, he wasn't so selective. Sho thought it was because of his talent for using mana spells. He didn't mention it so that Shin wouldn't get cocky, but it turned out that there were fewer people capable of using mana spells than he thought. There was a knock at the door, and Sho asked if anyone else had signed up for an interview, but they were done with everyone. A girl entered, and Shin said she was beautiful. Apologizing, Sho said that the interviews were over for the day. The girl replied that she knew, and that was why she had come at that time. Holding out her business card, she said she was pleased to meet Kiritani Sho and introduced herself as a hunter from Global Management America. She said her name was Michelle Rosalind, but Sho turned away and left, saying he wasn't interested. Michelle said she was there to transfer hunters to them. She wanted to recommend their company's hunters to their guild. When Shu heard that she was recommending American hunters to him, he turned around with interest. He doubted that they would want to transfer to a newly founded guild. She said that hunters' income depended on their rank, not their nationality. Some people wanted to test their strength, so they chose to transfer here. People were betting on Kiritani Sho's guild, which proved its importance. Sho thought about the fact that recruiting foreigners was currently illegal. His gaze stopped on one of the resumes. He thought that this person had a special resume, a rank S healer, capable of becoming a striker if necessary. She looked and realized he was talking about Finn Chandra. He became a hunter after being cured of his mana allergy. Sho realized that they had probably learned about their guild's needs and even mentioned the mana allergy. He thought she was competent. He said there was someone he was interested in and asked to arrange a meeting with Finn. She said there was no need and sent a text message. Sho asked what she meant, and it turned out that Finn had come with her. When he entered, Sho said he was glad to meet him and introduced himself as Kirita Sho from Reboot. Sitting in front of him was a boy who said he was glad to meet him and introduced himself as Finn Chandra. Shin told the mentor that he would give 1 vote for her acceptance. The mentor asked Finn why he decided to change guilds, since the previous one didn't seem bad. He replied that he felt he had outgrown the guild in terms of level, and therefore wanted to transfer to a more promising guild. Putting his resume on the table, Sho said that there was a lot of confidence in his voice, but he suspected that the reason was different. Pointing to his chest, he asked if he felt pain in that area. A persistent and severe pain in his chest. Finn didn't understand how he knew about it. Sho said that from what he could see, the higher he rose in rank, the stronger the pain became. Sho said that he had visited many different guilds, but had not found a solution to the problem. This led to the conclusion that his pain could not be cured. He asked Sho if he knew of a method, and Sho replied that he did. He saw why Finn was suffering so much. Even now, his mana was spiraling out of control. The healers must have known that the problem was too much mana flow. The fact that they had come such a long way spoke to their desperation. Finn said he understood everything and was entering Reboot, but Sho said he hadn't said he would accept him. Everyone present was surprised by what Sho said. He said that the interview was not over. Standing up, he said it was time to move on to the practical part in the guild's basement training arena. There, Michelle asked Finn if everything was really okay. After all, Mr. Kurita was an experienced attacker, and as the chief healer, it would be difficult for him to resist. They had no proof that his problem could be solved, and she couldn't just stand by and watch him try to pass the test in his condition. Finn asked Michelle not to worry and thanked her for introducing him to a good guild. He believed that Sho was a man who was responsible for his words. Finn added that he still needed to sign a contract. Standing in front of Sho, he asked if he could use a weapon. Sho replied that the fight would be over quickly anyway, so it made no difference. Finn began to attack Sho, but Sho dodged and suddenly threw down his weapon. He didn't understand why Sho threw down his weapon, but Sho approached Finn, grabbed him, and threw him far away. Getting up, he said he had never heard of such an ability. Sho replied that he had only pushed him lightly. The minor injuries Finn sustained in the fall began to heal because his ability was super regeneration. Throwing himself into the attack again, he said that it seemed he had really hit the jackpot. Seeing the force with which he was rushing at him, Sho said that it looked like he was hunting a big boss. There was an explosion, and Sho, dodging the shockwave, thought that he was swinging his weapon widely and covering a huge amount of space. Sho tried to attack him with a blow, but Finn quickly created a barrier around himself, deflecting the attack. The opponent realized that it was a mana barrier and assessed that his reaction speed was good. But he knew that the barrier made the upper body unstable and struck Finn below the waist. Finn, not expecting this, almost fell. Seeing the fist in front of his face, Finn was surprised that he had just aimed at the weak point of his ability. He didn't have time to think about creating a new mana barrier before he was hit in the face. Finn used his ability to infect, and Sho realized that he was stimulating the regeneration of his body's covering so that he would become infected. The enemy said that if he didn't get his act together and surrender quickly, he would regret it because it was a spreading tumor. Feeling the tumor on his neck, Sho realized that the infection had now spread to his thyroid gland. The ability to infect vital organs with tumors is equivalent to the ability to diagnose and treat people, and Sho immediately cured himself with his abilities. Preparing to strike, Zhao said that it was the most interesting attack Finn had shown, but regardless, it was just an ability. Sitting in his office, Finn admitted that he had lost. The method Zhao used to cure the infection ability could apparently also relieve him of his pain. Sho replied that he had good thinking and recognized Finn's strength, so he decided to move on to the contract. Michelle read that under no circumstances was the guild obliged to monitor data leaks, and the contract was for 10 years. She thought it was tyranny, but Finn told her that everything was fine and that Kiritani's help was worth these conditions. The contract was signed, and Sho welcomed Finn to Reboot. Finn said that from now on, he would call him Master. Shin introduced himself and said that he could feel free to ask him for help, calling him Sister. Finn got angry and told him not to call him that disgusting nickname because he was a guy. But Shin said that no matter how he looked at him, Finn looked like a girl, and Sho thought that they had assembled a minimal team of a defender, a hand-to-hand fighter, and a healer. All that remained was to train during real battles. Meanwhile, at the Japanese Hunters Association, Otamaki, a colleague of Wakamatsu Kenzo, the creator of the power limiters, reported that a monster would appear in Shizuoka in a week. After confirming that this was true, his interlocutor said that they needed to gather the guild masters. After a while, Finn learned to control the circulation of his mana and completely got rid of the pain, which he thought was amazing. Sho said that because of their great confidence in their abilities, people don't even think about simple solutions to problems. He asked not to spread the word about this. Finn said he had heard that Professor Steve was conducting research on a similar topic. Sho asked if he was researching a method similar to mana magic. He replied that this was the case, and that the professor had said that the research would help to use status more effectively. Sho thought that with his technical experience, discovering the method of mana magic would not take him long. But the peak of the 8 races could not be discovered just like that. With that, he suggested that Finn end the lecture and move on to the next stage, the actual battle. After a while, in the actual battle with the monster, Finn advised Shin to do everything right and not dodge. The huge monster was already attacking Shin, and Shin, defending himself, replied that he was doing everything right. Waiting for the right moment and using 2 types of weapons, Shin activated the Principle of Duality ability. Looking at him, Sho thought that he seemed to have gotten used to his new ability. Finally, Shin attacked the monster, but it turned around and his arm ended up in its mouth. Seeing this, Finn thought he was an idiot and activated his abilities. Shin saw that his wounds were immediately healed and said that it was excellent support. At that moment, Finn himself attacked the monster with his weapon, sending it to the other world. It was incredible, and Shin said that he was born to be an attacker and thanked him for his help. Finn said to stop talking nonsense and making stupid mistakes. Watching them argue, Sho thought that the training could be over. Finn said that the master would deal with the rest of the mods, and that this dungeon was a little strange. Shu asked what he meant. He said that there weren't such strong monsters in Class A dungeons, but he heard that this was due to the imminent appearance of a monster in America. He asked how long ago the rifts had appeared in this country. Shin said that, if you think about it, it had been 12 years. Finn had heard that rifts had become more frequent in Japan, and this fact was probably a harbinger of a quietly approaching catastrophe. These words made Sho think about the monster that was supposed to appear. When he returned home, Eri was waiting for him and asked what he wanted for dinner. He thought it was too early for dinner and asked where she had found the apron. She told him not to worry about it and said he had a guest. Sho was very surprised and asked who she meant by guest, and then he heard a voice saying, "It was me." It was Aoki Sora. She said that because he hadn't kept his promise, she decided to come to him herself. Eri told them to enjoy their conversation and went to make dinner. Aoki thanked her. Sitting down at the table, Sho wondered when they had become so close and told Aoki that he didn't know she was so sociable. She said that they were the same age and his sister was very friendly, so they immediately found common ground. Sho said that she was not his real sister. He explained that Eri was a relative of his teammate with whom they were very close and who had passed away during the incident. Aoki said she didn't expect him to be such a good person and suggested changing the subject. Raising her hand, she showed the reason for her visit. She demonstrated on the mug that she was able to control her ability. Sho said he understood that she had learned. Aoki said that it was thanks to Magnus that she had succeeded. It happened as soon as she understood the method, and it was strange that she hadn't done so before. He said that this was to be expected from the country's top player, and that her skills were on a completely different level. She asked him not to laugh, and said that she was waiting for him to fulfill his promise. Throwing a book on the table in front of her, Sho said that if she followed what was written there, she would move on to the next level. Meanwhile, he thought that, of course, there was nothing about mana magic in it, because it was just the basics. But she said that it would be more useful for her to learn it in a fight than to memorize theory. Pushing the book aside, she added that she wanted him to teach her directly. He agreed, especially since he had his own training hall. She was about to leave when she saw a news report on her phone about hunters and the arrival of a monster. Sho also read that the monster was supposed to appear in Shizuoka. He had been expecting this, but it was all happening too fast. Aoki said she was going to the guild and that they would meet in Shizuoka, and thanked Eri for the tea. Meanwhile, Sho called Shin and asked where he was. He replied that he was already on his way to the guild base, and asked if Sho had seen the notification from the association. Sho had seen the urgent message and thought that if all the guild masters needed to be present, then there wasn't much time left. He told Shin that he was leaving for Shizuoka right away. Shin needed to prepare the armor and wait with Finn. When Sho left, Eri watched him go and asked him to be careful. While they were driving, Shin read that Kaiju Maxby was expected to appear in Shizuoka and didn't understand why they gave him a name. Finn said it was to show that he was completely different from other monsters. After his explanation, Shin admitted that he suddenly felt creeped out. Sho asked Finn if his allergy to mana had gone away after the split disaster. He replied that it had, that he had survived the disaster and recovered after a while, Then Sho asked when he became a hunter. Finn replied that he did so as soon as he had fully recovered, a month after being discharged from the hospital. Sho thought that he was just like Eri. Her allergy to mana disappeared after the cataclysm, and she really wanted to become a hunter. Finn said that he had heard of a girl in a similar situation and understood what Sho was going through. Sho replied that he did, and asked if it was related to the fact that they had more mana. Finn replied that it was more likely than not, because the ability he had gained after awakening was Mana Reactor. This was an SS class ability that temporarily tripled the owner's mana, and any spellcaster would envy it. Sho said that he was more talented than he thought, and didn't understand why other guilds had let him go so easily. Finn hesitated and wanted to respond to this. But at that moment, their conversation was interrupted by Shin, who saw combat helicopters approaching through the window. Looking at Finn, who was sitting sadly in the back, Sho thought that, in any case, they needed to hurry. When they arrived in Shizuoka, armed fighters were already everywhere. Shin said that the situation here was even more serious than he had thought. Sho said that this was natural, since kaiju was appearing in this country for the first time. He went to check on the association and asked them to wait for him a little. There were many hunters at the association. The situation was extraordinary, so the atmosphere was completely different from that of the Magnus Cradle situation. The chairman thanked everyone for responding quickly to the call. There was no time to waste, and they had to decide on the command structure and distribution of positions. He said he would like to ask the Reboot Guild to take the lead against Maxby. Everyone looked at Sho, and the chairman said that they had already proven their competence and had recently been joined by an S-class hunter. Looking at those present, he said that no one seemed to object and asked what Kiritani Sho had to say about it. Sho thought that he didn't want to stand out too much, but there was nothing he could do about it now. He replied that he would do his best to live up to the expectations placed on him. Later, they watched, and Shin asked if this kaiju would definitely appear. Finn asked what was wrong. He replied that they had been waiting for several days. It had been over a week since the association published its forecast. Shin said that other guilds were already starting to talk about it, although he would even be glad if it didn't appear. Sho asked Finn if they had learned to accurately predict their appearance in the United States. He replied that there were no accurate methods of prediction there, just that everyone was on standby. Shin decided that they had all been gathered here for no reason, but Finn said that was unlikely, because the chairman was not an idiot, unlike him. It was strange, and Sho wondered why the association had announced that kaiju would appear in Shizuoka within a week. He thought they wouldn't have alerted so many people based on a mere hunch, but they were completely confident that it would attack. But who warned them, and why did they gather the hunters here? Meanwhile, Shin saw a notification that kaiju had appeared, but not where they expected it. The news said that kaiju had appeared in Yokohama and turned the street into scorched earth in 3 minutes. Kaiju appeared in Yokohama at the moment when all the forces of the association were concentrated in Shizuoka. It seemed like it was a trap. Shin told his mentor that it seemed they needed to hurry, and Sho thought that once they were done with him, they would have to go to the association. There was real panic in the city of Yokohama, with people begging for help and trying to escape from the huge monster. Finally, a helicopter arrived, and Aoki Sora landed in the middle of the street. Looking at the huge monster with burning eyes, she thought that, judging by how much taller it was than the buildings, it was at least 50 meters tall. It was so huge that it confused her eyes, and she also had the feeling that it was absorbing mana from the environment. She was facing such an enemy for the first time and was already preparing for battle. At that moment, a voice on the radio told her to relax because, according to her, it really was a giant. He advised her to charge the monster with her most powerful attack. She said she understood and activated her weapon. Aoki activated several abilities at once: a flash of lightning, a clap of thunder, a thunderstorm, and a strike from the god of thunder. When all her abilities were activated, she aimed her weapon at the monster and delivered the strongest blow. There was an explosion, and when the smoke cleared, Aoki saw that the monster hadn't even moved from her attack. She couldn't believe that it didn't have a scratch on it after her direct hit. Then the monster roared and continued on through the city, and Aoki couldn't understand how it could do all that. She thought it might be a reflection of magic, or an absorption of magic, or that her attack was simply too weak. The monster was getting closer and closer to Aoki. The ground was already shaking, and stones were flying everywhere, making it difficult for her to dodge. Then Uhara Junosuke and several other hunters came to her aid. The commander told them not to spare any effort, because they had to stop Maxby. They replied that they understood and got to work. They all attacked it together, but the monster remained unharmed and continued on its way. The hunters did not understand why their attacks were not working. It seemed as if he could neutralize any magic. Then the monster swung its huge tail and knocked down several buildings. The hunters scattered in all directions. There was a lot of debris from the destruction, and the hunters rose into the air. They realized the gravity had changed. Aoki rushed towards the monster to attack, but suddenly began to fall. She thought that it had lifted them into the air in order to knock them down. After landing, she thought that it was immune to magic and could change gravity. She didn't understand how the monster had two abilities. Seeing that the monster was about to strike again, she said that she would not let anyone else get hurt. Preparing for battle, she added that she would take all of its attacks herself. The monster struck with its huge fist, but Aoki managed to deflect it with her abilities. She was even surprised that she was still alive. She decided that if she could stall for time, reinforcements would arrive, and she needed to hold out until then. Then, the monster let out a deafening roar and struck again with such force that the asphalt pavement shattered. Aoki was thrown far away by the monster's powerful blow. She hit a rock, and Captain Uhara Junosuke approached her and asked if she was alive. Aoki replied that she was alive. Aoki had no strength left, but she knew she had to hold on and endure a little longer. Getting up and seeing what the monster was doing, she thought, not this, as it targeted civilians. Rushing into the attack, she shouted to the master that he had to do something. Uhara Junosuke replied that he understood her and activated his ability, Unshakable Alliance. Activating her abilities, Aoki realized that if she didn't stop its attack now, the consequences would be catastrophic. The monster spewed a huge, powerful pillar of flame, and Aoki tried to hold it back. But suddenly, there was an explosion of such power that everything around her was engulfed in flames, and Aoki was unable to resist it and was blown away. Barely rising from the rubble, she thought to herself, so this is the power of kaiju. At that moment, a huge weapon pierced the monster. Aoki saw that it was an infernal ash weapon. This meant that Sho had appeared. Landing, he said that the monster had given her a good beating. Pressing herself against him, the exhausted Aoki tried to apologize, but he asked her to relax and tell him everything later. He asked Shin to take Aoki to Finn. Finn asked his mentor what he was going to do. Sho replied that he would take care of this creature. He said that when he and Finn finished treating Aoki, they would need to evacuate the population. Meanwhile, Finn was already treating the wounded. Taking Aoki in his arms, Shin said he understood everything and asked his mentor to be careful. Approaching the monster, Sho said he didn't expect to meet it in such a place. Preparing his infernal ash weapon for battle, he called the monster Overlord. Maxby was definitely one of the overlords. He was a low-ranking scout sent to this planet to gather information. He was incapable of defending anything and was filled with nothing but hostility. Sho thought about how he absolutely hated monsters that suddenly jumped out and destroyed everything around them. And he said he would crush the monster into dust. He rushed into the attack and managed to inflict several wounds on the monster. The other hunters were surprised at how fast he was. More importantly, they wondered why Sho's attacks were effective against the monster. The monster struck, and Sho, barely staying on his feet, thought that attack and defense in battles using mana were simple. It was neutralizing magic and protecting against it. Sho attacked again, saying that the first magic cycle protected against enemy attacks. Therefore, it could not be broken through, but it could be bypassed with another cycle, and so on. The hunters watching did not understand that even if his attacks worked, what was the point, since the difference in size and mana between them was too great. The monster struck again, but Sho managed to dodge in time. He knew very well that battles with overlords always drag on. There was no need to rush. He had to attack slowly, just like in the previous world. He attacked again and again, but at some point, the monster managed to throw him off. Swinging his weapon, he thought that the monster had thrown him about a kilometer away, but that only played into his hands. At that moment, the system notified him that he had gained a new ability and increased his EX level. Gathering all his strength, Sho attacked the monster with a crushing blow. Sho's attack was so powerful that he was able to sever one of the monster's limbs. He delivered blow after blow, inflicting more and more wounds on his opponents, and the watching hunters were amazed that he was overwhelming it single-handedly. Even Uhara Junosuke couldn't believe his eyes when he saw kaiju losing to a single hunter. Suddenly, the monster began to activate one of its abilities, and Sho realized that it was the attack with which he had defeated Aoki. The monster attacked, but Sho activated his berserk ability and was able to deflect the pillar of fire it emitted in another direction. The distance to it was about 100 meters, and Sho decided that as soon as the attack stopped, he would immediately move and send it to the other world. To battle the overlords, high mobility is required, and the first means developed by the 8 races for this was the secret technique, Dash. Sho used it in a second, covering a huge distance and ending up next to the monster. Then he used the secret technique, Hunting Titans, and cut off the monster's horns. Seeing this, Ohara Junosuke shouted to everyone that now their attacks should work and ordered them to press on with everything they had. The other hunters began to attack the monster together, using all their abilities, and it howled in pain. Preparing to strike, Sho said that the monster was finished and put all his mana into the blow. He attacked, and the blow was so powerful that the monster fell to the ground and died. The system announced that Sho had leveled up and gained a new ability. The people watching couldn't believe that he had really defeated kaiju single-handedly. Someone asked which guild this hunter belonged to. Sho looked at the system notification and realized that he now had access to another power from the past world. The other hunters were impressed by what he had done and asked if there were any more spots available in Reboot. Sho thought about trying out his new ability later and decided that he needed to finish here first. When Sho was at Aoki's hospital, she said that he had been basking in the limelight lately and that other members of his guild had been appearing in the news. He said that her injury was also often written about, and Eri was very upset about it. Aoki replied that she herself had not expected to lose so badly. She thanked Sho for saving her and said that if it weren't for him, she wouldn't be here now. Shu understood why she was willing to sacrifice herself and asked her to be careful because many people were waiting for her return. When he was about to leave, Aoki thanked him for his kind words and said she never would have thought he could be so sensitive. Aoki asked why he was leaving and where he was rushing to, and Sho turned around and replied that he was going to a funeral ceremony. Meanwhile, Shin was reading the news about the inspiring success story of Japan's second SS-class hunter, Kurita Sho. There was also a note about him, saying that he combines the roles of defender and attacker, which was called The Rise of a Giant Rookie. Leaving the ward, Sho asked what he was reading with such interest. Shin replied that he wasn't reading anything and asked if they were done. Shin asked if it was just him or if the two of them got along well. Sho opened the characteristics window and said that he already had a lot to keep in mind. He couldn't put spiritual power into his new ability. Perhaps some special actions were needed. Sho had an idea that was worth checking out. At the memorial service, Sho said that they had gathered to honor the memory of those who had passed away and to express their deepest sympathy to their families. He added that in order to ease the burden on these families, the Reboot Guild would donate half of their reward for their last mission to them. At that moment, his spirituality increased. He had thought that it would grow if he increased his influence, as he had in the past world. While he was speaking, a girl who was mourning her father came forward, and her mother tried to calm her down. Looking at her with regret, Sho thought that he had seen such scenes so many times in the past world, and still could not get used to them. After that, Finn approached him and said that it was an excellent speech. He handed him the documents he had requested. He asked why he needed them, since he had dealt with Maxby. Sho replied that he needed to see everything with his own eyes, to be sure who to track down. After a while, Oda Makito had already packed his bags, clearly intending to go somewhere. Then he heard a voice saying that he had a lot of luggage. He turned around and saw Kiritani Sho, who asked if he was going somewhere. Approaching him, Sho said that no matter how much he thought about it, he couldn't understand why the man who predicted Kaiju's appearance was wrong only about the location. The man replied that even he could not predict what had happened because there were too many uncertainties in the flow of mana. But Sho said that predicting that Kaiju would appear in a week was his best move to prevent the hunters from having time to think. The professor asked if he meant that he had deliberately named the wrong place. Taking out his weapon, Sho said that he was the leading authority on mana flow research, and that he had also implemented filtration cubes and invented mana suppressors. But recently, he had also found a bracelet that neutralized them, and Sho said that it sounded too good to be a coincidence. Then the professor pressed a button, and Sho felt intense pressure and realized that he had installed mana suppressors in his room. Sho couldn't move, while Oda Makito rushed out of the room. But Sho said that he was underestimating him, and that he was the one who had knocked Maxby down, and threw his weapon at him. He wounded the professor in the leg, and after a while, he was sitting and asking him questions. He asked if he was a puppet, then who was pulling the strings? Oda Makito said that now everything was clear to him, but before that, he had been puzzled as to why he had been ordered to do all this, and apparently, they had foreseen everything. Threatening him with a weapon, Sho told him to answer his questions. He asked who had ordered him and what they had ordered him to do. The other man asked him to wait and said that they were being commanded. Sho said that, apparently, as in the case of Kidea, he was bound by a contract. The professor said that if Sho crossed the line, he would become a criminal, but the other replied that he had crossed it first. He was guilty, and that was enough. Oda Makito said that he had to look for the twins, and Sho, saying that it was his fault that 30,000 people had gone to the other world, destroyed him. As he left, he blew up the building and thought that no matter what they were planning behind the scenes, he just had to become stronger. Later, lying in bed, Sho read the news and found no articles about what had happened to Professor Oda. Instead, they wrote that Sho had donated 28 billion yen, calling him a saint. Reading this, he thought that from the outside, that's how it looked. But he could buy spirituality with money and was willing to spend any amount. Everything here was the same as in the past world, and he would not allow the overlords to do whatever they wanted. Sho fell asleep and was transported to another world where someone called him by the name Arden. He couldn't believe what he saw, Eve, And then a voice asked him how he, Eve, was so different from the continent of Aslan. It was Kushushu Frankia from the long-eared race who was speaking to him. She said that the world was created by their race in its image, but it would be more accurate to call it another dimension. When he saw Kushushu, Shuo realized that he was asleep and dreaming about the past world. In this dream, he saw all his friends, who said that here, the 5 of them would be able to fight the Queen's soldiers without holding back. Then, he saw himself holding the wounded Kushushu in his arms. She apologized and said she shouldn't have jumped above her head. He agreed, because after living in the forest for so many years, the battlefield was not a suitable place for her. Then he saw how they tried to stop Lord Redenville, who was remelting a sacred relic dedicated to the goddess. He replied that neither their goddess nor Eva existed anymore, and the relic was useless. Now they needed weapons to send the queen to the other world. In his dream, Sho remembered how Radenville sacrificed his life to forge a weapon capable of destroying the queen, but his hands never touched it. Realizing what a threat this weapon posed to them, the creatures began to relentlessly attack the gnomes' workshops. In the end, the last creation of the dwarf Red Anvil disappeared into the sea. Having lost the last hope on which he had staked his life, he fell into despair and suddenly disappeared. He was found in the snow-covered mountains that had long since become a battlefield, but he had gone to the other world of his own free will. Then Kruger of the Myth Race said that if they did not send the queen to the other world, this battle would never end. Kruger believed that he had to find out where the queen's base was. In the end, he did so, but was wounded, and managed to say that outside, on the other side of the abyss, was a sea of stars. He said that the queen was on a round continent, drifting there. And before passing away, Kruger asked Arden to finish her off and end the battle. At that moment, Sho woke up and wondered if he had dreamed this because he was fighting the Overlord. When he was Arden, he couldn't understand the meaning of Kruger's last words, but now that he had become Kiritani Sho, he understood everything. The place he was talking about was space, and the monsters they called Overlords were space kaiju. Gritting his teeth, Sho thought that now that he understood everything, he had to start preparing. Soon, he came to Izumi Shigeru's workshop, and Shigeru asked him what he had brought. Sho replied that it was Kaju, who had recently attacked, and that his share was as large as his contribution to its demise. The owner of the technical abilities apologized, but said he couldn't afford to buy all of it. Sho reminded him that he had said it was enough to just bring him the ingredients he had obtained. The other asked if he meant that he should just take it and work on it, but he replied that he would give him half, which greatly surprised Izumi Shigeru. He told him to use it to create better equipment for himself and the members of his guild. Izumi Shigeru asked if he really thought he would agree just because of the valuable materials. And even though they had agreed, it was a lot of work at his age. Responding only that he was counting on him, Sho left, thinking on the way what Maxby's appearance here meant. And that could mean that there was always the possibility of attacks from other overlords. In that world, they had lost before they even had a chance to make a plan. But Sho was determined that this time would be different. When he got home, Eri burst into his room shouting, and told him to look at this. He asked her why she was so excited. Eri replied that something was coming out of her hands. Sho saw that mana was coming from her hands, which meant that she had awakened, just like Finn had once did. He had expected something like this after their conversation with Finn in the car. But then, looking at Eri and seeing her surrounded by clouds of mana, he wondered what kind of crazy mana this was. Eri was delighted that she had awakened and asked if she could now become a hunter too. Sho said that she could understand that better than he could and advised her to open the characteristics window. She stretched out her hand and ordered the characteristics window to open, but it didn't open. And then Eri blushed and said that she seemed to have made a mistake because she had been daydreaming too much. Realizing that she had not awakened and that what was happening to her was not the same as what had happened to Finn, Sho told her to sit down, concentrate on her breathing, and breathe as deeply as possible. Sitting down and closing her eyes, Eri began to breathe as deeply as possible, and gradually, a blue mist of mana enveloped her. Watching what was happening, Shu couldn't believe his eyes and admired her talent. Looking at her more and more, Shu wondered if this was really Kushushu. Opening her eyes and seeing Shu looking at her, she asked if there was something wrong with her body. He replied that she was just a little different from others, but if she noticed any other changes in her body, he asked her to let him know immediately. Sho himself thought that if he had met her in a past life and taught her how to level up, perhaps there would be more than 8 heroes. Then the phone rang. It was Kaoru Tachibana. Sho picked up the phone and asked what was wrong. She said they had received new information about Inamoto Gaku. They agreed to meet at the Japan Hunters Museum Memorial. When he approached, she said that it was not appropriate to take a government employee out on her day off. Noticing his appearance, she asked what kind of outfit it was. Sho, wearing glasses and a hoodie, replied that it just so happened that people had started to recognize him lately. He asked how this place was connected to Inamotogaku. She replied that she didn't know if he was the man he was looking for, but they had found a mention of him in the most unexpected place. Tachibana pointed to the memorial, where the names of all the hunters who had stopped Japan's first disaster, the SS-class Hellfire, were listed. One of the names was familiar to him, Kishida Mamoru, Shina's grandfather, who taught him Ratiel. The major said that among them was the name Inamoto Gaku. 12 years ago, he went missing and was eventually presumed dead. Sho knew that his ability was to bomb with mana, which he accumulated and then released at high speed. Tachibana confirmed his words. Sho thought that, as he had suspected, he was the butterfly Kidea himself. The major was surprised that he spoke as if he had seen it himself and asked if he had sent him to the afterlife. He replied that the other guy had attacked him first, and that he definitely was going to send him to the other world, although he didn't know what he had done to piss him off. She said he had no right to do that. Sho replied that since he was supposed to go to the other world, but was attacking people, she should understand what was going on. And he asked if they had joined forces to punish those whom the law could not punish. But Major Tachibana replied that she had not agreed to that. Leaving the memorial, Sho said that enough serious talk, and suggested that since they were here, they should see the exhibition. Then, in the center of the rift, there was a powerful explosion that occurred after Kishida Mamoru's ability got out of control. There, Sho saw an inscription that read, "We are the light that illuminates the path for others, so that they do not lose their way in the darkness." And these words were very familiar to him. Tachibana said that it seemed to be a motto that Kishida had come up with, and asked where Sho had heard it. Sho smiled. It was the battle cry of the 8 heroes. And immediately, he thought of the secret power of the ancient dragon's mana, Ratiel. That explosion must have been a side effect of the perpetual motion machine, and he remembered his teacher. He finally realized that his teacher had apparently come to this world before him. Meanwhile, intense training was in full swing at the Reboot Guild. After another attack, Sho told Shin to get up and try again. Shin, barely able to stand, asked his mentor what had gotten into him. He wasn't usually so harsh during training. He even cried, saying that he had told him many times that he had studied Ratiel when he was very young and didn't remember anything. Coming closer, Sho said that Ratiel was originally created to strengthen the body to the limit. He added that if he had really studied it, his body would remember everything. He told Shin to get ready because he was going to take him seriously. Shin asked if he meant that they had been joking around before and asked what the scales on his arm were. Finn approached and stopped him with his weapon, asking if he could join them. Sho replied that he would be happy to have him and that Finn would have to treat Shin. Finn replied that he would cure Shin even from a more severe condition. Shin wasn't sure if that was what a healer should say, because no matter how you looked at it, he was just asking Sho to beat him up. Clutching his head, Sho couldn't believe that this was the heir to his venerable teacher. He said that they had a long way to go. At that moment, a man entered the training hall and told Sho that he was as strict as ever. It was Captain Tamura, and he said he had something to discuss with Mr. Kurita and asked for a little time. Since explosions were rumbling behind Sho at that moment, he said they should talk somewhere else. Tamura invited Sho to participate in the MSS Symposium, but Sho didn't know what that was. Tamura explained that it was an international symposium dedicated to the latest technologies related to mana, and that it was one of the most important events in world science. Sho thought about the fact that the symposium was dedicated to technologies related to mana. He asked if Professor Steve would be attending. Tamura said that he was one of the founders of the symposium and participated every time. In addition to him, other luminaries of science, such as Professor Boris and Professor Chan, also participated. Realizing that all 3 of them, who, according to Tachibana, could have participated in the development of mana suppressors, would be there, Sho agreed to participate. Tamura thanked him and asked if he was interested in mana research and whether he should arrange a separate meeting with the scientists for Sho. Sho thanked him but declined, saying that the video of his victory over Kazu had gone viral and they would probably immediately turn him into a test subject. Sho thought that the person who invented the mana suppressor and leaked false information about Kaiju's appearance to Ode was one of these 3, and that they needed to catch him red-handed. Tamura also said that Professor Steve's bodyguard would be an SSS-class hunter like Kirita, so they couldn't do without his help. Meanwhile, a plane carrying Professor Steve and his bodyguard was already flying over the Pacific Ocean. The professor coughed, and she asked why he was making noise. Steve Rowan, a mana researcher, asked why she was unhappy, since she herself had volunteered to protect him. Her name was Karina Wade, and she was ranked 2nd in the world among hunters. She said she had never been happier in her life, and told him to go to bed. The professor told her to look in the mirror because her sour face said it all. She reminded him that he had once touched her. Blushing, he replied that he hadn't done it on purpose, but had simply slipped and grabbed her to keep from falling. She said that if he was going to use that excuse, then maybe she should punch a hole in his head. He said he was sorry and asked her to remove her finger. Steve Rowan said that her rudeness was the reason she couldn't find a boyfriend. Meanwhile, she was looking through the news about Karita's show. The professor said that now it was clear why she had volunteered to guard the old man. Karina told him to stop talking nonsense and asked if he knew what was above the boy's head. He took the tablet and, looking closer, said that it was some kind of luminescent object in the shape of a ring, like an angel's halo. Handing her the tablet, the professor said that it was probably some kind of ability and that she knew more about such things than he did. She said she didn't know what she was expecting and thought the professor would be able to find out. He said that she had no respect for her elders and decided to go to sleep. When Sho arrived at the symposium, he was immediately surrounded by people. Some asked him to talk about how many abilities he had used in the battle with Maxby. Some invited him to visit laboratories in Switzerland or China. Then he heard someone call his name, turned around, and saw Captain Tomura. Tomura shielded Sho from the intrusive crowd, saying that it would have to be another time. Sho said that he had saved him and that the interest in him was more than he had expected. Tomura replied that he had invited him, so he was obliged to make Sho comfortable. After a while, he noticed that the most important people were beginning to arrive. Professor Chan and Professor Boris arrived at the symposium with their bodyguards. Professor Chan did not look like a top manager of a group of companies. But Professor Chan, in Sho's opinion, was really interesting. When the professor walked past Sho, he turned around and thought that now he understood where the bad rumors came from and decided that he needed to keep an eye on him. Soon, people began to greet someone else, and Tomura said that this was Professor Steve. She reminded Sho that he was interested in him and asked if he wanted to say hello. But at that moment, it was more important for Sho to find out who the girl to the professor's left was. Tomura said that she was the SSS class hunter from America. She had faced the disasters of the schism 41 times and defeated 2 kaiju. She was second in the world rankings for long-range attack. He said her name was Karina Wade, and she was nicknamed the Eternal Idol. Sho was shocked to see that she was trying to hide her mana, but he could clearly see it. It was monstrous mana, and it was too much even for an SSS class hunter. He thought that maybe she was the same as Shin, but then he wondered if she wasn't. In any case, he decided he couldn't ignore her. After a while, Professor Chan gave a presentation on the practical application of mana to create a new generation of weapons. Tomura noticed that Karina had been looking at them with Mr. Kiritani for some time. He asked if they had met somewhere before. He replied that it seemed that way to him, and if she was really looking, it was part of his job as a bodyguard. After all, he was also an SSS class hunter. But Tomura said that his intuition never failed him, and that he would try to become better so that his younger sister wouldn't have to blush because of him. Sho didn't understand what he meant by younger sister and asked him again. He replied that they seemed to be close, and Tomura thought that she had already told him. He was the older brother of Sora, the famous hunter Aoki. Sho was very surprised and said he didn't know she had a brother. He thought to himself that they really did look alike. Tomura said that she didn't like to open up, but asked him to look after her. Sho replied that they were like symbiotes, which surprised him greatly. Sho asked if everything was okay, and Tomura replied that it seemed he had misunderstood something, but that in any case, he trusted his sister to him. Then Sho noticed 2 children in the hall. He wondered what they were doing there, especially in such costume. But then, when he realized they were twins, he remembered Oda's words about looking for twins. No one paid any attention to them, despite their armor, and Sho realized that this was a special ability. He rushed after them, and Tomura tried to stop him, not understanding what he was doing. Sho ran out the door behind which the twins had disappeared, but they vanished in the blink of an eye. Someone behind him said that he looked like he had just been duped. Sho turned around and saw Karina Wade. She said that he ran out of the hall, as if he had sensed a monster. So she followed him. She asked if there was really something interesting here. He went back, saying that he probably just imagined it and that he had too many problems requiring his attention lately. She asked if maybe she should take care of those problems, and Sho looked at her sideways. Karina said she didn't come here just to guard the old man, but he said he would take care of those who were pursuing him. She objected that she was here for a similar purpose. A dangerous organization that the CIA was monitoring had stirred. She asked if he had heard of Aziz al-Malik. After thinking for a moment, Sho said that if he was not mistaken, he was the leader of the Mutlaq. She said that was correct, that he was a man who had become king overnight, subjugating the country with his awakened ability. Aziz al-Malik was a hunter who, because of his ability, had earned the nickname the Battle-Devouring Necromancer. His ability allows him to control those he has killed, and his powers grow. Some are attracted to such power, and the Mootlock organization was formed. Sho thought about how they began operating at the very moment he was searching for the leader of the masks. He decided that it couldn't be a coincidence. When he returned to the hall, Tamura asked if anything had happened, but Sho replied that everything was fine. But he thought that since the days of terrorist activity and the dates of the symposium coincided, it must be one of the professors. And the twins were also a clue. Professor Chan was speaking at that moment, so it definitely wasn't him. He heard that Professor Steve had made a lot of changes to the symposium schedule, but when the twins appeared, he was with Karina. Professor Boris approached him and asked if he was okay, since he was in such a hurry to leave the hall. He asked if he had found what he was looking for. Sho thought it couldn't be that someone like Professor Boris, about whom there were so many bad rumors, genuinely cared about him. At that moment, there was a deafening explosion in the building, and already in another place, shaking himself off, Shu thought that he had been thinking too long. Not far from him was Tamura, who, seeing him, asked if he was okay, but Shu gestured for him to be quiet. Tamura looked around and thought that they were probably in a dungeon. Sho said that it looked like it. Sho himself thought that it was not a dungeon, but a poorly made IV. Suddenly, there was a noise, and Tamura said that he heard something. Then, a multitude of monsters moved towards them. Looking at them, Sho thought that they were being greeted by a whole crowd. He said that they would consider the situation after they dealt with them. The other members of the symposium were also there and were terrified, not understanding what kind of creatures were approaching them. Tomura realized that they were about to be attacked by reanimated, lifeless people. Now Shu understood what Karina was talking about. It was Aziz's ability. They were facing necromancy, which meant that Aziz was definitely in cahoots with those who created this Eve. Sho said that they needed to ensure safety first. He would deal with the lifeless bodies himself, while the captain would have to protect the civilians. At that moment, one of the monsters rushed at him, and Sho activated his ability, Hand of Doom, and defeated it. Seeing that many more enemies were running towards him, he took out his magical weapon. With the help of his infernal weapon blazing with fire, he sent many enemies to the other world. Everyone present was amazed at how quickly he did it, and said that this was what an SSS class hunter meant. Only Captain Tomura thought that even for his class, he was too strong. Even all the SS class hunters, including Sora, the best in Japan, were no match for him. Sho's level had increased, and he was even surprised by this, because after the battle with Maxby, he had hardly hunted at all, and should have had few experience points in reserve. But then, he thought that sending heretics to the other world gave much more experience than usual. And apparently, Aziz, the ruler of the undead, is a heretic, which means that all his minions automatically receive this status, and this is an unexpected bonus. The two men discussed that the SS class was something special, and that they could rest easy. Shu apologized, and told them that he had to move on quickly. He said that Captain Tomura from the association would lead them further. Sho added that he trusted him and hoped for their cooperation. Shu decided to go further along the path, getting rid of the undead, and told the captain to lead the others where he had gone. He added 5 points to his mana and activated his ability, and fireballs appeared in his hands. After dealing with a few more opponents, he saw that his level had risen again, and added another 10 points to his mana. Then he heard a voice calling for help and shouting not to come near him. He turned around and saw 2 monsters trying to reach a man hiding in a crevice in the rock. After sending the undead to the other world, Sho entered the crevice and saw Professor Chan hiding there. Seeing Kiritani, he rejoiced and asked to be taken out of there, promising that he would not remain in debt. Shu apologized and replied that they had not yet found a way out, but he had already gotten rid of all the undead on the way here. At that moment, 2 more people approached them, including Tomura, and Sho told the professor to join them. But the professor shouted that it was 100 times safer with him, an SSS class hunter. He promised that he would be careful and not get in his way. Sho replied that he understood his concern, but asked him to believe that it would only be more dangerous. He turned to Captain Tamura, who said he understood and would not let him down. Sho rushed on, thinking he had to unmask the criminal who had arranged all this. Meanwhile, climbing out of the rubble, Professor Steve was surprised to find themselves in an underground passage that had apparently been opened by the explosion. Karina told him to stop shaking and remember who he was assigned to protect. He thought that was true, because she was an SSS class hunter. He didn't know how many kaiju she had defeated, but he would definitely be safer with Karina. In addition, Professor Steve said that this underground passage was very different from the others. Karina quipped that he had noticed that, and that was good. Steve said that she seemed to have forgotten who she was supposed to protect, and that he was actually a professor. He showed her the stone and said that one glance at it was enough. It was like an artificially created hologram as his fingers passed through it. She replied that no matter how incompetent the idiot who created it was still Eve, so it was no surprise. Professor Steve asked again about Eve, and clarified that she really knew where they were. Karina replied that she knew very well, and added, looking away, that if she were the professor, she would leave. Turning around, Professor Steve saw the undead approaching and shouted that they were coming. Karina said that this was probably just an appetizer before the main course and immediately put on her armor. Putting on a special mask with a smile, she wished herself bon appetit. The monsters rushed at Karina, but she easily sent them to the other world with her weapon. When she had dealt with all of them, Karina smiled and said it was a thrill. Peeking out from his hiding place, Professor Steve wondered why she only used firearms. After all, there were now many different weapons that ran on mana. And seeing more undead approaching them, he decided that this crowd had been attracted by the gunshots. One of the monsters attacked Karina from above, but she quickly dealt with it. And already on the run, holding her weapon at the ready, she told the undead that she was coming. After dealing with a few more monsters, she saw a whole crowd approaching her. She thought that they had probably decided to overwhelm her with their numbers and switched to a more powerful weapon. Karina used it, and soon there was a pile of monsters in front of her that she had sent to the other world. She had barely time to catch her breath and think about it when the biggest monster rushed at her. With a loud growl, it prepared to attack. And Karina thought that at least this was something new. She decided to change weapons, but was surprised to find that she had no ammunition. Apparently, she had forgotten to reload it. The monster continued to growl, and Karina, raising a barrier of mana, tried to find the ammunition. Professor Steve looked at her and said that she had powerful attacks and impenetrable defense in one bottle. Meanwhile, the monster tried to break through the barrier created by Karina's mana, but he couldn't do anything. Finally, Karina found the ammunition, and saying that now it was her turn to attack, shot the monster. The shot sent the monster to the other world, and she said that it was more pleasant to deal with healthy thugs, but it was not the time to rejoice. And turning around, she told the man she called Mr. Coward to let the old man go because he was useless. He replied that it was her own fault for playing around and leaving him unattended, and told her to lower her weapon. Before he could finish, Karina sent him to the other world with a single shot, and said that he probably thought that since he had gone after Aziz, he had become stronger. Professor Steve told Karina what she was doing, because she could have hit him. Sighing, she replied that he should be grateful that she had saved him at all. She told him to look at the man's face. His tattoo showed that he was a member of Mutlaq, and under his clothes, there were even more tributes to Aziz. Karina believed that they wanted to eliminate all the scientists at the symposium. The professor said that he immediately thought it could be them, and now he had no doubts. He asked if she could save the others. She asked if he was sure, because her mission was to protect him. Professor Steve replied that he would be fine because she had done a great job here. He told her not to worry about him and to save the others. Karina smiled and replied that she knew he would say that. She advised them to hide for now and that she would be back in a moment. Meanwhile, Shu was walking through the dungeon when he met a man wearing a lion mask who said he had been expecting him. Shu replied that he seemed to have just arrived and added that he understood he didn't have time to change clothes, but he could at least change his voice. He suggested that Professor Boris stop the charade and take off the ridiculous mask. He replied that if he took off his mask, it would be completely boring. And besides, it was part of his personality. Shu said that he used beautiful words, but he was just a clown. He added that from now on, he would call their company Masquerade. He replied that it seemed Sho had gotten cocky after sending Kidea to the other world, but he couldn't even comprehend the concept of the cycle. Beginning to activate his infernal weapon, Sho asked if he really meant to say that it would be better. The professor also began to activate his abilities, asking if he really thought he would have come if he wasn't sure of his victory. Sho thought that this meant at least 2 cycles, meaning that their abilities were very different, even though they were the same. It turned out that they were hiding the secret of their power from each other. His opponent, preparing for battle, said that in order to achieve their great goal, they would destroy all obstacles like him. Smirking, Sho said that he didn't give a damn about the goal they were pursuing. Professor Boris replied that someone like him would never understand it and threw a burst of energy at him. Sho easily dodged it and activated his upgrade. A halo appeared above his head. His opponent told him not to get cocky because of one dodge, and Sho realized that he was not reacting to the halo at all. This meant that he was also a small fish who didn't even know about the upgrade, and Sho decided that the fight would end faster than he thought. He swung his arm and attacked his opponent with a burning infernal weapon, but the latter stopped him with his bare hands. Then he attacked Sho, who flew to the side, barely staying on his feet. Then Sho attacked again, using his mana bombardment ability. His attack didn't even touch Professor Boris, who began to activate his abilities again. Sho didn't understand why he felt different powers, as if he were fighting several people, but it wasn't like in addition to his characteristics. Then the enemy turned to Kurita Sho and said that he was going to show him why he couldn't defeat him. He activated the paranormal core. He said it was a masterpiece to which he had devoted his entire scientific career. The description opened, and Sho saw that the brains of 179 hunters were collected in this core. he was able to combine their powers and accelerate to 3 cycles. He said he was curious about what would happen if he researched the hunters, and the government provided the brains of hunters who had broken the law. He asked if Sho could withstand 100 different abilities. Sho asked how he could talk about it with such pride. The opponent said that the reason he couldn't win was that he was a monkey bound by morality and didn't break the rules, and activated the core. Sho had a nasty feeling, as if all his strength was being drained from him, and he realized that the mana suppressor was working. But gathering the last of his strength, he rushed into the attack, thinking that his opponent had attacked the wrong person. Professor Boris, who did not expect this, barely managed to dodge his attacks. Meanwhile, Sho activated his enhancement and combat skills and swung to strike. He struck, but the professor was able to hold off the infernal weapon in defense. After that, he took a defensive stance and activated first the parallel connection, then the reboot of the operators, the highest barrier, and the iron stand. Finally enraged, he rushed into the attack, shouting that Shuo should go to the other world and calling him a nobody. Shuo also activated 3 abilities at once: Poison, Hand of Doom, and Mana Bombardment, and rushed towards him to attack. When they began to fight, So seized the moment and struck his opponent, who crashed into a rock with a bang. But after a while, a voice asked So if he was winning. Then, in the distance, the glow of the core appeared. Seo's opponent activated his abilities, Regeneration and Super Healing. Coming out of there and continuing to regenerate, he asked if he really thought that among so many hunters, there was no one with regenerative abilities. Then Sho replied that he would simply finish him off so that there would be nothing left to regenerate. Meanwhile, Karina was still dealing with the undead that kept coming and coming, not understanding where they all came from. And then she accidentally discovered a mass teleportation device. It moved physical objects to a specified point. It was not a cheap toy. Finally, she understood how they had gotten in and thought that cockroaches were annoying, but not as much. At that moment, she felt a collision of mana flows, both above 2 cycles. One probably belonged to Kiritani, but she didn't know who the second strange mana belonged to. After making a passage, she decided she would understand when she saw it. Meanwhile, Professor Boris had completely healed and was ready for battle. Sho's opponent was very angry and showered Kiritani Sho with curses. Sho thought that there were no restrictions on his treatment, which meant that as long as this thing worked, he could use his abilities indefinitely. His opponent, meanwhile, rushed into the attack, activating his berserk ability and super powerful destructive blows. They clashed in battle, and the collision of their powerful abilities caused an explosion. The professor said that Sho's strongest ability was apparently summoning this flame, and he activated abilities such as a cold gust and severe icing. Sho saw that his weapon was immediately covered with ice, and his opponent laughed and asked how he felt now that he had extinguished the flame. And again, rushing into the attack, he said that no matter how strong the ability of the parallel core was, there would be an answer to it. Sho asked if he was sure of that and used a penetrating blow, wounding his opponent in the chest. He asked his opponent if the core had no answer to this. The opponent activated healing and super healing and said that someone like Sho could not be left alive. He activated mana absorption, mana burning, and mana theft, but Sho was able to repel his attack. His opponent told him not to get cocky and activated several abilities, including critical strike. But at that moment, the core system announced that the maximum calculation threshold had been exceeded. Sho thought that the time had come, now or never, and prepared to attack. He activated his secret technique, Lunge, and rushed at his opponent with his weapon. Seeing this, his opponent said that he could not be defeated just because he was able to get close. Sho thought it was a shame to waste his ability on such a weakling, but a third of his points should be enough. He activated his spirituality and used his secret technique, Resonance. With one blow, he destroyed the ice barrier created by his opponent, who cried out that it was impossible. Sho delivered the decisive blow, and this time sent his opponent to the other world. The system announced a level up, and that new abilities, quick calculation and multiple calculations, had been obtained. Looking at the abilities he had gained, Sho thought about which would be more useful, but at that moment, there was a powerful explosion, and Sho was thrown aside by the shockwave. Getting up and looking in the direction of the explosion, he asked what was going on. Karina was standing there, pointing a weapon at him, and demanding an explanation of where his spirituality came from. Otherwise, he would follow that man. She told him to answer who he really was. Shu said he had the same question and asked why she was pointing a weapon at him. He tried to attack her, but she blocked the attack. Sho flew to the side and said he was not obliged to answer her question. Adding that he had just swatted a mosquito, he said that if she could prove she was not his girlfriend, he would be willing to share information. Karina replied that she would see how he could remain so arrogant with a couple of extra holes in his body and opened fire, but Sho dodged. He rushed to attack, but Karina managed to create a barrier of mana that he couldn't destroy. In turn, she opened fire, but Shu used his weapon to defend himself from the bullets. She thought that he had such firepower and defense that he could completely absorb her attack. Now she understood the power of an SS-class hunter. Meanwhile, Xiao prepared for battle again. Saying that it was time for him to accept it, Karina fired her weapon. This was unexpected for Xiao, and a powerful explosion occurred where he was standing. Stones flew from all sides, and Karina, clutching her head, realized that she still didn't know who he was. But then, her mana barrier was again attacked by Shou's infernal weapon, and she realized that he could still continue. She fired again, but Shou disappeared, and she thought that he had used the weapon as a decoy. Shou himself had already rushed into the attack, activating his Arm of Doom ability. Karina didn't have time to think that this was bad before Shou attacked and she was thrown aside. When she got up, he landed opposite her, and she said that he was an idiot. And what was he thinking? She said that not only did he name the guild Reboot, but he also used the upgrade. Shou thought that she was familiar with the words reboot and upgrade, which meant she was not a member of the masquerade. He said that he lured people connected to his world. She replied that it was one thing when mosquitoes and gnats got caught in his web, but there were also hornets, very dangerous hornets that lived in any climate. She said that one hunter from their world had already been killed. He asked if she was talking about Kashida Mamoru. Karina asked how he knew that. Shou replied that he didn't hide his Ratiel for no reason, pretending it was just a simple ability. He said that it seemed they weren't enemies, and suggested that they start by taking the scientists and getting out of the dungeon. Karina replied that he shouldn't think that he had defeated the boss and was now safe, because she had created this Eve. Shou was surprised that she knew, and even more surprised that she had created him. Karina told him to answer how he could use the upgrade, and Shou realized that it was Kushushu. He replied that he was one of those who created the upgrade and fought using spirituality, and asked if she knew who they were. She told him not to talk nonsense if he wanted to say that he was one of the 8 heroes, and not to try to deceive her by calling himself a famous name. Karina looked closely at Shu, wondering if he really was one of them. It was definitely not Dharma Mur or Tehran. With his character, he definitely couldn't be Red Anvil or Kruger. And then she realized with surprise that he could only be Arden. He said they hadn't seen each other in a long time, calling her sister Kushushu. She asked if he was the kid who couldn't sleep without her lullaby. She had sung that lullaby only once when he was very young, but Shou was not surprised that he remembered it. Shou asked if she remembered the words about how she shouldn't jump above her head. At that moment, she threw down her weapon and rushed to hug him. Looking at her, Shou thought about how he believed he had lost his homeland and his friends. Back then, in that dying world, he had nothing left worth protecting. But he was glad he was wrong, because here, one of the people dear to him had returned to him. On the battlefield, surrounded by lifeless bodies, Elena asked Arden to be strong. When the monsters wounded her, she begged him to at least survive, and she would deal with them. And then he began to fall into a dark abyss, shouting Elena's name and reaching out to her. As he fell, he thought it was just disgusting and didn't understand why he had survived. Everything he had once tried to protect had ultimately disappeared into nothingness. He was surrounded by monsters and wondered if this was really the end and whether he should just accept it. When he fell, he thought that it was the one who had sent the queen to the other world, who had once disappeared. But he didn't understand why he was here at the bottom of the abyss. And then he remembered Elena, who had asked him to survive. But he thought, what was the point of living in this world if there was no one left in it whom he cared about? And he decided that he would soon go to the other world, and that it would be his salvation. Finding himself among a multitude of different monsters, he told them they could attack. He began to fight them, and at that moment, he was driven by only one desire. No matter what, he had to send the leader of the invading group, the Overlord Queen, to the other world. Preparing for battle, he knew that she was as strong as she was arrogant. He fought her with all his might, using his magical weapon. At one point, he managed to wound the queen with another blow. Shou, who told all this, said that these were memories from his past life and asked if they believed him now. Hugging him, Karina said that he had gone through something terrible. But then she smiled and said happily that he was finally back. He replied that it was true, he was back, and asked how long she was going to keep stroking his head. She replied that it was better to remain silent at such moments. Professor Steve approached them and said he didn't want to ruin the moment. Karina asked if he didn't want to ruin it, then why was he peeking? He replied that it was rude, but he only came because Kirita invited him. She asked Shou why he called him. Shou told the professor that he brought something that might interest him. He showed him the paranormal core, saying that it was created in collaboration between Professor Boris and the government. The professor asked if he wanted to give him the core. Shou replied that it wasn't for nothing. The professor asked what he wanted. He replied that he wanted nothing excessive. He asked that everything be kept secret, and that the technology and profits obtained with the core be shared with him. The professor agreed, but asked how he had earned such trust, since he could pass on all the knowledge he had gained to the government. He replied that he did not trust him, but Karina. She told the professor that he had heard him and that if he tried anything, he would pay for it. Professor Steve shouted as he ran away that he understood them and would start his research right away. Karina said she was sorry, but it was time to say goodbye because she had other things to do. Sho replied that it was no problem and they could meet later. She gave him her phone number so they could stay in touch. Then she ran after Professor Steve. And Sho thought that in the end, things weren't so bad after all, because he hadn't lost everyone. By some miracle, he had met them again and decided that this time he would definitely protect them. At that moment, an emergency situation arose on the coastal defense line in Osaka, and all crew members had to go on alert. The captain was informed that a large number of energy waves were coming from the depths. He asked how big they were and whether the cause had been identified. He was told that the rift gate had presumably opened directly at the bottom. The captain was surprised and said that couldn't be. He ordered the crew to raise the alarm along the entire coastal defense line and call in the hunters. Just like that, a rift suddenly appeared in the middle of the ocean, and no one knew what awaited them now. After a while, Sho was sitting in a chair, and Aoki was staring intently at him. He asked what had happened. She said that after the terrorist attack at the symposium, he seemed to be feeling out of sorts. She was just worried, but she had the feeling that he was sitting there, not breathing at all. Sho replied that he appreciated her concern, but that he was fine. Then Aoki asked if it was true that he was dating Karino, one of the hunters. She showed him her phone and said she had stumbled upon an article about them and decided to ask. Sho replied that it was just gossip. Aoki started to say that he was right, but at that moment, Eri walked in. He told her that he had asked her not to come here because it was dangerous, but she had mana in her hands, and Eri happily announced that she had awakened. She said that upon awakening, she had gained 5 abilities. Shu wondered if 5 abilities were possible. Eri said that she had already applied for the hunter entrance exam and wanted to join his guild. He replied that it was out of the question, but she asked why, since she had awakened and gained 5 abilities. Sho said that even with new powers, the guild was no joke. He thought to himself that 5 abilities were impressive, but it hadn't even been a year since she had recovered. At that moment, Aoki read the news that a rift had opened in Osaka, and all hunters needed to respond to the call immediately. Hearing about the call, Sho headed for the door, saying that it was time for them to leave. He told Aoki that they would continue training after the mission. Eri called after him that if her brother were alive and had awakened his powers, he would also have gone to fight with them. He turned around and noticed Eri's gaze, which was as unwavering as Ren's. Clutching his head, he said that if she passed the exam better than anyone else, he would think about it. Eri was very happy about this, but he added that she shouldn't expect any help from him. Eri replied that she wasn't counting on it and would pass on her own. Aoki watched them and just smiled. After a while, the Overlord Guild arrived at the port of Osaka. The captain said that the hunters, including the Bane Guild, had been fighting for about 6 hours. He pointed to the tornado, saying that it was like an elevator that moved monsters from the bottom. Fighter planes and ships could not get close to them, and as time passed, there were more and more monsters, including in the water under the tornado. Sho asked the captain if he could take them to the ship where the Bane Guild was currently located. The captain asked about the tornado. Then he told Shin and Finn that their task was to join the Bane Guild and help repel the attack on the ship. He himself would deal with the tornado. He asked Aoki to help him deal with the tornado. She was surprised by this. The captain respectfully told Mr. Kiritani that even underwater weapons could not destroy the tornado. But Sho replied that there was a more powerful weapon. Looking at Aoki, he clarified that it was lightning, which was very effective against water creatures. Meanwhile, on the ship of the Bane Guild, a fierce battle was raging with the attacking monsters. One of the hunters, reloading his weapon, said that there was no end to these creatures. Another asked if reinforcements had been sent. Then, after sending 2 monsters to the other world, Shin appeared and said that Kishida Shen, a member of the Overlord Guild, had come to their aid. At that moment, one of the hunters shouted that they were being attacked from behind. Shin turned around and saw that he was surrounded by many monsters. They attacked him, but Shin activated his ability and scattered them to the sides. When he defeated them, he proudly said that this was the result of his persistent training. But Finn told him not to relax. Meanwhile, Finn activated his ability and began mass healing. One of the hunters looked at his hand and was surprised to see that the wounds were gone. He thought that it was a mass spell that healed everyone at once, and some of the fish that had climbed onto the ship were also eliminated. Although the guild was new and small, it was powerful. Looking at these two, he thought that Sora was right, and that every member of this guild was simply a monster. Noticing his reaction, Shin told Finn that they had shocked everyone with their skills, but Finn asked him to be more serious because the battle was not over yet. Monsters came out of the water again, and Shin said that they were very stubborn. But he thought that this battle would not last long because his brother was about to join the game. Meanwhile, Sho was carrying Aoki on his shoulders, and she asked if she was too heavy. He replied that she wasn't really, and asked if she was ready. She was ready, and Sho, carrying her on his shoulders, began to move towards the target. The captain clutched his head when he saw him jumping from monster to the tornado. They were approaching their target, and Aoki thought she had to remember what she had learned, and everything would go perfectly. When the time came, she shouted to Sho, and pushing off from him, headed straight for the center of the tornado. She repeated to herself that she needed to pull the mana like a thread, then twist it, and finally pierce the target. She did it, and she succeeded. The captain was amazed at how she stopped such a powerful tornado and thought that this was the power of SS rank hunters. When Aoki emerged from the water, she asked Sho if it was all over. He replied that it seemed so, as the monsters had stopped moving from the depths. But then, a huge tentacle appeared from the water, and Sho said that it looked like one was left, and it was this monster. The two of them began to fight the tentacle, and Aoki thought it was incredibly huge and fast. She even wondered if one tentacle was that big, how big the monster itself must be. Then Sho warned her that something was approaching her from below, and a tentacle emerged very close to her. She barely managed to dodge it. They separated several of them, and he thought that only the tentacles were coming out and the body itself remained underwater. Suddenly, Aoki shouted at Sho to be careful, but he was already in the water. At that moment, there was an explosion right in the water, and they barely managed to jump out of the way. Sho shouted for Aoki to protect the civilians, saying he could handle this himself. She went to the ship, and he began to fight on, realizing that the joke was over and the monster had finally decided to come out. Finally, a huge octopus appeared from the depths, and they called this monster Neen. Activating his abilities and preparing himself, Sho said that it was time for a real battle. The monster began to attack, firing numerous projectiles at its opponent. Watching it, Sho thought that each shot was more powerful than the last and had a long range, but it was quite easy to dodge. Deciding that he could take advantage of this, he began to activate his new ability. At that moment, the ability he had gained after sending Professor Boris to the other world came in handy. It was a multi-layered action, and at that moment, there were only 3 ways to use it, and that was its limit. The new ability was created by merging other abilities. It was called Emma's Wave, which released an unquenchable flame in all directions. Sho thought that this should be enough, and activating the ability released the flame at the monster. He was able to wound it, but the enemy was still alive, and Sho thought that he had not invested enough mana. Then he saw that the monster was swimming away, and thought it was going to escape, but then he saw that it was heading for the shore. The other hunters watching him shouted that he had to stop it at all costs. Then the monster opened its huge mouth and threw a large projectile towards the shore. It exploded above the rooftops, dousing those on the shore with some kind of green liquid. The hunters felt a painful sensation and realized it was acid. One of them shouted for the healers to help the wounded. The defenders took up their positions and then saw Sho approaching the shore. He shouted something to them, but they couldn't hear him. Sho shouted at them to leave the shore. The monster raised a huge wave that was about to engulf the entire city, and the people thought they were all going to die. But at that moment, Sho decided to use a secret technique called C-Split. With this technique, he managed to roll back the approaching wave, and the people standing on the shore thanked Mr. Kiritani. He told them that if they didn't want to get involved in the battle, they should leave, and he would deal with it himself. He headed towards the monster, prepared his weapon, and used the secret technique one step. In a second, he was above the enemy, said goodbye to the octopus, and delivered a crushing blow. The hunters, standing on the shore, were amazed by his actions and could not believe their eyes. Some of them became fans of Mr. Kiritani. Soon, as Sho sat and rested, his companions ran up to him, and Aoki said that he had done well and asked how he was feeling. He showed her his hand, and she realized that he was slightly injured. Sho told Aoki that she was too close. She immediately jumped back from him and apologized for it in embarrassment. Finn asked permission to examine him, but Sho replied that it was just a scratch. He thought to himself that it happened because he lost his vigilance when using a completely new ability. Finn said that it didn't matter if it was a scratch or not. He would help him anyway and began treatment. Meanwhile, reporters arrived and wanted Kurita to say a few words about what had happened in Osaka's water area. Finn suggested that he skip the interview today because he was probably too tired. Sho agreed, especially since Eri had an exam and he wanted to support her. But people in uniform approached them, and one of them introduced himself as Major Akira Uno from the Hunter Control Unit. Sho had to go with them. Aoki said that he had defeated the monster and asked on what grounds they wanted to escort him to the agency. He replied that she did not seem to understand the situation. He reminded her that the agency was a government institution and that disobedience would result in consequences, just like the Bane Guild. Angered, Aoki said that they had no right to pressure them in such a despicable way. But Sho stopped her and said that everything was fine and that he couldn't avoid it anyway. And he happened to have an acquaintance in their unit. In the unit, Major Tachibana banged her fist on the table and asked why they had brought him in, even though he had dealt with the monsters and closed the rift. After thinking for a moment, she said that it was most likely the work of the commander. Sho asked if she was talking about the commander, that is, her boss. She replied that her boss had taken responsibility for the terrorist attack at the symposium and resigned, but that was unnecessary. Tachibana was talking about Sukagawa Shunsuke, who had been bullying their department for a long time. He could do whatever he wanted with the hunters, and apparently decided to take a swing at Sho. Sho clarified that Aoki from the Bane Guild was blackmailing him, since the guild itself was small, and it wouldn't cost anything to cover for that. Major Uno Akira came in and said he was disappointed that she had turned off the tape recorder to talk to the detainee alone. He showed Sho a photo of Eri Agawa and said that she was a pretty young girl, a minor, and lived with him under the same roof. Sho thought that they were also going to accuse him of molesting minors. He said that he was not doing anything illegal in relation to her. The major asked how he could prove his words. He added that if he wanted to justify himself, he needed to go on television. Sho thought that he did not have time for these childish games. He said that he wanted to talk to his immediate superior. The major replied that the commander was busy and had a lot to do in both his personal and public life. Sho stood up and the major asked him what he thought he was doing. He replied that since his boss was not there, he saw no point in staying. Major Uno Akira told Kiritani to sit down immediately, and that if he resisted, he would only make his situation worse. But Sho ignored him, kicked the door open, and left the interrogation room for the office where the other members of the unit were. One of them, angry, asked what he was doing, and Major Uno Akira called him the commander. After informing him that he had been told that his boss was not there, Sho asked who he was. Touching him, Sho said that his badge seemed to be glowing. The commander shouted angrily, asking if he knew who he was, calling Sho a greenhorn, but Sho's hand was already reaching for his neck. He grabbed Sukagawa Shunsuke and punched him in the face. But then the second man present shouted for him to stop. The commander flew sideways from Sho's blow and asked the second officer who he was. Showing his documents, he introduced himself as the head of the National Security Agency, Tamio Sawada, and asked for the senseless violence to stop. Sho then suggested that the government was involved in this charade, but Tamio Sawada said that he had come personally to resolve the situation. He said that no one needed problems, and he saw no point in continuing this situation. He asked Sho what he wanted in return for forgetting about it. Sho replied that he wanted carte blanche for all his actions, which made Sawada Tamio frown. He said that with all due respect, SSS ranked hunters were still not gods, and giving him freedom would violate the Constitution. Sho countered that he himself seemed to understand little. He cited the example of the hunter Karin, who had been given freedom of action by the US government. SSS-ranked hunters from other countries also had freedom, and since Japan was unable to give him that right, he should consider immigrating to another country. Sawada Tamio asked him not to get carried away, especially since the rank promotion had not yet been legally confirmed. Putting his hand on his shoulder, Sho asked if he had come with the desire to resolve the situation. Then, he must know how strong he was. He added that it was in his best interest to go home early and convince the government, by any means necessary, to give him what he wanted. Sho said that when he did what he asked, he should contact him through his agent, Major Tachibana. She didn't understand when she had become his agent. Before leaving, he punched Major Uno, saying that was for today. The major flew back, making a hole in the wall, and everyone present watched Sho leave in horror. When he left the building, Aoki, who was waiting for him, ran up to him and asked how he was and about his injuries. He replied that he was fine, even though the incident had been unpleasant. With Aoki was Tomura, who said that the Hunters Association was dissatisfied with the government's behavior and that they should not dare to treat an SSS-ranked hunter that way. He offered to drive Sho home, but Sho said that he actually needed to go to the Hunter Examination Center. When they arrived, Eri was surrounded by reporters who were interviewing her. She approached him and said happily that he had come after all. Sho replied that he had finished his work faster than expected. Eri was the participant who scored the highest on the exam, and everyone congratulated her, wishing her success in her endeavors. But Sho, clutching his head, only asked if she realized what she was signing up for. She replied that, of course she did. Then he shook her hand and said he was counting on her. In response, Eri laughed and asked Sho to take care of her. Late in the evening, one of the hunters, Karina, turned on the live broadcast and said that everyone had arrived on time, which was rare. She asked if they knew why they had gathered today, and one of her interlocutors replied that it was because of Kirita Sho. This hunter had become a hot topic of discussion in their circles, and it seemed that he would soon become one of them. She asked the other members of the video conference what they thought about this. There was silence, and Karina asked why everyone had fallen quiet. Kim Yeon from South Korea said that he did not consider him one of them. He had watched a video of his fight and was not impressed. Ivanov from Russia also said that he would not call him one of them so quickly. Modin Jeffman from England said that the royal family was following his successes, but calling him SSS ranked was a gross exaggeration. Hunter Chen Baijin from China preferred to remain silent on the matter. Karina thought that even though he was a rising star, they didn't care about it at all, and all they did was belittle him. She asked if they didn't consider him worthy of SSS rank. Maybe they wanted to see him in person. She added that she could arrange it. They agreed, and she said that it was settled, adding that she doubted they could even stand next to someone like him. After a while, Eri Igawa introduced herself to Finn and Shen, saying that from that day on, she would be part of the guild. Finn Chandler introduced himself and said she could just call him Finn. She replied that he could just call her Eri. Shin Kishida also introduced himself and said she could call him little brother Shin. Finn told him that they were the same age and that she was Karita's stepsister. If he continued to behave like this, he might regret it. He said he didn't mean anything by it and hadn't even thought about the consequences. Eri asked where Sho was, and Finn replied that he had gone out on business, saying he would take care of the garbage disposal. Meanwhile, Sho was standing with Major Tachibana among the people he had defeated. She said that after receiving carte blanche, he had gone too far. She reminded him how a few days ago, he single-handedly destroyed a black financial company. He replied that he intended to do so even without permission. And he asked, pointing to the criminal, if she was against him getting rid of such scum. She replied that she was not. Meanwhile, the criminal asked Sho if he even knew who was protecting him. Zhao asked who it was and added that he was really curious. At that moment, the criminal tried to attack him. Dodging the attack, Zhao realized that the criminal had the ability to increase his magical power, which meant that he was not just a small-time crook. The criminal ran to the side and said that he was not going to fight him, but would simply run away from them. He said he was going to use the skill he had taught him, but Sho had already grabbed him by then. Sho hit the criminal, and the latter shouted for him to wait and asked if he thought he could get away with it. And once again, he asked if Sho knew who was protecting him. Already raising his leg to strike, Shao said that he always said that someone was protecting him and told him to say who it was. He stepped on his shoulder, pressing him to the floor, and the man screamed in pain and said he would tell him his name. Looking at the criminal, Shao realized that he probably couldn't reveal his name. He decided that the masquerade gang had gained influence in China, but he didn't think the man had heard of them. He added that the human trafficking organization, Wayland, had come to an end and delivered the final blow. Shao's level increased, and he gained the Magic Devourer skill, which he didn't expect to get. Just like that. Looking at the ability window, he told Major Tachibana to clean up the place, which made her angry. He thought that despite these rough movements, it was definitely the skill Increase Magical Power. Sho wondered if the masquerade could be related to all this, and what they should do. Meanwhile, at the next meeting, the man in the hawk mask said that after the butterfly, he had dealt with the lion. In a short period of time, they had lost 2 people. The woman in the dragon mask asked what had happened, and if he was afraid of being next, to which he called her a cheeky girl. A man in a faceless mask joined their conversation and told them both to stop because they definitely didn't need any quarrels between them. He announced that the 2 vacant spots would be filled by twins. He believed that they were worthy of it, especially since 2 spots had just become available. Hawk said that even if they had new members, what would they do with Karita Sho? Because this kid was too abnormal and dangerous, and they were no match for him. The man in the faceless mask suggested that they lie low for a while. He left, and Hawk asked how he could just take off like that. Snake asked why he shouldn't take care of their new members. Hawk asked why him, and Dragon replied that why not, since education was his specialty. She said that he should educate them to become worthy people who could take the place of Lion and Butterfly. She had things to do, so she said goodbye. She went outside and was finally able to take off her mask, thinking that they were nothing but trouble. Her name was Chong Huailin. She thought she had told the lion to abandon his research, but because of it, he had gone to the other world. Then a notification came to her phone, and she wondered what else could have happened. She read that all of Weilon's vital signs had disappeared and didn't understand why. Calling them useless, she thought that she had covered for them because they provided good test subjects. And now, she didn't know where to find suppliers. The last message from them was about an intrusion, and apparently these people had dealt with Lee. Most likely, they were SS rank or higher. She thought that in Japan, only one person came to mind who was higher than SS rank. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door, and she said to come in. Looking at the man who entered, Chong Huailin said that he looked good for someone who had lost a couple of limbs at the symposium. She asked her father, CEO Chang Wen, what he needed. He said that he had sent a couple of people to investigate, and nothing but household items had been found in Boris's house. In addition, he asked to investigate the illegal laboratory, but it had been blown up, and he was sure that the hunter Karin was involved in the explosion. Chang Huailin told her father that he was useless and that perhaps he should be removed from his position as CEO. She said that Wei Long had fallen, and now she would not get any new test subjects, and perhaps he should become one of them. His company had become the top company in China thanks to her, and she believed that it was in his best interest not to spoil her mood by engaging in unnecessary nonsense. Clutching her head, she asked why she was surrounded by idiots, and Chang Wen apologized to her. Seeing a photo she had, he recognized the hunter Kurita on it. She said that this man was causing them unnecessary problems. He said that he had personally seen what he was capable of, and that this man was about to be awarded the SSS rank. He warned her that it was dangerous to cross him. Chang Huailin asked if her father really believed that his opinion meant anything. She added that if he valued his life and his current position, he should do as he was told and not upset her unnecessarily. She said that the sight of him gave her a headache and asked him to leave, and Chang Wen left. Chang Huailin thought that they had probably taken the paranormal core created by the lion, but they did not yet realize its potential. Looking at the photo of Kurita Sho, she decided that she would send him to the other world before he was awarded the SSS rank. The guild members were flying on a plane, and Eri asked Shin why he was sitting behind Sho. He said that it was no longer up to him to the side. Shu told them both to calm down. Otherwise, they would be dropped off somewhere in the ocean to make noise there. Shin apologized and said they were just bored. He asked Sho what he was doing. Sho replied that he was watching an interview. The reporters asked Mr. Kane what it was like to be the strongest hunter in the world. He replied that he didn't consider himself to be so, and was sure that someone would soon come along to take his place. The reporter said that for an SSS ranked hunter, he was quite modest, but Kane said he was sure there was someone among the hunters who had surpassed him. Sho felt that Kane Bruce had walked the same path as him, and he wanted to meet him and discuss this moment. He looked at Finn, who looked worse than usual, and Sho thought that maybe he should have left him at the guild. Shortly before that, Tomura congratulated Eri Igawa on joining the guild. Sho said that he probably didn't come just for that. He said that was true, and that he had come to deliver an invitation from the hunter, Karina. It was not an invitation to a private meeting. Other SSS ranked hunters would also be present. Sho asked Tomura if it was true that he had been invited to the meeting to assess his potential as the 8th ranked hunter. Tomura replied that it was true, but he added that the other rankers didn't seem to be very happy about him, so Karina wanted to introduce him personally. Sho thought that, knowing Karina's character, she wanted him to demonstrate his strength. Shin asked him which city they were going to, and Sho replied that they were going to Las Vegas. Eri and Shin were very happy about this, but Sho stopped them, saying that they weren't going there to have fun. They asked to come with him. Sho said that the whole guild had been invited, so he would take them if they promised not to make any noise. Looking at them jumping for joy, Sho thought that he might regret this. Approaching Finn, Sho asked him what was wrong, but Finn replied that everything was fine and that he was just lost in thought. Shu remembered that Finn had left his previous guild because of an incident in America, and it seemed that he was uncomfortable returning there. He told Finn that if he didn't want to go, he could go back to Japan. But Finn replied that he had a duty to accompany the master as a member of the Overlord Guild. Although he said so, his expression suggested otherwise. Sho could only hope that everything would turn out well. Finally, they arrived in the city of gold and glitzy casinos, Las Vegas. Karina ran up to them and hugged Sho, saying that he had finally arrived. Eri immediately jumped up and told her to get away from Sho. Karina called her a cute little girl. Touching her, Karina said that she was not old enough to talk like that. Eri did not understand what she was doing. Karina said that it was okay and that she had room to grow. Shin wanted to say something, but Eri punched him in the face. They started fighting, and Sho, following Karina, asked Finn to watch over them. When they arrived, all the guests had already gathered and told Karina that she was late. Kurita Sho followed her in and, looking around, realized that Bruce Kaina was not there. Karina said there was no point in introducing herself and asked who would go first. All the hunters stared at Sho. She asked again who would go first, but everyone remained silent. So she asked if no one wanted to go. Kim Yoon said that they hadn't been to Las Vegas in a long time and that he thought it was the perfect place for a casino. Karina asked if he was serious about the casino and why not demonstrate his powers in a duel. But his ability was to see the future, which he could glimpse for a few seconds, and this ability could be demonstrated in a game. Karina asked if he wanted to use his abilities openly. He replied that he didn't mind if others used them too. When they arrived at the casino, Yonu suggested that whoever had the most chips at the end should challenge Sho. It was a serious test requiring maximum effort. Karina said she didn't see the point in challenging Sho. Ivanov said the same and let Yonu entertain himself. They were asked to place their bets, and Yonu went all in, betting all his chips. Looking at him, Sho thought that he had probably decided to do this because of his ability to foresee the future. The unspoken rule of blackjack was that if you bet everything, you were confident of winning, and Sho thought that if things went that way, Kim Yoon would win. At the end of the game, the winners were Mr. Kim Yoon and Miss Chen Baijin. The next round began, and Xiao decided it was time to use the new ability he had gained from defeating the boss, Wei Lan. At that moment, he did not pay attention to the Eye of Wealth ability, thinking that it would not be useful to him. The Eye of Wealth was an ability that could see the flow of money. Sho had a better chance of getting closer to 21 than the dealer. He had 19. So there should have been no problem. The winners of the second round were Mr. Kim Yoonu and Mr. Kirita. Sho thought that thanks to his ability, Kim Yoonu continued to win in each round. But the Eye of Wealth could rival him unless the other players use a more powerful ability. Then Yeonwoo said that it was somehow unseemly for a ranker to cheat in such an obvious way. Pulling a card out of his sleeve and laughing, Modan Jeffman said that he could see right through him. And Modan Jeffman folded in this round, as did Ms. Chen Baijin. Looking at them, Zhao thought that these two weren't even trying to win. Yeonwoo asked Kiritani if he was going to cheat. He added that it was surprising because he thought that in terms of intelligence, he could be compared to a monkey. Karina laughed and asked Ivanov if he had heard about the monkey. He replied that she was too cheerful. Angered, Sho thought about what he could use to win. He decided to take the 3 abilities of the Eye of Wealth, Super Strength, and the entire list of martial arts and create a new ability. The new ability was called Midas Touch and created the best opportunity depending on the magic invested. He used this ability, and soon it was announced that Mr. Kiritani had won this round. Then, Sho won several more rounds in a row. Yeonwoo didn't understand how he could win 5 times in a row when he had blackjack. Karina said that Yeonwoo's luck had apparently run out, and he said that the audience should be quiet. He decided that Sho's streak of luck would end here, because this time he had 20 in his hand. Yoon went all in again and was already convinced that this time he would win. But then So smiled as he revealed his cards and announced that he had blackjack, and it looked like he would win. Looking at him, Yoon thought that he must have been hiding his true abilities from the very beginning. In any case, even with his ability to see the future, he couldn't beat him. Sho said that since he had won, he could choose who to fight, and he chose all of them. Karina laughed and said that he was simply incomparable. And Modan Jeffman asked her what it all meant. She said that he had heard everything himself, and then told the people in the casino that tomorrow there would be a battle that they couldn't miss. 4 world-ranked SSS hunters would fight against the promising hunter Kiritani Sho. She told everyone that if there were no objections, the battle would take place at midnight sharp. Later, Sho was at a party drinking champagne when Eri ran up to him. She asked him if he really had to fight several top-ranked players at once. She thought it was too much, but Sho told her not to worry and that he could handle it. Then, with tears in her eyes, she asked him to give up if the fight went too far and his life was in danger. He stroked her head and promised her that he would. Eri told him not to dare break his promise. At that moment, Aoki appeared and said that he was being reckless as usual. Sho said he didn't know she was coming. Aoki replied that she had just arrived. He told Aoki that the dress suited her, and then Karin jumped up to them and started hugging Sho. She asked if he had seen their faces and added that their knees were already shaking. Sho told her that it seemed she had had enough to drink. Aoki asked Sho who the girl was, and Karin in turn asked who she was. Sho introduced Aoki to the hunter from the Bane Guild and the hunter Karin, who ranks 2nd in the world rankings. Aoki said she knew who she was, but she just didn't realize that the 2nd most powerful hunter in the world could behave so boldly. Karina said that she seemed to understand everything. Aoki was as straightforward as a train track, and only someone like her could flirt with Sho. But she added that, unfortunately for her, Sho was hers, and she had no intention of giving him up. Then she ran off, saying that the party was in full swing and the fun must continue. Then Finn approached Sho and whispered that he wanted to distract him for a second. They went out onto the balcony, and Sho realized that Finn wanted to discuss his past with him. He said it was a rather boring story. Before he met Sho, he worked for the American guild Barstow of the Gilded. One fateful day, an important mission was planned, and he was part of the first assault group. But his magic core was unstable, and problems began when the lives of the squad members were at stake. The mission failed. Finn made a detailed report, but the hospital refused to acknowledge that it was due to the instability of the core. And as was well known, Finn was not on good terms with the hunter who had been sent to the other world. In addition, that hunter was the son of the guild leader, who was now angry with Finn. Everyone in the guild began to suspect that he had deliberately sent him to the other world. Members of the Gilded Bar Guild were also present at this party. Then, Sho asked Finn what he himself thought. Finn said that he did not want to send anyone to the other world, but Sho said that he did not understand that. He asked what Finn thought of their guild, and whether he liked it. He replied that he felt very comfortable with them. They had their own rowdy brother and tomboyish little sister, but that didn't make things any worse. Zhao said that was great, and he wanted Finn to know that he believed in him. Finn thanked him, and Zhao simply waved to him as he left the room. Once inside, he said he didn't know that rankers had a hobby of prying where they shouldn't. Turning to the hunter Chen Baijin, he told her that it was bad form. She said she had come to warn him, and that he needed to lose this fight, otherwise he would be in danger. Xiao understood that she had come to threaten him. Chen Baijin replied that he could think what he wanted, but she had simply come to warn him. And Xiao thought that, judging by her gaze, he should be wary of someone else, not her, and he should find out more about it. He uttered the words butterfly and Waylon, but she clearly did not understand what he was talking about. And Xiao realized that she was probably not a member of the masquerade. She asked what this strange set of words meant, and why he was testing her like this. Zhao said that he had met many people in his life, and knew when someone wanted to harm him, but he did not see that desire in her eye. But still, she had come and warned him, not because she was being threatened or manipulated. She replied that as long as she was bound, she couldn't tell him anything. She left, and Xiao pondered her words about being bound and what was going on among the rankers in general. At one of the tables, the hunter Isla was angry that Finn was here and also a member of the Overlord Guild. She was asked to control herself. Angrily, she said that he was walking around free, considering himself innocent when he had taken her younger brother Jeff away from her. With a malicious laugh, she said that today he would pay for everything he had done. But the man who was with her said that Finn served Kurita Sho, and if he stood up for him, there was nothing they could do. She replied that at midnight, Kibitha Sho would have a fight between 4 rankers, and they would have to do as she said. At midnight, Sho was lying in bed when he heard a noise outside his door and got up. When he went out, he saw Kim Yoon standing at his door and said that he was apparently already awake and would be his first opponent. He was holding something in his hand, and Sho realized that it was iron balls. Throwing the balls, Yun said he hoped he wouldn't go to the other world while still half asleep. The balls flew straight at So like projectiles, but he jumped up and deftly dodged them. Sho was surprised when he saw that the iron balls bounced off the ground. And besides, he seemed to have thrown only 2 balls, but there were more of them. Seeing that he had dodged the attack, Yonu said that Sho was quite good at dodging. He threw more balls, but Sho caught them and said that if that was all he was capable of for Korea, it was a pitiful sight. But then Yonu activated his abilities and threw even more iron balls at Sho. Sayo used his abilities and began to move very quickly, dodging the balls. Yonu was surprised. It seemed as if he was standing still, but in fact, he was moving. He was amazed at such superhuman speed and decided to use his vision of the future to predict his movements. He concentrated and was finally able to determine Sio's trajectory. Yonu attacked again, but Xiao jumped back and managed to dodge. The opponent saw that he had now moved to the right and threw the balls, but Xiao disappeared at lightning speed. Xiao threw his opponent's own weapon at him, and Yonu thought that even using such an ability, he still lost to him. He sat defeated, thinking that even without using a weapon, Sho was able to defeat him. Sho approached and grabbed him by the throat. Yoon had the feeling that he was drawing magic out of him. Sho said that he was using magical nullification and that he would sleep. He told his opponent that today he would shine brighter than all of them. Yonu replied that he was wrong to think that this was the end. Throwing him aside, Zhao said that this was one less opponent. Now it was time to go up to the next floor. And when he got there, Xiao saw Ivanov. Seeing that Zhao had arrived, Ivanov said that that idiot Yonu had apparently lost after all. But it seemed that he had broken his weapon. He was a hulk, over 5 meters tall, and Sho wondered if he had grown so tall because of his ability. Sho told him that he had not brought his weapon with him, and his opponent replied that this would be his fatal mistake. He raised his huge fist above Sho to strike, but Sho managed to jump out of the way in time. Then he kicked the giant in the face, saying that, as they say, strength is not necessary if you have brains. Angered, Ivanov attacked again, saying that he would still dance and calling him a puppy. Ivanov used his abilities and lightning appeared in his hand. Sho realized that he was about to attack and thought that, despite his size, he was quite agile. He attacked, but Sho dodged, turned around, and kicked Ivanov in the stomach. Ivanov cried out in pain, but then said that he could not be defeated in hand-to-hand combat. Ivanov attacked again, but Sho blocked his attack, which surprised him greatly. He thought that this couldn't be possible because his opponent was blocking absolutely all of his attacks. At one point, Sho jumped up and disappeared from view, and Ivanov didn't understand where he was, but he was already above his head. Attacking his opponent from above, Sho delivered several powerful blows. Then he delivered another crushing blow, after which Ivanov fell to the floor. Standing over his defeated opponent, Sho said that even his gigantism had not saved him from failure. At that moment, the entire room was illuminated with purple light, and feathers scattered everywhere. A bird flew inside, and Sho thought that he was seeing one for the first time, and decided that it was the summoner's ability. Seeing the bird's owner, Modan Jeffman, Sho said that his bird was rather weak. Laughing, he said that his ability, Modern Jeffman, was indeed based on summoning creatures. He added that Sho shouldn't be upset, because he had prepared an opponent that would be to his liking. At that moment, the floor shook, and a huge winged monster appeared from under it. Jumping back, Sho thought he was expecting something majestic, but in fact, it was a mindless machine that couldn't take a step without its owner's command. The monster began to attack, but Sho managed to dodge the blows in time. At one point, he ran up and climbed onto the monster, striking it so hard that he severed one of its horns. He grabbed the horn and, saying that he was returning it, threw it at the monster, wounding it. And to top it off, he used his abilities and struck a blow that severed the monster's head. The lifeless body of the monster fell at the feet of its master, and Sho asked him if they would continue the battle. Modan Jeffman admitted defeat, because without his summoned creatures, he could not fight. But before leaving, he asked the hunter Kiritani to give him one piece of advice. He told him to be careful in battle against Chen Baijin, for she was a formidable opponent for all of them. Xiao thought about how, as far as he knew, Chen Baijin was China's best hunter, fighting from a distance. He went outside, and at that moment, caught a weapon flying straight at him. Zhao reasoned that it had come from the east, and thought it was crazy, but he was fighting against a rancor. Thinking that she must be somewhere out there, he used his abilities and saw his opponent. SSS-ranked hunter Chen Baijin was at the mid-resort, located 50 kilometers from Las Vegas. Zhao thought that this was an incredible distance, and that if he hadn't noticed the weapon, it could have killed him. He decided it was time to run, and used his secret technique, the lightning dash. Chen Baijin was still attacking, and thinking that he would have to fight back on the move, he summoned his weapon. As he moved, he fought off the enemy's attacks with his Ash Inferno weapon. Finally, he reached the place where Chen Baijin was waiting for him. Aiming at him, she said that he must be a fool to come so close to her. Saying goodbye to him, she fired, but Xiao easily parried the attack. Seeing that he had split her weapon in two, Chen Baijin was very surprised. Meanwhile, Zhao activated his abilities and rushed into the attack. Seeing this, Chen Baijin was frightened and thought that he might send her to the other world. Meanwhile, he remembered their conversation and that he had not seen the desire to send him to the other world in her eyes, and that she had come to warn him because she had been threatened or manipulated, but she couldn't say anything while she was tied up. Xiao struck, and Chen Baijin fell to the ground, defeated. He thought that Karen would be angry if he returned with her, but there was no other way. But he couldn't send her to the other world either. Meanwhile, while Xiao was away, several people surrounded Finn, and he asked them what they wanted. Among them was Isla, who said that he knew better than anyone what they wanted. She asked if he thought that by changing guilds, all his sins would be forgotten. She called him a traitor, and then a man joined them, who said that he should be called the one who sent a man to the other world. His name was Zaymon, and Finn said he couldn't say he was glad to see him, or Isla for that matter. He thought to himself that they had probably decided to deal with him while the leader was fighting the rancors. Isla furiously asked who gave him the right to utter her name with his filthy mouth. Finn replied that he had already explained everything. She retorted that he had said he was not to blame and that it was an accident. Then Isla said that this attack would also be an accident, and added that he would pay for destroying her brother. Attacking him with her weapon, she said that she might cut off his arm or leg. She attacked again and again, and Finn thought he had no chance. If it had been a one-on-one fight, he might have been able to handle her, but not when he was surrounded on all sides. While he was thinking about this, Isla easily wounded him and said that only an idiot would get distracted during a fight. Zeman put his weapon to his neck and said goodbye. Finn thought that this was how it would all end, and mentally apologized to the leader he had let down. But at that moment, Eri jumped up and kicked Z-Man. She said that he himself didn't look around, but scolded her, adding that she had a message from Sho. Eri said that by joining Overlord, his problems had become their problems. The other pursuers, pointing their weapons at them, realized that she was a member of Overlord and had to be sent to the other world. Shots rang out, and Isla said that she personally had no grudge against Eri, but that she was unlucky to be in a guild with a criminal. But at that moment, someone's voice said that this was very weak, and Isla didn't understand who it could be. Shin joined his comrades and said that it might sound too pompous, but they didn't have enough strength. Angered, Isla said that they were all getting in the way and told the others to get rid of the insolent brats, and everyone else rushed into battle. Activating her abilities, Eri fired several mana shells at the attackers. Shin and Finn, meanwhile, were ready to fight Zeman and Isla. In a rage, preparing to strike, Isla said that the criminal would soon be sent to the other world and she would not give him a chance. But literally a second later, Zaimon's weapon caught fire, and he didn't understand what had happened. Then, behind him, Sho appeared and struck him in the back, and he fell. Seeing that the leader had appeared, Finn looked at him with admiration. Standing in front of his comrades, Sho asked if they weren't done yet. Unaware of his arrival, Ayla asked what the hell he was doing there. Sho replied that if she thought about it for a moment, the answer would become clear. She couldn't believe that he had defeated 4 rankers in such a short time. Ayla shouted that it was complete nonsense and how he could have dealt with the 4 strongest hunters in the world. At that moment, the hunter Karin appeared and said that Ayla was very stubborn. She said that she had heard many different rumors about their guild, but did not expect them to be so stupid as to attack her guests. Ayla replied that they just wanted to scare him, but Karin hit her and said that if they were unhappy, they could take their complaints straight to the association. She added that she knew America was a country of freedom, but it was also strict with hunters. Karin told Sho that she would deal with them herself, and he thanked her. She added that it seemed the Sleeping Beauty had awakened, which greatly surprised Sho. When Chen Baijin woke up, she couldn't understand where she was for a while. Zhao came up to her and wished Chen, the hunter, a good morning. She got mad when she saw Kiritani, the hunter. Karin was with him, and Chen Baijin, who was handcuffed, asked what was going on. Then Zhao asked her if she had already forgotten what had happened. Karin reminded her how seriously she had considered sending Sho to the other world. She added maliciously, "Isn't Chen Baijin's gut too thin?" Unbuckling her, Sho told Karin that she didn't want to send him to the other world, that it was someone else. He told Chen Baijin that they had many questions for her and asked if she could explain what was going on. She replied that if she told him, there would be only one outcome. She had lost, and it was all over for her. Then Xiao asked, what if he promised to save her? She asked what he was talking about. Winking at her, Karin said that for starters, she should open up to them. Chen Baijin thought about how, with the support of the 2 strongest hunters, Kiritani and Karin, everything might work out. At that moment, Zhao guessed that someone close to her might be held hostage and asked who. Then she began to tell him that it all started 10 years ago, the year she awakened. Even her new powers did not bring her happiness. After her awakening, she had not yet received her SSS rank. At that time, her brother was lying in a hospital bed, fighting for his life. Chen Baijin covered the huge medical bills, thanks to her work as a hunter. This continued until a woman bought out the entire hospital, taking her younger brother hostage. That woman was Chang Huailin, the boss of the Down Company. And as long as her brother was in her hands, she was just a pawn. Karin remembered that it was an influential company in China, but it was run by Chang Wen. Chen Baijin said that it was for the people, but it was Chang Huailin who was in charge. Karin snorted and said that it was interesting. Shvo thought that it was no wonder he didn't feel any charisma from this person at the symposium. Karin said that Chen Baijin was now an SSS-ranked hunter and could turn to her country's authorities. She replied that she had tried, but it was profitable for them to do business with Dallin, and they didn't lift a finger to help her. The government was already looking for all possible ways to control the hunters, and with Hulin in control, her brother would be in danger. Hulin herself was a very powerful and influential person, and even with her SSS rank, Chen Baijin would not dare to go against her. Zhao told Chen Baijin that he would help get her brother out. She asked uncertainly if he was serious. She said that the biggest problem in all this was Chun's condition, because he couldn't last 10 minutes outside the sterile room. Zhao said there was a way, a Nirna pill that dulled the symptoms of the disease for 24 hours. He had 30 pills, and they would have time. Chen Baijin asked why he was doing all this, and Xiao replied that she would tell him everything she knew afterwards. He asked Karin if he had been officially declared a ranker yet. She replied that it was too early to think about that, and that some time needed to pass. But then she asked if he was going to fly to China. He replied that it was better to deal with this situation as soon as possible. Smiling, she said that she still had expectations of him, and offered to lend them her favorite helicopter. After a while, they were flying over Guangzhou in China. The pilot said they had arrived, and Karin replied that he should circle around. She said she didn't expect them to jump into the helicopter so quickly. Xiao said he wouldn't have done it without thinking it through first. Chen Baijin asked what they were going to do, as she was sure they didn't have permission to land. Grabbing both girls, Zhao said they were going to jump out of the helicopter. When they landed, Zhao said that speed was the most important factor in rescuing hostages. He added that Chen, the hunter, should lead them. They ran after her, and Zhao said on the run that they would first rescue Chen's brother and then deal with Huailin. When they approached the house, a man met them and clarified that Ms. Huailin was not there today. She replied that she had a busy schedule today and was alone. Then the man asked who was with her, and at that moment, Xiao struck him. Karin shot the lock open and said that they had no time to chat because speed was important. Entering the room, Chen Baijin woke her brother up, gave him some Nirna pills to take, and promised to explain everything later. After that, she grabbed her brother and they ran away. As they were leaving, Xiao told her to run to the helicopter and that he and Karen would take care of the rest themselves. Their priority was to move the hostage to a safe place. No matter how powerful Hulin was, she couldn't do anything against two rankers. She said she understood and would head for the helicopter. But at that moment, people ran towards them to catch them. Using his abilities, Xiao struck the ground, sending them all flying into the air. The men didn't have time to react before Xiao attacked them with powerful blows. When he was done with them, Karen asked the hunter Chen why she was standing there when she needed to run. She said goodbye to them, and a second later, she and her brother disappeared from view. When she ran away, Corinne said it would be interesting to see where Huailin's office was. Xiao decided that it was probably on the upper floors. Karen used her weapon to make a hole in the ceiling and said that they should go to her then. They approached the door, and Xiao was amazed at how extravagant the room was. Corinne said that it immediately revealed what kind of person the owner was. They entered the room, but there was no one there, and Xiao thought that she had managed to escape. But Karen said that she wouldn't jump to conclusions if she were him. After looking around the room, she pointed to a crack in the floor. They realized that it was the Gate of Eve. Karen said that Boris had used the same thing during the symposium, and she wasn't surprised that Chongwen's daughter was able to use it. Apologizing for the intrusion, she opened the crack wider and they went inside. Looking at what was on the street, they were very surprised at how much there was here. It all looked like a real national defense base. Karen thought about how much money she had poured into it, and then they saw Chang Huailin, who welcomed them to her domain. Karen asked what kind of strange mask she was wearing, or if she was so afraid to see them that she decided to put it on. But she only said that it seemed Chen had confessed everything and that it was not worth expecting much from her. She added that they had to be very foolish to enter here alone. Cheng Huailin confidently said that on her territory, they were just bugged. They prepared their weapons, and Xiao said that it had been a long time since they had fought side by side. Karen replied that he had no idea how much she had missed it. Laughing, Cheng Huailin said that sounded too confident. She repeated that on her territory, they were just bugged. He said they didn't need to worry and that they would get out of there, but added that it wasn't certain they would make it out alive and prepared his weapon. Karen realized it was a combat railgun and jumped aside, shouting at Xiao to take cover. As she dodged the attack, she thought that this model had been discontinued during development by the US military and didn't understand where she got it from. But the important thing was that this was her chance to destroy the enemies hiding on the American side. Running away during another attack, she asked how much money Chang Hailin had spent on these dangerous toys. An explosion thundered behind them, and Karen and Xiao tried to escape its shockwave. Xiao said that there were weapons and traps everywhere, and that they had to deal with them first. Activating his abilities, Xiao began to destroy Chang Huailin's weapons with his infernal weapon. Seeing this, she said from her throne that it was ugly to break other people's toys, but she added that it was okay and that she still had plenty of them. Meanwhile, Catherine saw that Chang Huailin had shot at her, but she created a barrier around herself and asked if that was all a world-class ranker was capable of. Seeing that the attack had failed, Corinne said that Chang Huailin was infuriating her, but she replied that it would be rude if she didn't respond in kind, and she opened fire with all of her heavenly demonic bow installations. With the help of his Inferno Ash weapon, Zhao managed to defend himself against this attack, but seeing that she had fired all her shells at once, Zhao shouted to Karen that they had to act now. Taking aim, she was able to use her weapon to blow up the remaining shells flying towards them. Zhao decided that there was no point in prolonging the battle and asked Karen to cover him. He rushed towards Chang Huailin, preparing his weapon for battle, and Karen told him to deal with her. Chang Huailin said that they could try and fired more shells at Xiao, but they didn't make it there because Karen blew them up with her weapon, saying that she completely underestimated her. She said that she specializes in firearms and that Chang Huailin isn't the only one with dangerous toys. Karen fired, and the weapons near her throne were destroyed, while Shou was able to get closer to his opponent. He said that he could see that she was a member of the masquerade and that she had to tell him everything she knew. Saying that he could go to hell, Chang Huailin blew some kind of smoke at him. He was covered by a dome, and Karen, seeing this, thought it was another one of Huailin's tricks. Zhao found himself in a completely different place and thought he had been teleported, but he did not feel like he had left the Gates of Eve. Then he realized it was an illusion and suddenly saw Elena in front of him. Elena asked him, calling him Arden, what had happened and why he had jumped up out of nowhere. Smiling, she said she was very happy to see him, but he replied that she knew nothing. Elena asked what he was talking about. At that moment, Shu hit her in the face, and she asked why he did that. He replied that she didn't know when to give up, calling her Huailin. But she asked who Huailin was, because she was Elena. Shu asked if she even knew who she was talking to. He added that she would regret using her image. He grabbed her and was about to strike her when he heard a voice asking if he was there. Turning around, he saw Karen coming out of the portal, and she asked what this place was. Then she saw Xiao holding Elena, who was lying on the ground, screaming that someone had taken control of Arden and asking for help. Karen asked if she was really Elena, and she replied that she was, and asked for help. But she told her to shut her mouth and shot her, wounding her. The illusion collapsed, and Chanhua-Lin, wounded in the shoulder, did not understand why her illusion had not worked. People in this illusion should see their loved ones, but it didn't work on either Karita or Karen. She said she was in pain and asked why she did that, but Sho said that this time it was over and used his abilities. Karen asked if he really wanted to just send her to the other world. Sho said that she probably wouldn't tell them anything anyway, but she asked him to trust her, and she would get everything out of Huailin. Then, Sho said he would just calm her down. He reached out to her, and Huailin, asking what he was up to, screamed for him to take his hands off her. After Xiao calmed her down, he asked if she could talk in that state. Karen said she could answer a maximum of 3 questions. He asked what the purpose of the masquerade was. Hualing replied that their goal was to conquer with the help of magic and a superior master. Zhao asked again what she meant by conquest. Karen thought that they wanted world domination. She laughed and said that those were childish dreams. Zhao asked who gave them these powers. Hualin replied that one day a man appeared and saved them all. The 10 of them, as if by fate, left their homeland and ended up here. Zhao wondered if there were 10 people, including this man, but Karen advised him to ask directly. She asked who was in their organization, but then something inexplicable happened. Hualin suddenly felt ill, and Karen didn't understand what was wrong with her. Realizing that she was about to pass away, Sho shouted questioningly where they all came from. She said they were from the underworld and immediately collapsed to the floor, passing away. Karen apologized for her mistake. She didn't think there were any restrictions on her body. Xiao replied that it didn't matter, and that they had learned quite a lot. He pondered the words that they were from the underworld, wondering if they were really from there, or if it was a kind of metaphor. Suddenly, they heard a noise and looked up to see a crack in the sky. The crack began to grow, and eventually the Overlord appeared from it. Karen said that it seemed he had been attracted by the Gate of Eve created by Huailin, but he was not on Earth, so everything should be fine. And as soon as they got out of there, he would no longer be a threat to them. Then Sho saw that the gate was beginning to close and told Karen about it, but she said they could fix it. But first, they had to distract the brute with the final dish, and she prepared to launch a huge weapon called the Mother of All Weapons. Sho tried to stop her, but she had already launched the weapon and said they had to run. Soon, there was a powerful explosion behind them, from which they barely managed to escape. Zhao told Karen that this was too much, but she said that they had distracted him and managed to get away. She asked if they could return to America now that they had sorted everything out, but Xiao said he wouldn't rush into it. He thought that Huilin was working with Vylon, and that large corporations would not cooperate with traders just for profit. They had no need to commit a crime and take such a risk just for big money. But he didn't understand why she would do that. Then Karen noticed a passageway. Xiao said that her explosion seemed to have opened their hiding place. Going inside, they found themselves in some kind of room, most likely the Danon Company's hiding place. There was all the compromising evidence against them, from deals with Vylon to the results of experiments on people and money laundering channels. After looking through the papers, Karen got angry and said, who knew they were such scoundrels? But when she inserted the flash drive into the computer, she decided that they were very lucky to find this hiding place. After all, with such evidence, the Danon Company would surely come to an end. Soon, So was already heading for the plane when he heard a voice behind him asking him to wait. It was Chun with his older sister, who asked him not to stress so much. Approaching Xiao, he thanked him and said that thanks to him, he felt much better. Chun, a little embarrassed, asked if he could just call him Xiao, and he replied that of course he could. Approaching them, Chen Baijin said that she also owed a lot to the hunter Kiritani and would never forget his kindness. Xiao replied that of course she owed him and would repay him. She asked what he was talking about. He said that did she really think he did all this out of the goodness of his heart? And that first, she would become a member of his guild. Chen Baijin replied that this was impossible because she had to take care of Chun. Showing her the Nirna pill, Sho said that it wasn't a request, but a way to repay him. Her brother needed these pills, and he said that since she was no longer dependent on Huilin and was no longer a member of the guild, she was a free hunter. She replied that even if that were the case, China would not allow her to join a Japanese guild. Xiao said that she didn't need to worry about that, and that if she joined Overlord, there would be 2 rankers in the guild, and the state wouldn't dare mess with that. Moreover, China wouldn't bother with them, because they would cover up their cooperation with Dallin and think about what to do next. Zhao held out his hand to her and promised to protect her brother and give the hunter Chen a job. Shaking his hand, she said she would trust the hunter Kiritani. And so, the ranker Chin Baiji became a member of the Overlord Guild. After a while, the pilot of a helicopter flying over the Pacific Ocean reported the discovery of an unidentified island. He flew closer to measure the magical power near it and was shocked by the result. The readings were off the charts. It turned out to be a dungeon. He radioed to immediately summon hunters from all over the world. The members of the Overlord Guild were training by fighting each other at the time. Sho instructed Kushida to make sure his blows did not hit his teammates. He told Eri not to get in the way and to work with everyone on the team. After a while, he said that was enough, and it was time for a break. At that moment, he saw Tamura running towards him and calling his name. Sho asked how he could help. Tamura said that the hunters had received an emergency call about an unknown dungeon discovered on an island in the Pacific Ocean. He said that only 2 guilds would participate in the operation. A meeting of the guild leaders would be held to make a final decision. Xiao said that he understood everything and that it was worth attending the meeting. Then he called the hunter Chen. She approached them and addressed Xiao, calling him Kiritani, but then corrected herself and called him boss. He told her that she could call him whatever she wanted. Tamura was surprised that it was true that Chen Beiji had become a member of the Overlord Guild, and Sho said that she would go to the meeting with him as the deputy head of Overlord. Meanwhile, at the next meeting, a man in a faceless mask reported that the dragon had gone to the other world. Hawk said that first of all, they needed to find an organization to replace Dallin. He replied that he didn't need to worry about that. He said that they had already found a suitable candidate and introduced them to the bear who had entered. The bear turned to the man in the faceless mask and suggested that they had decided to keep an eye on him. But the man replied that this was not the case. He said that since he was here, there was no need to get in his way, and that he could handle it himself. Hawk asked if he wasn't being too cocky. The bear said that he was not a loser who had achieved everything by chance. The hawk asked him to repeat what he had said and lunged at him, ready to strike. At that moment, the man in the faceless mask activated his abilities and said that enough was enough. Holding them both back, he said that they did not need conflicts within the organization right now. The hawk was angry, and the bear said that later they would all see what he was capable of. When they calmed down, the man in the faceless mask moved directly to the topic of today's meeting. He said that the lion, the butterfly, and even the dragon had abandoned them. He asked if everyone else understood what that meant. From that moment on, they were not to act alone. And now, their goal was to deal with Kurita Sho once and for all.